Dragon Lord Astaroth's group naturally became the 8th progenitor's first target. After all, they possessed a superior bloodline to the humans and posed the most threat. Other than Vaan, Dragon Lord Astaroth was the only other demigod on the side of humans. The 8th progenitor couldn't help but salivate as he closed in on the group of red dragons suppressing the vampire armies from the sky. He definitely had to feast to his heart's content. His thirst for blood had not diminished after 700,000 years of slumber. In fact, the long sleep increased his thirst instead. Swish! The air seemed to give way to the 8th progenitor, allowing him to soar swiftly through the sky. It was like the natural laws of the world around the 8th progenitor were affected wherever he traveled. Nevertheless, he closed the distance on Dragon Lord Astaroth's group in a very short time. At the same time, Dragon Lord Astaroth sensed the impending threat. The frightening aura intimidated him, even from thousands of meters away. His severe gaze locked on the swift, shadowy flock of black bats. He immediately knew there was more to it than how it appeared. Be careful. Dragon Lord Astaroth quickly warned. But given the speed of the shadowy flock of black bats, the warning came too late. It had already reached the dragon group by the time he had finished warning his kin. It gave them no time to react at all. Come here, my lovely prey. Just as the 8th progenitor rematerialized into his true form without losing travel momentum, his expression abruptly changed. A timely spatial portal appeared right before him, giving him no time to react. As such, he flew straight into it, not knowing what lay on the other side. However, the 8th progenitor wasn't even given the time to guess. He immediately found out in a split second. Boom! The 8th progenitor flew out of a different spatial portal and kissed the surface with a resounding impact, shattering the ground and shaking the earth. A small crater was instantly formed. Half of the 8th progenitor's body was stuck below ground, and his legs dangled in the air. A few moments later, the 8th progenitor broke out of the earth with towering rage. Fuck! Who dares to mess this with Lord? The 8th progenitor furiously cursed with chunks of soil still stuck to his face. Even some of his teeth were missing, revealing spots of black abysses when he spoke. In an instant, his elegant appearance had been reduced to a sorry mess, similar to that of a poverty-stricken beggar. The spatial portals had come without warning, forcing the 8th progenitor to ram his head into the ground with a force that wasn't inferior to the first stage of the divine rank. Naturally, the 8th progenitor wouldn't come out of it unscathed. Back in the sky, Dragon Lord Astaroth was pleasantly surprised after seeing Vaan appear before him. Supreme Leader. Focus on the stronger foes within the vampire army. This vampire lord is too strong for all of you. I will deal with him personally. Understood, Supreme Leader. It didn't take long for the 8th progenitor to lock onto Vaan's figure and determine he was the culprit behind his miserable state. All his hatred and anger were immediately directed at him. Human. It was you, wasn't it? The 8th progenitor roared. Black wings suddenly sprouted from his back, and with a powerful flap, the 8th progenitor soared into the sky with sonic momentum instantly. At the same time, powerful gusts of winds slammed into the ground before dispersing in all directions. A few unstable buildings were struck and crumbled apart. I'll kill you. The 8th progenitor's death threat was abruptly cut short as he shot straight into another spatial portal and smashed himself into the ground again. Moments later, the 8th progenitor burst out of the earth with an even more miserable appearance. Several teeth had shattered, and his face was filled with dirt and blood. The impact was noticeably stronger than the last one, as all buildings within a 100-meter radius collapsed under the earthquake. The 8th progenitor's anger reached a new peak. Right then, Vaan's casual words sounded in his ears, "Why do you have to be so mad? The current look suits you better. Arg, you insect. You have completely infuriated this lord. I will drain the blood from your corpse and torture your remains for 1,000 years to appease my anger," the 8th progenitor cursed. Boom! The 8th progenitor launched himself into the sky at an even greater speed than the past two movements. At the same time, large amounts of darkness rotated around his body like a drill. The surrounding air was flung far away by the whips of darkness. The 8th progenitor's thought process was simple. Whether it was time or placement, Vaan's last two spatial portals had been so precise that they made it impossible for the 8th progenitor to evade. As such, he just had to travel far faster than Vaan could precisely summon his spatial portals. However, the outcome was far from the 8th progenitor's expectation. Boom! The 8th progenitor flew straight into Vaan's spatial portal again and smashed into the ground. Although the crash wasn't as impactful as the previous two times, the 8th progenitor ended up drilling several hundred meters deep into the earth. Rumble. The earth shook with rumbling tremors before the 8th progenitor furiously burst out of the ground, flinging rocks and soil in all directions. Soon, the 8th progenitor glared at Vaan in the sky with a gaze so intense that his eyes bled. Sigh, falling for the same trick twice is one thing, but for it 3 times is another. You must be the dumbest vampire lord I have ever met. Or perhaps you just like to eat dirt? Vaan's insulting words sounded, further fueling the 8th progenitor's anger. Right from the first move, Vaan established an absolute position by putting his opponent in an unstable state of mind. In a battle between people with undetermined differences in power, the one with the calmer state of mind was usually the victor. The 8th progenitor was so enraged that his trembling body screamed with anger. But after a moment, he suddenly became frighteningly still and quiet. All his anger seemed to have disappeared as he calmed down, but that was far from the truth. Tranquil fury. Vaan's gaze immediately turned serious. Previous chapter. Next chapter. The angrier one was, the harder it was to control one's power and choices. This was especially true for one whose anger had reached the limit. Their judgment would be completely clouded by rage. People under such a state were predictable, making them easier to deal with. However, there also existed a special state of mind within that rageful state called tranquil fury. It allowed the being to have full control despite angry beyond belief. Such a special state of mind, which combined the advantages of anger and calmness, would make a person even stronger than their usual peak combat effectiveness. Vaan didn't expect the vampire lord to enter such a supernatural state after being angered by him. It completely nulled his previous efforts. After the 8th progenitor entered, tranquil fury, he did not rush to attack Vaan again. Instead, he dusted his messy black and white suit and cleaned up his appearance. Only after the 8th progenitor found himself presentable did he give Vaan his attention. I must admit, your decisiveness and intelligence are commendable if nothing else, human. You knew we vampires of high rank greatly value our pride and honor and made use of it. Because of this weakness, I've eaten a few losses, the 8th progenitor calmly commented. But then, his gaze suddenly sharpened, and he added, however, that is as far as you go. You are, after all, just a mere demigod. The disgrace and shame you have inflicted upon this lord, I will repay them 100-fold. Less nonsense. Just make your move, vampire, Vaan coolly stated, welcoming the 8th progenitor with a taunting gesture. The 8th progenitor's gaze immediately gleamed with a dangerous light. In the next instant, he transformed into another shadowy group of several hundred black bats and flew towards Vaan. Although their speed wasn't as fast as before, it wasn't slow either. In fact, it was still fast. However, Vaan could tell it was the 8th progenitor's manageable speed. Such a speed would allow him to make abrupt maneuvers in response to sudden situations. To confirm his guess, Vaan summoned a spatial portal right before the black bat group's flight path. Swish! The black bat groups instantly redirected their flight path, splitting off into 4 smaller groups as they flew around the newly appeared spatial portal. Moments later, they regrouped and traveled as one. Sure enough. Then, how about this? Vaan's gaze flickered. After closing the last spatial portal, he waved his hand, creating another 5 spatial portals in a 2-layer formation, one in front and the other 4 slightly behind at different angles. Swish! The 8th progenitor's black bat group immediately split into 4 smaller groups again to evade the first spatial portal. They also narrowly escaped the 4 subsequent spatial portals in their anticipated evasion paths by splitting into even smaller groups. I knew you would be able to summon more than one portal. But even if I did fall into it, do you think I would still hurt myself like before? The 8th progenitor snickered in his mind as he almost reached Vaan. However, what greeted him was a dozen more layers of spatial portals, each facing weird directions as if they were anticipating several steps ahead of the 8th progenitor. The 8th progenitor almost fainted from anger. The more his group of black bats branched out into smaller groups, the more difficult it was to control them all with his mind. However, the 8th progenitor had no choice but to continue branching to evade all the spatial portals. Unfortunately, that wasn't the end of it. Vaan's dozen layers of spatial portals weren't stationary. He controlled them all with precise calculations of the 8th progenitor's flight paths, trapping all his bats like casting out a net before roping them in. In an instant, the 8th progenitor found himself trapped within an ever-changing maze formation of spatial portals. Furthermore, none of these spatial portals' destinations seemed to be the same as the previous ones. The 8th progenitor could feel a strong sense of threat from each of them as if something dangerous was awaiting him on the other side. As such, he didn't dare to enter them and evaded them with all his effort. At the same time, Vaan studied the 8th progenitor's shadow bat movement. He discovered that even if the 8th progenitor transformed into hundreds of bats, he only had one main consciousness in control of them all. Thus, the more division in the groups of bats, the more division in the 8th progenitor's focus. Under the intense game of cat and mouse between Vaan's spatial portals and the 8th progenitor's bat forms, the latter failed to keep up with Vaan's forceful division of them. The 8th progenitor eventually lost control of a major part of the collective group, causing numerous small groups of bats to fly mindlessly into Vaan's spatial portals. His connection to them was instantly cut off. But at the same time, the significant decrease in connections to the bats also greatly restored his focus. The 8th progenitor immediately saw an opening in the maze formation of spatial portals. He quickly charged through the opening with his remaining bat groups. Only after breaking out of the spatial formation did the 8th progenitor's bats regroup to rematerialize his true form and appear before Vaan. "I've finally caught you now, human," the 8th progenitor smiled victoriously. He was still 10 meters away from Vaan. But he didn't believe Vaan could escape from him within this distance, even if he could skillfully wield his spatial abilities. However, his smile slowly disappeared as he felt something slightly wrong with his field of vision. When did the human become so big? Clap, clap, clap. Vaan clapped as he calmly applauded the 8th progenitor, who had been reduced to a third of his original body mass. The rest of the latter's body was still stuck in their bat form, mindlessly roaming a small subspace. "Good job. Do you want a pat on the back for that, little vampire?" Vaan asked intriguingly. He had only abducted the 8th progenitor's body. Transformed bats out of curiosity for the consequences. But the result proved to be far more amusing than he anticipated. "Why you? Damn, human. What the hell have you done to this lord's noble body?" the 8th progenitor shrieked after realizing his small figure. Even his refined voice seemed to have turned childish. The 8th progenitor wanted to puke blood in anger. He had greatly underestimated this human. In fact, this human was far more horrifying than he could imagine. The human's control of space was especially disgusting. Previous chapter. Next chapter. The eighth progenitor had never encountered such a bizarre situation before. Although he had been reduced to a third of his original body mass, he didn't feel the pain of losing 2/3 of his body. In other words, 2/3 of his body was still out there somewhere. They had not been destroyed. He only lost his connection to them. It was as if some restrictive barrier or unreachable subspace had isolated them. Bastard human. Where have you put the rest of this lord's noble body? Return this lord's noble body at once, or this lord will make you regret it, the eighth progenitor threatened. However, given his small size and childish voice, his threat didn't seem to carry any weight. Now. Little vampire. You shouldn't talk like that. Didn't your mama ever teach you manners and respect? Arg. How dare you mock this lord? I'll kill you, human. Vaan's provocation proved effective as he pulled the eighth progenitor out of his tranquil fury state. In his rage, the eighth progenitor recklessly charged at Vaan, wanting to tear him apart with his bare hands. Only such brutality would grant him satisfaction. Furthermore, as a vampire lord in the third stage of the divine blood realm, his physical prowess was far superior to royal vampires and other lower-ranking vampires. Even if his cultivation had been suppressed to the second stage of the divine blood realm, he definitely still had the capacity to destroy a mere demigod. However, Vaan's fourth-dimensional sense told him differently. Losing 2/3 of his body meant that the eighth progenitor also lost 2/3 of his divine blood. The divine blood was the source of his immortal-like life force and strength. Without it, the eighth progenitor should only be able to wield 1/3 of his original physical might. Furthermore, there was also the difference in size and reach. Vaan reached out and grabbed the eighth progenitor's small head, immediately stopping the latter in his tracks. Fuck. Bastard. Shitty human. I'll fight it out with you. Give me back my body, the eighth progenitor cursed as he rained dozens of fists at Vaan. However, none of his fists managed to reach Vaan. He flailed about like a child throwing a tantrum. Even his kicks could barely reach him. Nevertheless, Vaan had to admit that even with 1/3 of his physical strength, the eighth progenitor was still stronger than him. Only after he entered celestial dragon wolf transformation and raised his physical attributes by 50% did he possess the strength to stop the eighth progenitor's relentless assault from reaching him. Give me back my body. Give it back. Give it now. Arg, the eighth progenitor roared madly. Knowing he couldn't reach Vaan's body, he shifted his target to his arm and madly clawed at it. However, high-pitched screeches sounded. The eighth progenitor's claws scratched at Vaan's sturdy flesh and dragon scales but failed to break their defense, only leaving white marks. When the eighth progenitor saw that, his shock almost surpassed his rage. Even so, it only lasted a moment before his mind screamed with overwhelming danger. PZZT. Vaan sent a wisp of nothingness toward the eighth progenitor's soul. In the same instant, the eighth progenitor transformed into a group of shadow bats to escape his clutches. No-oh. The eighth progenitor mentally screamed as the overwhelming sense of annihilation reached his divine soul. In that same instant, the eighth progenitor's gaze turned cruel and vicious. He decisively sliced off the disintegrating section of his divine soul to preserve the rest of it. Only then was he able to escape certain death. However, cutting off a piece of his divine soul didn't come without consequences. It was equivalent to crippling his divinity and talent. Unless he could fix his damaged divine soul, it would never progress and would even decline over time until death claimed him. He estimated that he only had 500 years to repair it. Fortunately, his divine soul had undergone soul quenching to become divine. Otherwise, if it were any other life form underneath the divine rank, their soul would have dispersed the moment they sliced their soul. The difference was like popping an air balloon and cutting a jelly. After the eighth progenitor rematerialized his true form a safe distance from Vaan, he stared at him with terror. His fear of death was greater than his anger. Thus, he no longer dared to attack Vaan rashly. Unexpectedly, divine beings could also be killed so easily. The eighth progenitor would have undoubtedly died if he had not been decisive or fast enough. Meanwhile, Vaan sighed with slight regret for allowing the eighth progenitor to escape with his life. It was such a perfect chance to kill the latter, if he had not been wary of his surroundings. He did not enter the celestial dragon wolf transformation state for the eighth progenitor alone. Why don't you stop hiding and come out? Do you think I can't sense you if you lurk in the darkness? Ha ha ha. Sure enough, you were aware of my presence. You must have transformed when you felt my killing intent. Furthermore, you certainly didn't leave any openings for me to exploit. How impressively sharp and quick-witted. Demetrius Diablo, the fifth progenitor, revealed himself after canceling his invisibility spell. He wore a big grin of confidence, but an even greater curiosity plagued his heart. You're the most impressive peak demigod I've met, Demetrius Diablo praised before suddenly pausing. No, you've already surpassed that threshold. It's just a matter of time before you reach the half-step divine rank. Still, I can't help but be curious. You see, I'm quite proud of my invisibility spell. So, it hurts my pride a little that it didn't work as intended. When exactly did you find out I was lurking nearby? Demetrius Diablo asked. Right from the start, obviously, Vaan nonchalantly replied before smiling provocatively. Why? Did you think you were truly out of sight? All I saw was a white worm sneaking his way over in plain sight, thinking no one could see him like the idiot he was. The fifth progenitor's grin quickly vanished, replaced by gloomy, cold, killing intent. You are courting death. Although the fifth progenitor was infuriated by Vaan's insult, he did not rush to attack him like the eighth progenitor did. He had seen what Vaan could and did do to the eighth progenitor. With a combination of ability and wits, Vaan played the eighth progenitor like a fool. Furthermore, he even discovered a terrible weakness in shadow bat movement. Using such a movement before a spatial ability user was akin to asking for death. As long as parts of one's shadow bats were sealed away, one would lose some of their fighting abilities. Although this only reduced one's physical aspects and not one's power of laws, a reduction in combat effectiveness was still a reduction nonetheless. Having learned from the eighth progenitor's mistakes, the fifth progenitor certainly wouldn't repeat them. Lord Demetrius? When did you get here? Well, never mind that. Please help me out here. This demigod human mustn't be underestimated. He has comprehended a very destructive law, the eighth progenitor requested as he coughed. However, given his childish voice, the fifth progenitor found it hard to take him seriously despite making a mental note of his words. Lord Edwin, you seem to be in terrible shape. Of course, I will help you deal with this insolent human. You don't have to worry about that. I won't make the same mistakes as you either, the fifth progenitor coolly stated. After cleaning up his house, he secretly followed the eighth progenitor to the human world, thinking he couldn't let the latter enjoy all the benefits of the human world for himself. However, the demigod human had given him a great surprise in terms of abilities, wits, and judgment. Nevertheless, he, too, had risen to the third stage of the divine blood realm after absorbing the blood of his descendants. With the experience of the eighth progenitor's mistakes, he wouldn't suffer the same fate fighting the demigod human. However, the eighth progenitor had experienced first-hand terror of fighting Vaan. As such, he was clearer on some things. You don't understand, Lord Demetrius, the eighth progenitor gritted his teeth and shouted, do you think I suffer this terribly because I merely underestimated my opponent? No matter how much I overestimate my opponent, it's impossible for a normal peak demigod to reduce a divine being like me to this pitiful state. There is too big of a gap in our abilities. If you were secretly watching the whole time, you should have seen how skillful his control of the spatial law was, Lord Demetrius, the eighth progenitor reminded. I've naturally seen his skillful control of. The fifth progenitor was about to dismiss the eighth progenitor's words when a sudden realization made him break into cold sweats. Indeed, the demigod human had impressive control of the spatial law, summoning spatial portals in difficult-to-evade times and places to trap the eighth progenitor. However, a condition had to be absolutely met to create such a situation, the demigod human had to be able to keep up with the eighth progenitor's movements. The demigod human's limited perception shouldn't have been able to keep up with the eighth progenitor's movements. But the reality was that the demigod human's perception did, in fact, keep up with his movements. What did that mean? It meant the demigod human's perception was abnormally more powerful than his given soul rank. Furthermore, his perception was at least comparable to the second stage divine rank or higher. The eighth progenitor noticed the fifth progenitor's comprehending look before he spat, so, you get it now, Lord Demetrius? He must be a fucking soul master. A fucking soul master, you hear me? Ah. The eighth progenitor screamed in anguish, knowing the second progenitor had screwed him over. The so-called obstacle that the second progenitor mentioned didn't refer to the resisting human armies or the dragons. It referred to a single person, a potential soul master. If the second progenitor himself wasn't afraid of confronting a potential soul master, why would he need to wake up the rest of them from their long slumber? To share the glory? The second progenitor wasn't so selfless. Fuck your grandmother, second progenitor, the fifth progenitor cursed before turning toward the crimson light domain to flee back to Gehenna. Fuck this shit. I want no part in this. Fighting a soul master had too many uncertainties and risks that he would rather not take. Swish. The fifth progenitor immediately turned into a blur of shadows as he darted through the sky, zooming back to the crimson light domain at his quickest speed. However, Vaan didn't intend to let him escape. Since you came, don't think about leaving, Vaan coolly stated, instantly appearing in front of the fifth progenitor, blocking his flight path. Since you came, don't think about leaving, Vaan coolly stated, instantly appearing in front of the fifth progenitor, blocking his. Seeing that, the fifth progenitor became even more determined to flee. He used all his power to execute a forceful maneuver around Vaan. However, he still fell into Vaan's spatial portal. The fifth progenitor heavily smashed himself into the ground several thousand meters further away from his destination and wanted to cough up blood on the spot. In front of the power of space, distance was non-existent. His speed would be countered unless it exceeded his opponent's perception. The fifth progenitor knew that. Yet, he still utilized his quickest speed to escape, resulting in the same mistake made by the eighth progenitor. Human, the fifth progenitor furiously burst out of the earth, roaring with a bloodied body, I do not wish to fight you. Why must you force my hand? Fifth progenitor, you have no shame. You said you would help me deal with this human. Yet, you fled at the mention of a soul master. Where is your pride and honor? Are your words so worthless? The eighth progenitor childishly cursed from a distance. Tui. Fuck pride and honor. My life is more important. What use have I of pride and honor if I'm dead? The fifth progenitor spat contemptuously, adding, I've just woken up after 700,000 years. I want to enjoy my life, thank you very much. Shortly after, the fifth progenitor fled towards the crimson light domain again. At the same time, his mind spun for solutions as he tried to determine the best escape. Meanwhile, Vaan frowned in the air. It was his second time hearing about soul masters. Moreover, the vampire lord seemed to be very afraid of them. Previous chapter. Next chapter. If all vampire lords feared soul masters so much, Vaan found it hard to believe they could threaten him. Furthermore, they were still manageable around this level of power. However, if he had to face an even stronger vampire lord, the situation could turn out differently. Not to mention, there was still the great devil Abaddon to worry about. There was truly too big of a power gap between them. A weak vampire lord would fear me because they cannot defeat me, but a strong vampire lord would destroy me to end my growth. Vaan's gaze sharpened. Humans and vampires are already warring with each other. An irreversible feud has been established between our races. Given how big the vampire lords reacted to me being a potential soul master, Great Devil Abaddon will hunt me down with everything he has if he comes to learn of it. It seems Great Devil Abaddon is truly my tribulation, Vaan frowned. Since that was the case, he naturally couldn't let the vampires report any news to their blood ancestor, even if he needed to take drastic measures. Shortly after the fifth progenitor made his second attempt to escape, the eighth progenitor didn't dare to stay. After all, if the fifth progenitor were gone, the eighth progenitor would become Vaan's main target. Didn't I say to stay? Vaan's gaze turned serious. He immediately jumped in front of the fifth progenitor with a single step, instantly creating dozens of moving space cracks to entrap him. The fifth progenitor managed to evade the relentless pursuit of Vaan's space cracks for several breaths before he was caught in their encirclement like a cornered king in a game of chess. There was nowhere for the fifth progenitor to run. The fifth progenitor was eventually swallowed by one space crack and found himself in an independent subspace cut off from the rest of the world. 2 minutes later, the eighth progenitor also joined him. "Where are we, Lord Demetrius?" the eighth progenitor quickly asked. The fifth progenitor frowned, taking a moment to observe the empty void filled with darkness. If not for the absence of stars and other celestial bodies, the dark void could have been mistaken for a place in the sea of stars. Even so, it was no different from one, it was also a cold, dark void, merciless to life. However, the fifth progenitor and eighth progenitor were both divine beings in the divine blood realm. Their vampiric bodies were powered and sustained by blood energy. As such, they wouldn't be suffocated by the absence of air in the short term. This seems to be an independent subspace created by the demigod human. Although it looks boundless at a glance, its space is actually limited. There's an invisible wall containing us, the fifth progenitor analyzed. Oh. In that case, we only need to shatter this wall to break out of this spatial containment. The eighth progenitor quickly understood. I don't believe a peak demigod spatial law is stronger than my attainments in the shadow law. Was what the eighth progenitor disdainfully believed. However, after he found the boundary of the subspace and assaulted its wall with his strongest shadow attack, the subspace remained stable and firm. His attack did not change anything. It was as if the shadow attack was thrown into a bottomless abyss, devoured without a trace. What? That's impossible, the eighth progenitor exclaimed with surprise and disbelief. His physical abilities may have been lowered, but his shadow power was still at the second stage of the divine rank. His shadow attack should have been more than powerful enough to shatter the space power of a peak demigod. However, the reality was quite different from his expectations. At the same time, the fifth progenitor's crimson eyes narrowed before he uttered, "Sure enough, a soul master's perception cannot be measured by normal standards. I'm afraid this human's comprehension of the spatial law is no weaker than the second stage of the divine rank. Furthermore, his mastery and control of space is unlike anything I have ever seen. Perhaps even the law power of a third stage divine being will not be able to shatter this spatial cage," the fifth progenitor guessed. "You're telling me that even if this world's laws didn't suppress our powers by a level, we still wouldn't be able to escape? That is ridiculous," the eighth progenitor spat with a heavy expression. "A peak demigod with space power on par with third stage divine beings. This kind of talent is truly heaven-defying and unprecedented. Gehenna has never produced this level of talent in his entire course of history. Well, Gehenna is only a single realm within a sea of countless realms that exist throughout the boundless chaos. What we perceive as unprecedented could, in fact, be common in our eternal dark heaven sector," the fifth progenitor casually mentioned as he continued studying the subspace for a weak spot or opening. However, after a moment, he suddenly paused. "Damn it, my mind mustn't be functioning properly after such a long slumber. I can't believe I forgot something so crucial," the fifth progenitor exclaimed, smacking his head. "What did you remember, Lord Demetrius?" the eighth progenitor asked. "No matter how high the human's comprehension of the spatial law is, he is still a peak demigod," the fifth progenitor reminded, adding, "his soul power is still less than us. If we keep blasting this wall with our power, we will deplete his mental energy and cancel this spatial cage." Just as the fifth progenitor prepared to barrage the space wall with his law power, Vaan's voice sounded in the dark subspace, "If I truly wanted to kill you, you'd both be dead already. Do you believe it?" The fifth progenitor immediately frowned, preparing to retort with disdain. However, the eighth progenitor responded faster as he fearfully answered, "I do. I definitely believe it. Lord Edwin, you." The fifth progenitor glanced at the eighth progenitor in astonishment and confusion, not expecting him to be more fearful of his life than him. However, such a low-level threat shouldn't have triggered such a strong reaction. Nevertheless, the eighth progenitor saw what the fifth progenitor was thinking. He quickly explained, "I already told you not to underestimate this human. The law of space isn't the only law he comprehended. He has another law power that is, in my opinion, even more terrifying than his spatial power. In fact, it reminds me of Thanatos' death law, the eighth progenitor mentioned. The fifth progenitor immediately felt weak at the mention of Thanatos' death law. That just proved how dreadful of an existence the supreme great devil was to them. It's not impossible to let you both live. Shall we negotiate? Vaan's offer sounded. Negotiate? The fifth progenitor immediately raised an eyebrow before asking warily, what is there to even negotiate between us, human? That's something I want to find out, Vaan coolly replied before continuing, perhaps we can find some common grounds to negotiate after we talk. You mentioned you have been asleep for 700,000 years. Why don't we talk about that first? It has been 300 years since Pangaea and Gehenna have known each other's existence. Much had been learned from each other during this period. However, only vampire lords like you two have remained completely unknown until now. Why is that so? Why did you sleep for 700,000 years? How many vampire lords are there? Vaan asked. Fortunately, the destructive power of nothingness was still vivid in the eighth progenitor's mind, which made it a little easier for them to talk. Humph. Do you think we slept for 700,000 years because we wanted to? The fifth progenitor snorted before saying, I can see you are trying to fish some information out of us. However, it won't be that easy. How can we find some common grounds if you are not even willing to divulge some information? I guess I will just have to kill. Wait. I'll talk, the eighth progenitor suddenly exclaimed before quickly spilling, we were put into forced sleep 700,000 years ago due to falling for the Blood Ancestor's schemes. Furthermore, the Blood Ancestor had put all 12 vampire lords into forced sleep. The second progenitor has awakened us all, and he currently serves the Blood Ancestor. Please don't kill me, the eighth progenitor pleaded while having some ideas. Since the fifth progenitor didn't care about his pride and honor when it came to his life, there was no need for him to hold on to his. Given his damaged divine soul, it was unlikely that he would be able to fix it within 500 years while serving under the Blood Ancestor's tyranny. To begin with, he had no idea how to repair it. On the other hand, a soul master might know how to fix his damaged divine soul. Furthermore, he ultimately hated the Blood Ancestor for putting him into forced sleep for 700,000 years. Thus, he was more than happy to work with humans if there was a good chance of defeating the Blood Ancestor. That said, he did absorb some of the Blood Ancestor's divine blood. As such, he could no longer feel his hatred for the Blood Ancestor. If he were only a royal vampire, he wouldn't even be able to harbor thoughts of betrayal, let alone act on them. Fortunately, he was a vampire lord. Thus, the Blood Ancestor's control over him was looser. At the same time, even if he didn't feel the hatred, he had not forgotten about it. Such grievance had to be avenged once one wielded the ability. Meanwhile, the fifth progenitor was not happy with the eighth progenitor spilling the information so easily. He wasn't completely against cooperating with the demigod human. However, feeding the other party useful information would only reduce the benefits they could fight for during the negotiations. I see. Vaan had a thoughtful look after learning Great Devil Abaddon's relationship with the vampire lords wasn't harmonious. In other words, the 12 vampire lords hate the Blood Ancestor to the bone. It seems possible for us to join forces and defeat him together, Vaan said. However, he immediately received the fifth progenitor's ridiculing laughter. If that were possible, we naturally wouldn't have minded joining hands with you humans to defeat him. However, that is physically impossible for us, the fifth progenitor coldly stated. We have the Blood Ancestor's divine blood in our bodies. Thus, he has some control over our wills. While it is still possible to harbor treacherous thoughts, we lack the capacity to act on them. Furthermore, if we were directly in front of the Blood Ancestor, he could even take control of our minds and manipulate our bodies as he wills it. We can't help you fight the Blood Ancestor, nor do we have the power to defeat him. So, how can you even speak of working together? More importantly, what benefits do we even get from working with you? Besides liberation from the Blood Ancestor, we don't seem to gain any benefits from you. On the other hand, even if we have to keep serving the Blood Ancestor, we can at least feast on you humans, the fifth progenitor coolly said. If it weren't for the fact that they were in a sealed space, detached from reality, the fifth progenitor would not have dared to speak so much nonsense with Vaan. That is under the presumption that you are alive to enjoy your blood feasts. It is quite bold of you to assume you can live until then if you stay on the Blood Ancestor's side, Vaan calmly stated. The fifth progenitor's expression twisted, but he was unable to retort. Vaan pondered for a moment before asking, suppose I can remove the Blood Ancestor's divine blood in your bodies. That would free you from the Blood Ancestor's control, yes? Yes, but so what? You still haven't answered the important questions, human, the fifth progenitor stated. The Blood Ancestor is a peak rank 6 divine being, someone at the 10th stage of the divine blood realm. Even if we join forces, we won't be able to defeat him. So how do you plan on doing so? And what benefits can we gain from working with you, HM? How is working with you better than serving the Blood Ancestor? Won't you just turn on us after we help you get rid of the Blood Ancestor, the fifth progenitor mentioned with a sharp look. Indeed, if Vaan couldn't satisfy the vampire lord's demands, he would not be able to gain their cooperation, even if he could liberate them from the Blood Ancestor's control. However, letting them feast on the human world as they pleased was also not an option he could give. He needed more information. Vaan immediately shifted his attention to the eighth progenitor. This one easily spilled the most information and was easier to manipulate. It was hard to understand the consequences of slicing one's divine soul unless one experienced it. However, it seemed to make one's mind vulnerable and easily subjected to the will of others as far as Vaan was concerned. Shortly after Vaan appeared inside the subspace, he immediately directed his coercive gaze at the eighth progenitor. If you can cleanly remove the blood ancestor's divine blood from our bodies, we will be freed from his control. However, his divine blood has fused with our bodies. Extracting it won't be easy, sir, the 8th progenitor explained. So, it's still possible then, Vaan calmly nodded. Shortly after, he coerced the 8th progenitor into spilling more information. Through the 8th progenitor, he quickly learned about the Evernight territory and its current state of affairs compared to 700,000 years ago. Naturally, the 5th progenitor wasn't happy with the 8th progenitor's compliant attitude. Unfortunately, he could not do anything besides verbal complaints, not that the 8th progenitor would listen to him. On the other hand, he didn't want to antagonize Vaan. Meanwhile, the 8th progenitor was too busy trying to get on Vaan's good side to save his own skin. He did not care about any cooperative benefits as long as his damaged divine soul could be repaired. After all, if he could not repair his divine soul within 500 years, it would all be useless, no matter how many benefits he had. Sir, do you think you can fix my divine soul if I cooperate with you? The 8th progenitor hopefully inquired. Vaan immediately glanced at him. Ding! You have read the target's information with your 4th dimensional sense. Your proficiency in perceiving hidden information from the void has slightly increased. The Gehenna information has been compiled. Target's information. Name, Edwin Luther. Race, vampire. Class, Night Lord. Age, over 750,000 Gehennan years, plus 100,000 pre-evolution Gehennan years. Position, progenitor of the Luther family. Existence level, 3rd stage divine being, suppressed to 2nd stage divine being. Abilities, blood control, shadow manipulation, higher regeneration, shadow bat movement, 2nd stage divine rank shadow law, bat authority, call of the night, shadow detection, summon shadow, devour. Status, fearful, anxious, damaged divine soul, mentally vulnerable. Note, the target's damaged divine soul is slowly but gradually disintegrating. It is estimated to take 497 Gehennan years before complete disintegration. Further information is required to restore the target's damaged divine soul. Note 2, the target is currently mentally vulnerable, making it easier to be subjected to the wills of others. The boundless sea and sky aura can increase the target's favoritism and likelihood of listening to the host. Note 2.1, as a first-generation vampire, the target still possesses some of its original traits, thereby subjecting it to the influence of the boundless sea and sky aura, albeit very limited. After perusing the 8th progenitor's information, Vaan knew he didn't have enough information about the soul aspect to restore damaged divine souls. However, he wasn't worried about this. He was certain that his knowledge in all aspects would vastly increase once he spent some time in chaos. After all, a vaster sky had a greater wealth of knowledge. More importantly, he was currently more interested in the extent of the boundless sea and sky aura's influence on vampire lords. When Vaan decided to release some of his boundless sea and sky aura, the 5th progenitor didn't show the slightest reaction on the surface. On the other hand, the 8th progenitor's fear and anxiety slightly subsided, replaced by a greater sense of dependence on Vaan. At the same time, his subconscious disdain and hate toward the human aspect of Vaan also disappeared. Interesting. Vaan thought. I cannot promise something I cannot do. I know too little about the soul aspect, let alone the divine soul. So, I currently do not have the means to restore your divine soul, Edwin Luther, Vaan calmly admitted before adding, however, since you have hopes for me, that must mean you believe in my potential as a soul master. As such, I can at least promise that I will do my best to restore your divine soul within 500 years if you swear to serve me, Vaan stated. Sir, if you can really extract the blood ancestor's divine blood from my body and restore my divine soul within 500 years, I swear I will faithfully serve you for as long as I live, the 8th progenitor promised without hesitation. The 8th progenitor seemed to have forgotten that Vaan was the very reason for his damaged divine soul. However, the 8th progenitor didn't blame Vaan for that. It was his fault for challenging a soul master. Furthermore, a damaged divine soul as his punishment was considered quite light. In fact, it could even be considered a blessing if Vaan restored his divine soul and allowed him to be served, since soul masters had great destinies. Following such beings were bound to be more glorious than terrorizing a backwater realm. Nevertheless, after the 8th progenitor made his vow, the 5th progenitor felt his worldly views collapsing. He couldn't believe what he heard. After all, the 8th progenitor didn't promise to work with the soul master but to serve him for life. Although the 5th progenitor could understand why the 8th progenitor made the choice, considering the future aspect of a soul master, the choice was still made far too hastily. It didn't seem like something the 8th progenitor would normally do. After all, such an important life choice would require careful consideration. Nevertheless, after Vaan confirmed the 8th progenitor's stance, he shifted his attention to the 5th progenitor. He had already learned the necessary information to negotiate with the vampire lords and gain their cooperation. 5th progenitor, I believe there is no need to discuss additional benefits, right? After all, defeating the blood ancestor is already the greatest benefit to you. With the blood ancestor gone, you will have the whole Evernight territory to split among yourselves, Vaan coolly stated. That's true. The 5th progenitor reluctantly admitted with a forced smile, knowing he wouldn't be able to gain additional benefits from the human side. As long as your side doesn't invade our world and backstab us after defeating the blood ancestor, simply defeating the blood ancestor is indeed our greatest benefit to us vampire lords. However, you still haven't answered the most important question, how can we defeat the blood ancestor, the 5th progenitor solemnly asked. If we add Hecate into the fight, what do you think of our odds of winning? Vaan coolly replied. replied. The fifth progenitor's expression immediately changed. Indeed, if Great Devil Hecate could really join the fight against the Blood Ancestor, their victory was almost guaranteed. However, that was under the presumption that they could gain Great Devil Hecate's cooperation. If Great Devil Hecate joins the fight, the outcome does not need to be mentioned. However, I want to know what makes you so confident that Great Devil Hecate would agree to join our fight, the fifth progenitor asked with a sharp look. The fifth progenitor's question was to be expected. Anyone would have the same doubt. After all, Great Devil Hecate was not an existence just anyone could meet or talk to. The possibility of gaining her cooperation to fight against another Great Devil was even more unlikely. Unless someone could offer something of great interest or temptation to Great Devil Hecate, it was almost a certainty that she wouldn't agree. To begin with, a fight between two Great Devils was full of uncertainties. No Great Devil would be willing to fight to the death with another Great Devil unless they had a certain degree of confidence in their victory or the temptation was worth the risk. What could a human soul master possibly offer that would tempt a Great Devil to fight to the death for him? Naturally, Vaan had his own thoughts on the matter. I do have something to back up my confidence. However, it's not something you will understand, nor do I feel inclined to explain, Vaan casually replied. If you can't convince me, don't think about gaining my cooperation, the fifth progenitor frowned. Would I still need your cooperation if I already have the eighth progenitors? I don't think I need to win over all the vampire lords, no? Vaan calmly mentioned with a cunning smile, adding, I believe he would also be happier to split the Evernight territory with fewer vampire lords. To begin with, the vampire lords unlikely had the power to make a difference in a battle between great devils. The only benefit of working with them was using them to deal with other vampire lords. You. Vaan's words quickly angered the fifth progenitor, but he could not refute them. He understood his current position. Although it was called negotiating, in truth, he was only given the choice to be used by the other party. If he weren't willing to be used, the other party would just kill him and move on. Furthermore, such a chance would have been given if the other party had not noticed the opportunity and convenience. Ultimately, the fifth progenitor could only sigh and agree to follow Vaan's arrangement. If anyone else had witnessed their entire exchange, they would have been dumbfounded by the fifth progenitor's choice. It wouldn't be strange for the eighth progenitor to make that choice, but it was a different story for the fifth progenitor. He had not fought a true life-or-death battle with Vaan and nearly died as the eighth progenitor did. As such, it was surprising that the fifth progenitor could just be talked into agreeing with a little coercion and no serious fight. The fifth progenitor himself had not noticed that his choice was actually influenced by Vaan's boundless sea and sky aura. Good, let us refine the details of our cooperation. First, I will have you use contract magic to enter a non-aggression pact with me. Then, surrender your bodies to me so I can purge the Blood Ancestor's divine blood, Vaan instructed. Understood, sir, the eighth progenitor was quick to agree, seeing no problem with the arrangement. After all, since they would enter a non-aggression pact with contract magic first, Vaan couldn't secretly harm them during the vulnerable process of purging the Blood Ancestor's divine blood. Of course, Vaan was not foolish enough to leave any loopholes in the contract for the vampire lords to exploit and made sure it was refined to the minute details. It would have been truly stupid if he had put himself in a state where he couldn't attack the vampire lords, but they could attack anyone else from Pangaea. Freedom Federation, Principality of Dainsleaf. In the sky, above a region of steep, rocky, yet forested mountains, Narvam arrived via spatial magic before gazing down and sighing softly. He had wanted to join the war in the great Rathalos Empire, but unfortunately, he was not strong enough to lead a group of dragons like Lord Astaroth, who had already advanced to the demigod rank. Although he had fallen far behind the other dragon lords due to the side effects of forbidden magic in the past, he managed to advance to peak transcendent and catch up with the others after consuming many high-quality magical plants. However, this was only possible because his wife gave up her portion of the high-quality magical plants and dragon god blood essence, delaying her own advancement to the demigod rank. Narvam felt endless guilt toward Khaleesi, he owed her too much. Unfortunately, he had no choice but to accept her generosity despite repeatedly rejecting it. His wife didn't allow him to refuse her gift and was adamant about it. It's been a while since I've come to this place. Nevertheless, since he was already here, he had to make sure he completed the important task given to him by the Supreme Leader. Swish! Moments later, Narvam opened another spatial portal and disappeared through it, stepping into the Black Witch Society's headquarters. Without any surprise, Narvam's sudden, uninvited presence immediately alarmed the witches within the headquarters. D-Dragon. Ah. A dragon has intruded into our headquarters. Wait. I've seen this dragon. It has been here before. Quickly call the Witch Mother. Amidst the panic and disorder created by Narvam's sudden arrival, some witches quickly recognized him, not by his appearance but by his natural temperament and aura. Narvam had left quite an impression on them during his last visit. Nevertheless, it didn't take long before the Witch Mother came out of her dwelling and diffused the chaos and unease among the witches. We meet again, Lady Ophelia. I pray you have been well, Narvam greeted with standard courtesy. I have been well. Thank you for your concern, Your Excellency, Ophelia Tempest returned the courtesy with a simple smile before saying, I must say I am not surprised by your visit, given what is happening in the great Rathalos Empire. Oh. Narvam was immediately surprised by the Witch Mother's words. But upon further thought, he was no longer surprised by her intelligence. Since you already know what's happening there, then you must also understand why I'm here. In that case, I will just cut straight to the point. Do you know how to contact Great Devil Hecate, Lady Ophelia? Narvam solemnly asked. Despite such an alarming question, Ophelia remained unsurprised. In fact, her calm smile widened and her eyes flickered with interest. Indeed, I do know how to contact Lady Hecate, Your Excellency, Ophelia calmly admitted. In a single sentence, the witch mother not only revealed that she had some relation with the great devil Hecate but also showed some familiarity with her. Sure enough, that was the case, Narvam acknowledged with a soft sigh, unsurprised by the witch mother's answer. He had been mentally prepared for it. If you don't mind me asking, Your Excellency, I'm quite curious about how you concluded I knew of a way to contact Lady Hecate? Ophelia wondered with interest. This lord is only here on orders from his supreme leader. If not for the supreme leader, this lord would not have suspected your connection with the great devil Hecate, Narvam lightly chuckled, not daring to claim the credit for himself. Oh. Ophelia calmly smiled before saying, now, I am a little interested in your supreme leader. Allow me to rephrase my question, how did your supreme leader arrive at the conclusion that I knew how to contact Lady Hecate? This, I can answer. The supreme leader has once explained it to me. So, I recount it for you, Lady Ophelia, Narvam casually mentioned before saying, the supreme leader's first point of suspicion was your high cultivation at the pseudo-transcendent rank. Although you have once told me that you are a close retainer of the rank 7 Storm Calamity Witch and a rank 6 Divine Being in your previous life, this doesn't explain how you achieved your high cultivation. Sure, you have rich knowledge to enhance your magical power. However, the Freedom Federation is very far away from the dimensional crack. Access to mana should be quite limited. In fact, there shouldn't be enough mana to support your cultivation. All mana stones should be heavily regulated by the authorities in the Freedom Federation. You could argue that you went to Gehenna to accumulate your mana and cultivate, but where exactly in Gehenna is it safe for you to do so? Unless you had a patron from Gehenna supporting you, it is almost impossible for you to survive in such a dangerous land full of demons, with low cultivation, no less. Of course, you could also say that you weren't from the Freedom Federation, that you cultivated to a higher rank in a different country closer to the dimensional crack. However, high witches outside the 7 witch kingdoms are extremely rare. Furthermore, with women's lower status in most countries, it's almost a miracle if they even have any freedom. Obtaining mana stones shouldn't have been easy under such conditions. More importantly, there's another point of doubt. Creating a portal to Gehenna isn't something a pseudo-transcendent witch should be able to do, even with ancient magic. So, how could you have gone to Gehenna to cultivate, regardless of your power at the time? Creating a dimensional portal connecting Pangaea and Gehenna isn't a feat even great devils could accomplish easily, at least, among the 3 hostile great devils, none have the ability to do so with ease. But if it is great devil Hecate, the master of sorcery, witchcraft, or magic in general, it becomes a different story, right? If it's great devil Hecate connecting Pangaea and Gehenna with small dimensional portals and offering refuge to witches, everything seems to fit perfectly, like puzzle pieces coming together. Another point of doubt is your title as witch mother. Great devil Hecate is also revered as the mother of witches. Is it only a coincidence that you share the same title? Or something deeper than that? Narvam added. Ophelia laughed and said, it almost sounded like you were implying I am great devil Hecate's incarnation or something, Your Excellency. However, I have already sworn my true identity to you under contract magic. There was no falsehood in that. So, don't you think this part is contradictory, Your Excellency? Ophelia asked. Indeed, my supreme leader had also thought about this point, Narvam acknowledged before mentioning, however, your death has always been a point of doubt. Why would a rank 7 Calamity Witch's close retainer, a rank 6 Divine Witch, suddenly die and reincarnate? Lady Ophelia being the close retainer of the Storm Calamity Witch may be true, but that doesn't stop you from having other identities, no? For example, being the clone or incarnation of another Calamity Witch. Maybe the current you and Great Devil Hecate are all clones or incarnations of a powerful Calamity Witch. After all, Great Devil Hecate has mastered so many laws. Her overwhelming talent for comprehending laws makes it hard to believe she is only a rank 6 divine being, Narvam added. After Ophelia heard that, she couldn't help but shed tears of laughter. It was so amusing that she couldn't stop laughing for a good 5 minutes. Please excuse me, Your Excellency. It was just too funny. Ophelia wiped her tears of laughter before replying, you have such a rich imagination, Your Excellency. Even I almost believed it. However, your doubts are not unfounded. Even I find Lady Hecate's high talent for comprehending laws to be unnatural for a rank 6 divine being. I can't confirm if she is just the clone or incarnation of some Calamity Witch, but I can definitely confirm we are unrelated in this aspect. If I were anyone else, I would have also believed I was Lady Hecate's incarnation or something as well after listening to your words, Your Excellency, Ophelia said with amusement. In the end, just what did your supreme leader conclude my relationship was with Lady Hecate? Actually, my supreme leader was unable to conclude your exact relationship with the great devil Hecate, Narvam admitted before saying, we only know you must share some connection. My supreme leader guessed you might be under a contract with her. That way, you could borrow great devil Hecate's divine powers to create the dimensional portals yourself, Narvam added with a sharp look. Ophelia didn't show much reaction under Narvam's scrutinizing gaze. She simply smiled and said, if you know the whole situation in the great Rathalos Empire, you should also have another suspect for being Lady Hecate's devil's contractor. In that case, why would your supreme leader still suspect me of being Hecate's devil's contractor and send you to meet me? Ophelia asked curiously. I also wondered the same and asked him about it. However, he also asked me this: what rule stated that a great devil couldn't have more than one devil's contractor at once? Narvam recalled. Ophelia seemed calm on the surface, but she was actually surprised in her heart. Although such a suspicion was to be expected after all that had been set up until this point, she was amazed by Narvam's repeat of the Supreme Leader's question. The question was simple, yes, but it also demonstrated the broadness of the person's mind and thinking. Ophelia couldn't help but admire the Red Dragon Clan's Supreme Leader more and more. Such an interesting being made her want to learn more about the person. Nevertheless, Narvam wasn't finished. My Supreme Leader also considered that you, being the Storm Calamity Witch's close retainer and a rank 6 divine being in the previous life, wouldn't want such a binding contract with the great devil Hecate. As such, he suspects you have a looser contract with her than the standard devil's contractors, Narvam added. Once Ophelia heard that, she could no longer remain calm. Narvam had said that the Supreme Leader hadn't reached a conclusion regarding her relationship with Lady Hecate. However, his suspicion unexpectedly hit the nail on the head. The person's power of deduction was actually so terrifying. After piecing together so many doubts and clues, how could his suspicion still be considered a suspicion? Others would have already called it a definite conclusion. Thank you, Your Excellency. You have satisfied my curiosity, Ophelia said gratefully before complimenting, and I must say, it seems prosperous days await the Red Dragon Clan under the leadership of your Supreme Leader. If there's an opportunity, I would like to meet your Supreme Leader one day, Ophelia added. That day would come sooner than you think if you indeed have what we came for, Lady Ophelia, Narvam said, staring at the Witch Mother thoughtfully. I suppose there's no need to hide it at this point, Ophelia calmly smiled before saying, just as your Supreme Leader had guessed, I have a contract with Lady Hecate. Furthermore, it is indeed not as binding as the usual contract given to other devil's contractors. I suppose you can call me a subcontractor, Ophelia stated. Oh? What's the difference? Narvam couldn't help but wonder. Devil's contractors sell their souls to the great devils in return for power and longevity. Regardless of whether they keep their contract or break it, their souls are no longer their own. Upon their deaths, their souls will go to the great devils, Ophelia explained. On the other hand, subcontractors like me are allowed to maintain our independence and keep our souls. There's no doubt that Lady Hecate would be interested in a soul like mine. However, even she wouldn't dare to snatch a soul that a higher rank being has already marked. You could say that my position as a subcontractor is cooperative instead of subservient. Lady Hecate lends me her divine power and abilities, and I perform some tasks for her. Of course, the amount of divine power and abilities I can borrow from Lady Hecate can't be compared to her regular devil's contractors. However, it's enough to create a portal to Gehenna, Ophelia mentioned. In truth, creating a dimensional portal connecting Pangaea and Gehenna was not as simple as she made it sound. It required Lady Hecate and her to channel their power toward each other, similar to throwing out a rope to each other from two opposing cliffs. It was not easy for the rope to reach the other side since the space between them was chaotic and unknown. They could only sense each other's general direction before tossing the rope. Furthermore, she only played a supportive role in creating the dimensional portal by fueling the connection. Most of the work was done by Lady Hecate. Now that you have confirmed my relationship with Lady Hecate, what do you intend to do with this information, Your Excellency? Ophelia calmly asked. She was not worried about her safety, considering they were still allies bound by a contract. She was simply curious about what the Red Dragon Clan's Supreme Leader wanted from her and Lady Hecate. My Supreme Leader wishes to meet Great Devil Hecate to discuss a potential cooperation. If you can be the bridge of communication for us, that would be great, Lady Ophelia, Narvam finally stated the true purpose of his arrival. I see. Ophelia uttered with surprise. Although she had already suspected that would be the case, she was still surprised when she heard it. In the past 300 years, this was probably the first time someone from Pangaea would actively seek out a great devil to make a deal with them. Do you think it will be possible? Narvam inquired. I don't see any problem, Your Excellency, Ophelia smiled before taking a step forward, asking, I can help your Supreme Leader communicate with Lady Hecate. But whether he can acquire her agreement, he can only rely on his own capabilities. Will your Supreme Leader come to me, or should I go to him, Your Excellency? Ophelia asked shortly after. It would be great if you could make the trip to him, Lady Ophelia, Narvam replied with a soft sigh. He was relieved that he could complete his task without an issue. Since they were racing against time to gain Great Devil Hecate's cooperation, the Supreme Leader knew that pinning all their hopes on finding Hecate's main devil's contractor was not good enough, considering the person's location was unknown. On the other hand, they had a previous run-in with the Witch Mother, leader of the Black Witch Society. After recalling the details of their exchange, they realized the possibility of her having a connection with the Great Devil Hecate. Fortunately, they weren't wrong in their guess. When should I see your Supreme Leader, Your Excellency? Ophelia casually inquired. If you are not busy, I can take you to the Supreme Leader right now, Lady Ophelia, Narvam said politely. Good. Then, let us be on our way, Ophelia replied eagerly, adding, I just happen to be quite free right now. Understood. Great Rathalos Empire, Imperial Capital. As the war raged on, Emperor Vaan quickly mobilized all his available resources to search for Galen's wife. However, with little to no information on Galen's wife in their records, the search proved to be exceedingly difficult. After all, without even a description of her appearance to work with, trying to filter through several 100 million people in a short time was an enormous, near impossible endeavor. Unless Galen's wife came forward and identified herself, the chance of finding her was abysmally low. Your Majesty, this person has practically disappeared from the face of the earth for hundreds of years. Finding her seems impossible. Perhaps focusing our resources on the war effort would be the wiser choice, the imperial advisor suggested. However, Emperor Vaan shook his head and said, even if it seems impossible, we still have to do it. This is our only choice. Unless we can get Great Devil Hecate to help us before Great Devil Abaddon descends, we will lose everything, Emperor Vaan stressed with a grave expression. At that point in time, Emperor Vaan did not know that Vaan had another plan to acquire communication with Great Devil Hecate. He was also unaware that it had made much more progress than his search for Galen's wife, and it was at a quicker pace than anyone could have imagined. Nevertheless, it wasn't something Vaan planned to share with Emperor Vaan for the time being, at least not until he had a tight grasp of the Great Rathalos Empire. After all, Ophelia had a sensitive identity as the founder of the Black Witch Society. That alone was enough to make her an international criminal in the eyes of the world. If it were also known that she shared some special relationship with Great Devil Hecate, more complications would arise in associating with her. Inside Vaan's temporary subspace, the 5th progenitor and the 8th progenitor completed their oath under contract magic. After they entered a non-aggression pact with Vaan, the 8th progenitor volunteered to be his lab rat. As such, Vaan allowed him to reunite with the rest of his body and become whole again. Only then could Vaan study the vampire lord's anatomy in great detail, ranging from fleshly composition to skeletal structure and visceral organs to blood circuitry system. Surprisingly, a vampire lord's body was almost identical to a human's. It wasn't just the outer appearance, the internal look was also included. The actual difference was on a molecular level. In other words, the vampire lord's needs differed from a human's on a molecular level. Nevertheless, it had Vaan thinking. Why does the vampiric demon bat's evolution take on the shape of humans, to the point that they hardly resemble or possess traits of their former selves? Is it because the greatest potential can only be found in the human body? Or does it have something to do with the prime originator being human? Vaan pondered. Although Vaan couldn't find answers to these questions, he quickly grasped a complete understanding of the vampire lord's body. He realized there was no need to purge the blood ancestor's divine blood from the 8th progenitor's body to liberate him. After all, the blood ancestor's divine blood itself was not the source of his control over the 8th progenitor, it was his trace of divine will hidden within the divine blood. As such, Vaan only needed to wipe out the blood ancestor's trace of divine will. Once he did that, the 8th progenitor wouldn't just be liberated. Even the portion of the blood ancestor's divine blood in his body would become completely his. I can obtain the 8th progenitor's service and weaken the blood ancestor's power at the same time. Truly killing two birds with one stone, Vaan mused. After knowing what to do, Vaan quickly located the foreign divine blood in the 8th progenitor with his 4th-dimensional sense. Then, he easily wiped out the blood ancestor's trace of divine will with the nihility law, like taking candy from a baby. The 8th progenitor's eyes immediately colored with surprise, knowing he had been freed from the blood ancestor's control. He didn't expect Vaan to do it so easily. However, he didn't find it too surprising upon further thought, attributing it all to the capabilities of soul masters. I've knowingly absorbed the blood ancestor's divine blood and entered his control. But before he could make use of me, I was freed of his control and even took his divine blood for myself. If he knew this, how furious would he be? The 8th progenitor couldn't help but wonder. It's already done, the 5th progenitor looked on incredulously. He was greatly astonished and shocked by how simple it seemed. Something he had assumed to be difficult turned out to be as simple as turning over one's hand, at least, according to what he saw. Vaan rested his palm on the 8th progenitor's head, and the task was done. Unbelievable. The 5th progenitor uttered with disbelief despite getting the 8th progenitor's nod of confirmation. Gehenna, Evernight territory. Inside the ancient floating castle hovering over Vladigold city, Abaddon was minding his business as he recuperated in the blood pool, trying to flush out Hecate's remnant law powers on his body to regenerate his missing arm. However, his divine soul suddenly shook from a sharp, piercing pain, which disrupted his concentration. Garg! Abaddon bellowed in pain and rage, forcefully clutching his head with both hands to endure the soul torments. Moments after the wave of soul-piercing pain passed, Abaddon broke into cold sweats, recalling the short instance that felt like his divine soul was slashed by an invisible blade. Although he could tell he had lost a trace of his divine will, he had no idea what happened to it. When he tried to recall the experience, he only sensed a soul annihilating power before the trace of divine will completely disappeared into oblivion. It sent chills down his spine. What on Gehenna is happening here? Who could have destroyed my trace of divine will so completely and utterly from existence? Abaddon mumbled with a hint of fright, confusion, and loss. However, it didn't take long before another wave of soul piercing pain assaulted his mind. Garg! Abaddon painfully wailed inside the blood pool, causing the surface to rock and splash with ripples and waves. Damn it! Who the hell is secretly scheming against this lord? If you have the balls, then face this lord directly. Abaddon roared furiously. After 2 repeated attacks on his divine soul, it was impossible for him to recuperate with peace of mind. He had to find out what was going on. Swoosh! Abaddon decisively stepped out of the blood pool before a portion of the blood pool followed him. It wrapped around his bare body like spider silk before transforming into a fresh red robe. Boom! Boom! The air rumbled in the next instant. Abaddon swiftly darted out of his ancient floating castle and descended into Vladigold City, leaving 2 sonic booms in his wake. In 3 short breaths, he already reached his target. Be blood ancestor. The second progenitor immediately paled with fear when Abaddon appeared before him without prior notice, looking terribly grim. You better tell this lord everything that has happened until now without leaving out a single detail, Klaus. If you dare hide anything, this lord will dismantle your body, refine your divine blood, and torture your divine soul for 100 years. Abaddon spat gloomily. You understood, blood ancestor, the second progenitor complied, frightened out of his wits. He had no idea what angered Abaddon, but he didn't dare play any tricks in front of him. Abaddon's oppressive pressure was just too suffocatingly heavy and frightening. After you left me in charge of conquering the great Rathalos Empire, I discovered the other side had a strong human with soul master potential. In order to confirm it, I woke up the remaining vampire lords to use them against the said strong human. However, I gave the other vampire lords a full day to return to their homes and recover their strengths first. Since then, only the 5th progenitor and 8th progenitor have gone to fight on the other side. I have yet to hear further from them, blood ancestor. Also, the 6th progenitor, 11th progenitor, and 13th progenitor have secretly disappeared. I have also yet to learn of their whereabouts. The Drusilla, Teeps, and Vlad families have also ceased to exist. But by the looks of it, the 6th progenitor, 11th progenitor, and 13th progenitor must have fled together. After the second progenitor spoke up until that point, he became extremely nervous. He feared Abaddon would have the wrong idea about him. Abaddon's expression darkened, but he didn't find the 13th progenitor's action surprising. In the past, the 2 of them were considered rivals. The 13th progenitor's pride most likely wouldn't allow her to serve under him. As such, her looking for opportunities elsewhere to make her comeback seemed like the most logical choice. However, Abaddon no longer put the 13th progenitor in his eyes. The person was 700,000 years behind. It was impossible for her to catch up to him in a short time, so she was not presently a threat. Nevertheless, the second progenitor still had to be punished for letting 3 vampire lords run away. Pack! Abaddon suddenly slapped the second progenitor into the ground with his right hand and stepped on his head humiliatingly. You woke up all the vampire lords, and yet you failed to make use of 3. Not only did you let 3 vampire lords escape, but I've even lost 3 loyal families. How do you intend to make up for this mistake, Klaus? Abaddon asked. Please spare me, blood ancestor. I swear I will do better, the second progenitor desperately pleaded while trying to look up at Abaddon's face. However, all he could see from the corner of his eye was Abaddon's left side, which was missing 1 complete arm. Although Abaddon regenerated a new left arm in the last 12 hours of recovery, it was not fully grown. It was only the size of an infant's and was hardly useful in its current state. Its growth rate was extremely slow due to Hecate's lingering law powers around it. Nevertheless, it gave the powerful and menacing Abaddon a rather comical look. Even so, no one dared laugh or comment on it, let alone the second progenitor, who was currently suppressed under the person's feet. Tell me more about the potential soul master. How strong is he? Abaddon demanded with a deep frown, knowing he had to destroy this person at all costs. It was impossible for him to make peace with Pangaea after everything he had done. Furthermore, his ambition wouldn't allow it. Why yes, blood ancestor. According to Melchior, the potential soul master is only a peak demigod. However, his power of law is much stronger than his rank suggests. Furthermore, it's also quite possible that he comprehended the death law like Supreme Thanatos. Your night parade was completely suppressed and intimidated by that person's power. The second progenitor added. The death law. Abaddon uttered with a heavy expression. Of the 7 great devils, Thanatos was the only being he didn't dare to offend, precisely because of the death law. The Supreme Great Devil's death law was simply that scary. There was resistance in the face of absolute death power. Nevertheless, if it was the death law, Abaddon understood why his traces of divine will would disappear so completely without hopes of recovery. This world doesn't need a second Thanatos. I can't let this potential soul master grow. Otherwise, my days will be numbered. Abaddon thought as his killing intent surged. Rumble. Suddenly, the world greatly trembled as if it had just suffered an impactful blow from something unpredictably huge and heavy. The entire Vladigold city was alarmed and surprised by the earthquake. Abaddon frowned, and the second progenitor looked doubtful. What just happened? I'm not sure. Then go and find out. Abaddon no longer suppressed the second progenitor under his foot. He granted him freedom of movement with a strong kick, sending him dozens of meters away. You understood, blood ancestor. The second progenitor quickly scurried off to investigate after getting up. Great Rathalos Empire, Imperial Capital. Several minutes ago. Shortly after Vaan wiped the blood ancestor's trace of divine will from the 5th progenitor and 8th progenitor's bodies, he immediately returned to the Black Mountain. What are you doing? You can't do that, a herbalist assistant cried as he watched Vaan pocket all the spirit plants and herbs around the Black Mountain. Everything was safely stored inside Vaan's heaven-swallowing space. Nevertheless, his outrageous action alarmed even the Pill King to come out of his seclusion. Countless curses and protests followed, but they all fell on deaf ears. The Pill King and his assistants could only watch Vaan clean out their herbal gardens. However, they had yet to witness Vaan's most outrageous act. Rumble. The whole world seemingly shook as the entire Black Mountain started sinking into the ground and disappearing. Oh my god. Look. The Black Mountain is sinking. No. This can't be happening. Why is this happening? Ever since the discovery of the Black Mountain, it had never moved an inch from its location. As such, the moment it completely disappeared from sight, it sent capital-wide panic and shock. The great Rathalos Empire's people never expected such a thing to happen to their national treasure. However, it didn't take long before the Black Mountain reappeared elsewhere. Oh my god. Is that something even humanly possible? The chaotic battlefield enjoyed a moment of silence as everyone, be they man, dragon, wyvern, witches, or vampires, paused their fight. They watched on with disbelieving gazes as Vaan dropped the whole Black Mountain on the Crimson Light domain to seal the vampire's only point of entry and retreat. Boom. Previous chapter. The earthly perimeters of the Crimson Light domain shifted when the Black Mountain contacted the ground. Colossal masses of dirt, soil, and shattered rocks rose several dozen meters in the air like tidal waves before falling back to the ground. The dragons immediately conjured barriers to protect the warriors, knights, and witches from the barrage. On the other hand, the vampires either scattered with their shadow movements, blew away the fragmented earth with blood spells, or blocked it with their blood fields. However, the large mass of earth quickly piled on top of them. The accumulated weight quickly soared beyond the endurable limit, crushing the weaker vampires. In a short time, the second vampire army, closest to the Crimson Light domain, suffered catastrophic casualties. Meanwhile, the first vampire, witch, knight, and warrior armies were further away from the affected region. As such, they suffered little to no collateral damage from the Black Mountain drop. The extent of the destruction would have been unimaginable if Vaan dropped the Black Mountain from a higher altitude. Nevertheless, many people were dumbfounded and awed by the sight of the Black Mountain dropping into the area. For the first time in history, everyone saw the true face of the Black Mountain. What they had seen in the past was only the tip of the iceberg. The full appearance of the Black Mountain looked like an enormous black lance. Furthermore, it was 20 times larger than anyone could have imagined the Black Mountain to be. After the Black Mountain stabbed into the Crimson Light domain, only a third of its body sunk into the ground. The remaining two-thirds stood tall and towering over the land. At the same time, the range of its gravitation pressure seemingly expanded, multiplying the weight of the surrounding earth. The buried second vampire army was crushed even further without hopes of breaking free from the colossal suppression. Only the royal vampires, noble vampires, and some of the stronger pure-blood vampires successfully crawled out of the heavy earth after some time and with much difficulty. None of their haughty pride and arrogance could be seen, only endless confusion, shock, and fear. No. This can't be happening. Melchior uttered in denial as he looked up at the towering black iron pillar blocking the way back to the Evernight territory. We've been cut off. We can't retreat. Unless we can remove this black pillar, we won't receive any reinforcements either. Remove the black pillar? Didn't you see how much destruction it caused from such a small drop? Who can even move such a heavy and colossal object? The one who dropped it. Suddenly, the surviving royal vampires, noble vampires, and pure-blood vampires felt chills at the mention of Vaan. He was clearly just a peak demigod. So, why was he even scarier than divine beings? Awesome. The vampires have nowhere to retreat, and their rear forces have been crippled. Take this chance to wipe them all out once and for all. Astoria commanded the Holy Knight army. At the same time, Henrietta and Emperor Varen's imperial commander gave similar commands. Although they were greatly shocked by Vaan's unexpected and earth-shaking move, they had enough awareness not to miss the great opportunity he had created for them. Meanwhile, the fifth progenitor and eighth progenitor were scared senseless. It was good that they decided to work with Vaan instead of stubbornly resisting him. Otherwise, their endings wouldn't have been good. He truly had the means to kill them. Nevertheless, sealing the entrance to Gehenna wasn't something Vaan originally planned. However, he had no choice but to do so after exterminating Abaddon's traces of divine will from the two vampire lords. After all, such an act would have hurt and alarmed the person. There was a high chance that Abaddon wouldn't remain quiet after such an obvious provocation and offense. As such, sealing the entrance was necessary to delay the person's descent. That said, on the off chance that Abaddon chose to remain in Gehenna due to whatever reason that delayed him in the first place, it would be even better. In that case, destroying his traces of divine will would delay him even further. Nevertheless, these small tricks could only buy them some time. It wouldn't win them the war. Fortunately, Vaan had already received Narvim's good news ahead of time. Rumble. The colossal black pillar trembled from time to time as it received forceful impacts on Gehenna's side. Undoubtedly, the vampires on the other side were trying to destroy the obstacle blocking their entry. However, Vaan knew it wouldn't be easy for them, even if Abaddon personally participated. After all, the black pillar was a fragment of a star's core. It was far sturdier than ordinary rank 6 materials, especially toward its center. Furthermore, its powerful gravitational field significantly suppressed the vampire's blood energy and control. Anyone could easily succumb to the gravitational pressure if they had never been tempered by it. Suddenly, a big spatial portal appeared nearby before Narvim and Ophelia emerged. It didn't take long for Narvim to locate Vaan's position and then bring Ophelia to him. Supreme Leader, I have brought the head of the Black Witch Society. As you suspected, Lady Ophelia knows how to communicate with Great Devil Hecate and has agreed to help you contact her, Narvim reported. At that moment, Ophelia stared at Vaan with evident shock. She had already suspected it when Dragon Lord Narvim brought her to him. However, she was still shocked when she heard the verbal confirmation. How long had it been since she last saw this young man? 3 months? 2 months? Or even less? It didn't seem that long ago, but his power had already grown to a level she could only look up to. This rate of growth was truly heaven-defying and frightening. Frightening. We meet again, Lady Ophelia, Vaan politely greeted before saying, I'll be counting on you to connect me with great devil Hecate. Ophelia quickly recovered from her shock with a shake of her head and regained her wits with an elegant smile. To think that the young man I met back then would become the supreme leader of the Red Dragon clan. I must say I am in awe of your fortune, destiny, and talent, Ophelia complimented before she proceeded with a calm nod. Don't worry, I will help you connect with Lady Hecate, as promised. I feel this exchange will also benefit me, Ophelia added. Without wasting further words on idle talk, Ophelia offered a hand for Vaan to take, seeing how he seemed to be pressed for time. As long as we have direct contact, I can help you connect with my mind. That should allow you to hear Lady Hecate's voice through me, Ophelia explained. She didn't need to be there all. They could converse while her mind acted at the meeting point. I see, Vaan calmly nodded with understanding. Shortly after, he grabbed her soft hand. Previous chapter. Gehenna, Dream Dust Territory. The Dream Dust Territory was a vast land of white snow plagued with blizzards all year round. However, its whiteness wasn't comprised of icy snow alone. In fact, snow made up a smaller fraction of the land's whiteness. Most of the whiteness came from moon dust and dream dust scattered by the dream dust butterfly demons, which were found throughout the vast white territory. It was said that in an age-long past, Gehenna used to have two moons, a big crimson moon and a smaller white one. However, the smaller white moon was destroyed in a great ancient battle, and its fragments fell from the heavens along with the dream dust butterfly demon race that lived on it, transforming the dream dust territory into its current vast white land. The present Dream Dust territory was considered the most beautiful place in Gehenna. Anyone who saw it would be in awe of its beauty. However, the Dream Dust territory was also one of the few places most demon races tend to avoid unless one belonged to the Dream Dust butterfly demon race or the dark fairy demon race ruling over it. Everyone who had ever forced their way into this forbidden white land would be trapped in endless hallucinations and illusions. Only welcomed guests were granted safe passage through it. When the 6th progenitor, 11th progenitor, and 13th progenitor reached the border, even they felt some dread despite being vampire lords in the divine blood realm. They were among the highest beings in Gehenna, yet they still had apprehension regarding the Dream Dust territory. That just showed how fearsome its illusory power was. The Dream Dust territory could trap countless beings for eternity. More frighteningly, they wouldn't even know they were trapped, they would enjoy beautiful, dreamy illusions until their last breath. Despite knowing the dangers, the 3 vampirous lords steeled their resolve and set foot in the land of white. Upon entry, they immediately sensed countless bones buried in the white dust and snow. They immediately knew a tough trial awaited them. However, contrary to their expectations, fortune favored them. After a short 2 hours of persistent struggle, they gained Great Devil Hecate's curiosity and were granted entry. More surprisingly, Great Devil Hecate permitted their stay after learning their reasons for coming to her territory. She saw no reason to turn away those willing to serve her. More importantly, studying and experimenting on vampire lords was something she had never done before. Considering her bottomless appetite for knowledge, the 3's arrival naturally aroused her interest. Meanwhile, the 6th progenitor, 11th progenitor, and 13th progenitor were surprised when they were brought to Illusory Moon City. The place was far more populated and developed than they could ever imagine a city in the Dream Dust territory to be. Various human and demon races were living together in harmony. Furthermore, the standard of living was so high that it made the vampirous lords feel like peasants when they compared it with the life they used to live 700,000 years ago. Please follow my servant. She will arrange your accommodation. Once you have settled down, you may explore the city on your own. You may contact her if you have any queries or need any help. I have something else to do. So, I will leave you now, Hecate informed the group. As she left, she coughed up some blood, evidently still injured from her fight with Abaddon. It wasn't easy for Abaddon to recover from her attack, but the opposite was also true for her. Not long after Hecate returned to her white fairy palace to recuperate, she received a spiritual link request from the Wisp of Divine while she left with one of her contractors. She immediately accepted, allowing their minds to connect. It's rare for you to reach out to me first, Lady Ophelia. Usually, it's me who contacts you first. Hecate mentioned with interest, coughing between her lines. You're injured, Lady Hecate? Ophelia replied with surprise. Yes. I had a little run-in with Abaddon while trying to get even with him. One of his transcendent divine powers caught me off guard. Still, it's nothing to be worried about, Hecate calmly explained before saying, anyhow, never mind that. What do you need from me? Actually, it's not me but the supreme leader of the Red Dragon clan who wished to meet you, Lady Hecate, Ophelia corrected. Well met, Lady Hecate, Vaan's voice mentally sounded via the shared spiritual link. Oh. Hecate expressed her surprise, but she quickly recovered, replaced with growing curiosity. Through the shared spiritual link, Hecate could definitely sense a divine-rank dragon aura from Vaan's soul. However, she also noticed it didn't originate from him but inherited. That wasn't all, either. There was also a divine-rank wolf aura and a few other inexplicable auras besides ordinary human aura in his soul. She was immediately stunned, speechless by the discovery. Just who was this Red Dragon clan's supreme leader? How could a human soul possess so many divine-rank or higher auras? Since when did Pangaea have such a heaven-defying person? Although Hecate didn't look down on Vaan's human origins, she did think much of the backwater world he came from. As such, for Vaan to possess multiple divine rank auras was unexpected and unprecedented. Suddenly, Hecate found herself attracted to Vaan. He was like a big puzzle waiting for her to unravel. She had a growing desire to understand the secrets hidden in his body. But at the same time, she strangely wished no harm would befall him in the process. You must be Sir Vaan, I presume? Hecate guessed after connecting several pieces of information she recently obtained. Oh. So Lady Hecate has also heard of me, Vaan calmly commented with a smile, unsurprised by the matter. You're a fast-rising star and a hot topic of discussion in Pangaea recently. Given my extended network, it'll be strange if I haven't heard of you, Hecate replied. Nevertheless, I don't believe you wanted to meet me to discuss this, Sir Vaan. Speak. What do you seek from me? Your cooperation, Lady Hecate, Vaan honestly answered. Hecate immediately narrowed her eyes. She contemplated for a moment before her strong curiosity got the best of her. I can't promise I will agree, but I will at least hear you out. Please elaborate, Hecate stated. I believe Lady Hecate already knows about Great Devil Abaddon's wild ambition and the current situation here. His Evernight territory has invaded my great Rathalos empire, unprovoked and without justifiable cause. I wonder if I can interest Lady Hecate in joining hands to take Great Devil Abaddon down and share the benefits? How interesting. Hecate wasn't in a hurry to provide an answer as she mulled over his particular choice of words. What a good, his Evernight territory, and my great Rathalos empire. I can see that you only distinguished the domains and not our worlds. I wonder why, Are you being considerate of me? Not at all, Lady Hecate, Vaan patiently replied, not minding the change of topic. I simply stated things as they are. Pangaea and Gehenna will inevitably become one. Thus, there is no need to distinguish between them. The truth of the matter is that the two are already considered one world. To stubbornly separate the two only speaks volumes of one's narrow mind and short sight, Vaan commented. Ha ha ha, well said. Hecate didn't expect to laugh heartily, but she couldn't help but find Vaan's words pleasing to her ears. If you truly think that, and not just saying it for the sake of my goodwill, then you have earned my respect. It's rare to meet someone from Pangaea with such an open mind. It seems you have learned to accept the situation. Instead of accepting, it would be more accurate to say that I am recognizing the situation and adapting accordingly, Lady Hecate, Vaan calmly replied. Be that as it may, someone in Pangaea with your kind of mindset is rare when it concerns Gehenna, Hecate argued before continuing. Pangaea is still young, and its people are underdeveloped. They fear change and reject it with all their might despite its futility instead of learning to embrace the change and ride its flow into the future. If their stubborn persistence continues, only self-destruction awaits them. You are mistaken, Lady Hecate. Oh? How so? Pangaea's people, no, people in general do not fear change, they only fear uncontrollable change. The unknown is not so scary if they understand and control it. So you're saying Pangaea's people fear the 7 great devils, not because of our power but because they don't understand us? Hecate asked with interest. You could take it that way, Lady Hecate, Vaan calmly acknowledged before adding, the 7 great devils' powers could indeed instill fear. However, at its root, fear does not stem from power itself but the intention to use said power. In other words, Pangaea's people fear Abaddon because of his intention to his power to harm them. On the other hand, if a great devil such as your esteemed self isn't out to harm them, what do they have to fear? The world has always been comprised of both weak and strong people. Does the weak fear the strong for simply being strong? Definitely not. It's how they mingle that gives birth to said fear, Vaan stated. You're clearly a young soul, but why do I feel like you have lived for a very long time? I'm even more curious about you now. That said, you are absolutely right, Hecate acknowledged. It's great devils like Abaddon that make things difficult for great devils like me to change the people's minds and views of us. He instilled so much fear into the world that the people have learned to fear all of us. That said, since you seek my help, surely you don't expect me to do so for nothing. What have you prepared to offer me in exchange for my help? Hecate finally asked the important question. Vaan lightly smiled before mentioning, since Lady Hecate has already fought Abaddon earlier, you must have done so out of rage due to the loss of followers you have incurred due to Abaddon's scheme. That's right. But I have also taken his left arm with 10,000 drops of divine blood as compensation. So, we are considered even right now. You won't be able to use this as a reason for me to help you deal with him, Hecate stated amusedly, curious how Vaan would respond. Nor did I intend to, Lady Hecate, Vaan calmly replied, adding, I only wish to point out the importance you have placed on your devoted followers. Surely, their death was no small loss to you. As such, this is my offer, if you can help me slay Abaddon, I am willing to acknowledge the orthodoxy of your religion. Your emissaries and worshippers can openly spread your faith without fear of persecution as long as they are carried out within my sphere of influence. I will also help them build 3 of your temples anywhere within my sphere of influence. What do you think of this offer, Lady Hecate? Vaan calmly asked. Oh? You would do that for me? Hecate smiled before saying, it has just dawned upon me that you are incredibly shrewd. Although I may have been the one to change the topic at the start, you did not hesitate to use it to your advantage by guiding the flow of the conversation, pointing out the difficulty of accepting change, all in a bid to increase the value of your offer. And I must say you were quite successful in this aspect. Your offer is indeed tempting and hard to resist, Hecate acknowledged. Does that mean you accept? Vaan asked. Unfortunately, no matter how good the offer is, it is not more valuable than my life, Hecate sighed and said, an all-out battle between me and Abaddon will result in mutual destruction. In the end, I won't be alive to enjoy the benefits you promised. Thus, I can only reluctantly decline your offer, Sir Vaan, Hecate stated. However, Vaan was not disheartened by the rejection. On the contrary, he smiled and said, since this is our fight, why are you assuming you would have to fight Great Devil Abaddon by yourself, Lady Hecate? I believe if you add me into the equation, the odds of you surviving victoriously will increase greatly, Vaan declared. You? Hecate sensed Vaan's soul power through their connection and frowned, unable to comprehend the source of his confidence. I don't want to look down on your strength, but a soon-to-be half-step divine being is far stronger enough to interfere in a battle between peak rank 6 divine beings. You'll die without an intact corpse before you can do anything to shift the tides of battle in my favor. As such, I fail to understand where your source of confidence comes from, Hecate raised her doubt. However, Vaan wasn't in a hurry to enlighten her. Lady Hecate, you mentioned that an all-out battle between you and Abaddon would end in mutual destruction, Vaan mentioned before asking, however, this is under the assumption that you are both in peak states, correct? That's right. Hecate acknowledged. Then what about an Abaddon with an injured divine soul? How confident would you be in killing him and surviving then? Vaan inquired further. Around 50%, Hecate frowned. Still only 50%, huh? Then what if Abaddon suffers a sudden, strong spiritual attack during your battle? How confident would you be in killing him during that moment? Vaan asked. Then, it would be 100%, Hecate answered confidently before saying, however, there's no point in asking these hypothetical situations. Abaddon's divine soul wouldn't just be magically harmed to our advantage. Or, are you implying that you can hurt his divine soul to such a degree? Hecate asked with doubt. Indeed, that is exactly what I was implying. However, I will also need something from you in order to make it work, Lady Hecate, Vaan said, arousing Hecate's curiosity. Oh? And what would that be? Hecate asked. Didn't you previously mention you obtained Abaddon's left arm and 10,000 drops of his divine blood, Lady Hecate? What do you think would happen to Abaddon if I destroyed all the traces of divine will in these 10,000 drops of divine blood with my nihility law? Vaan asked with interest. Even he wanted to know the extent of its effect. After all, the 5th progenitor and 8th progenitor each only possessed 10 drops of divine blood's worth of Abaddon's divine will. However, 10,000 drops of divine blood was 1,000-fold of that. If Abaddon suddenly lost such a huge amount of divine will at once, wouldn't it be comparable to a powerful soul attack? Furthermore, in a battle between experts, a momentary lapse in focus could ultimately cost one's life. Nevertheless, Hecate's reaction was one that Vaan did not expect. Nihility law? You know the nihility law? How much of the law of nothingness have you comprehended? Hecate quickly asked with shock. Up to the peak demigod rank for now. Vaan answered after a moment of contemplation before fishing for information, you seem quite surprised about it, Lady Hecate. Surprise is an understatement. I'm shocked, Sir Vaan, Hecate replied. You have repeatedly amazed me despite our short exchange. With the nihility law, I am certain Abaddon won't be able to escape his death if we work together. However, you should refrain from showing off your nihility law in the future, especially in chaos. That's if you don't want to bring disaster upon yourself, Hecate warned. You seem to know something that I don't. Do you mind elaborating on the nihility law, Lady Hecate? What does comprehending the nihility law entail? Vaan sincerely asked. For some reason, Hecate found it hard to reject his request, even though she knew she could use her knowledge to acquire additional benefits from him. She could only attribute it to Vaan's soul being pleasing to her eye. The nihility law isn't a law that just anyone can comprehend. Those who do, possess the supreme destiny of an origin creator and stand above the heavens. However, don't look at this as a good thing. Not everyone can fulfill their destinies, let alone one as grand and envious as the nihility law entails. More often than not, beings would perish before fulfilling their destinies. The greater the destiny, the higher the risk of failing. Your destiny to become an origin creator could be said to be the greatest destiny of all. You'll undoubtedly attract heaven's envy and tribulations. The nihility law will attract countless powerful beings to end you or exploit you, should they learn of it, Hecate solemnly said. Vaan took a moment before he realized the severity of the matter. Due to his heaven-defying talents, there was nothing he couldn't understand and learn. He didn't expect the nihility law to be far rarer than he had initially imagined. Comprehending the nihility law is taboo in almost all of chaos due to its bad history with nihility law users. After all, the nihility law has the heaven-defying power to decompose everything into its most basic, purest, or primal form of energy in essence. Nihility law users have devoured entire stars and planets for their cultivation. They are the destroyers of celestial bodies, Hecate added. As Hecate explained the dangers of nihility law users, Ophelia felt she had learned something she shouldn't have. She couldn't help but feel a sense of danger. She wouldn't be silenced to keep the secret, would she? Surprisingly, the sense of danger didn't come from Vaan but from Hecate. As such, Ophelia found it hard to believe, considering their relationship was quite amicable and friendly. She would never expect Hecate to pick Vaan over her. So about my previous offer. Vaan mentioned after confirming that Hecate didn't bear him ill despite learning some of his secrets. Undoubtedly, his boundless sea and sky aura must have influenced her dark fairy demon bloodline to some extent. Nevertheless, he still had some doubts regarding Hecate's origins. Given her deep knowledge and high talent, he could not help but suspect her background was not as simple as it appeared. I accept, of course, Hecate stated before continuing. I will help you deal with Abaddon if you promise me all that, and agree to one condition of mine: you have to visit my dream dust territory at least once after everything is settled. Sure, Vaan saw no reason to refuse. He also wished to learn more about Hecate, Gehenna, and Chaos. Given Hecate's vast knowledge, she was naturally the best person to seek. Rumble. Suddenly, the black pillar sealing the crimson light domain shook several dozen times stronger than the previous times. Without a doubt, it must have been an attack from Abaddon. Although the black pillar remained stable for the time being, Vaan doubted it would stay that way if it continued to receive such powerful impacts. As such, his expression immediately turned somber. Lady Hecate, how long will it take you to reach the Evernight territory? Are you in a hurry? It seems Abaddon suddenly decided to descend on this side. I'm afraid the seal obstructing his entry will not last long under his repeated assault. What? I will leave at once. Whatever you do, you must do your best to survive until I arrive. All right. Vaan softly sighed. By the looks of it, Hecate would take some time to arrive, but not before Abaddon descended upon their world. There was no escaping his tribulation. Do not try to face Abaddon. Buy time if you can, and run if you can't. You only need to survive until I arrive, that is all I ask of you. Abaddon's power is beyond your imagination. Even I dread his power despite fighting him to a draw. What power does he have that you would dread it so, Lady Hecate? Abaddon has comprehended the blood law, darkness law, and Azura law to a high level. The blood law and darkness law aren't of any concern to me, but it's a very different story for the Azura law. The Azura law is a demonic law of slaughter and killing. Although it isn't as miraculous as the Nihility law regarding functions, it's the most powerful law for fighting. Its attack power is arguably greater than even the Nihility law. This is because the Azura law is the origin law of the Lord of Chaos, Hecate stated. After Vaan listened to Hecate's explanation, he quickly understood how fearsome the Azura law was. Although the Nihility law was a law of the highest order in the third-dimensional world, the Azura law had been elevated to the same level because of the Lord of Chaos transcending the heavens. As such, the Azura law was stronger than it was in the past. In the current era, it wouldn't be wrong to say the Azura law is the strongest law in Chaos. And unlike the Nihility law, it is quite widespread in Chaos. Comprehending the Azura law is like a form of recognition and respect to the Lord of Chaos, Hecate added. Even as she was speaking to Vaan with her mind, she was rushing to the Evernight territory at her quickest speed. Alas, her lingering wounds from the previous battle also prevented her from traveling as fast as she hoped to. She only hoped that she could make it in time. During this time, Vaan learned everything he could about Abaddon and his Azura law. At the same time, he was given a deeper insight into Chaos. Surprisingly, Chaos was the most fitting name for its overall situation. Almost half of all realm wars that occurred in Chaos were the result of its denizens learning and advancing their understanding of the Azura law. Another half was caused by the desire to acquire resources. Only a small fraction of the realm wars were actually due to personal feuds. Chaos was truly a chaotic place. It was far from peaceful. In this eternal world, immortality was not the main pursuit in life. Vaan didn't find this surprising. After all, an eternal lifespan was not the same as being unkillable. Eternal life was meaningless if one did not possess matching strength to protect it. Otherwise, it could only be robbed by others. Ironically, life in the eternal world is more fleeting than the mortal world, Vaan mused. Suddenly, he thought of something and immediately asked, since realm wars are very common in Chaos, has Gehenna ever had one? Not directly, no. Not directly. Gehenna is only one of countless star realms in the eternal dark heaven sector. While it seems to be an independent realm, it is actually one of 98 star realms under the control of the Skymagia Star Kingdom. 1,000,000 years ago, the Skymagia Star Kingdom waged a major realm war against the Divine Sun Star Kingdom. All rank 6 divine beings and above were conscripted into the war, including Gehenna's 7 great devils of that time. Naturally, they perished and never made it back. I see. You're awfully laid back despite a great devil knocking on your door, Hecate suddenly mentioned, noticing the lack of urgency in Vaan's tone. I have already laid down the strongest and sturdiest object to block Abaddon's descent, Lady Hecate. There is nothing else I can do but wait and see from here, Vaan calmly replied. Trying to reinforce the Black Pillar's defense was pointless when most people couldn't even get close to it. Even if they could, their magic powers weren't strong enough to strengthen such a sturdy and enormous object. Furthermore, Abaddon's power was far too great. The dragons and witches would only be exhausting themselves before the greater battle ahead. It was a far wiser choice to conserve their energy for the next waves of vampires that would emerge, should the Black Pillar's sturdy defense fail to obstruct their entry to Pangaea. Rumble. The towering Black Pillar shook again as it suffered another powerful blow for the 7th time in the last 10 minutes. Unlike before, it did not appear as stable. The impact from the other side caused it to tilt slightly. At the same time, several huge pieces of star core iron splintered off the Black Pillar, dropping to the ground with seismic booms. As Vaan observed the shift in the Black Pillar, he quickly understood Abaddon's plan on the other side. Abaddon did not want to expend too much power trying to destroy the Black Pillar. After all, no matter what, the Black Pillar was still a priceless treasure made of the densest iron from a star's core. As such, he was only trying to knock it over to create an opening. The Black Pillar did not need to be destroyed or removed as long as a clear passage between Gehenna and Pangaea was formed. To that end, countless vampires were digging up the earth on their side to destabilize the black pillars standing. At the same time, Abaddon and the other vampire lords struck the black pillar with synchronized attacks to speed up the process. They were the only ones who could get close to the black pillar. The lower-rank vampires and livestock could only dig up the earth outside the black pillar's gravitational pressure. Naturally, those who were a bit stronger dug a little closer. Keep digging. It is only a matter of time before this black pillar falls. Our entry to Pangea will be open then. Abaddon barked, subconsciously waving his left hand to command the vampires. His majestic image was quickly ruined by the awkward state of his small left arm. Nevertheless, no one dared to joke about it. More importantly, the vampires and livestock didn't understand the sudden urgency to invade Pangea. Even if they could help the Blood Ancestor create an opening, only the vampire lords could follow him to the other side. The rest couldn't do the same, not with the black pillar's gravitational pressure bearing down on them. They would be crushed to death before they could reach the opening. Previous chapter. Next. Inevitable descent. With the black pillar standing between Pangea and Gehenna, only those who could withstand the gravitational pressure could travel between the realms. Only the strongest beings were granted passage, no matter how big the opening. At the very least, that would continue to be the case as long as the black pillar wasn't destroyed or the crimson light domain didn't expand. Vaan was quite confident in the sturdiness of the black pillar. But after learning about the Azura law, he was not so much anymore. Whether Abaddon could destroy the black pillar remained to be seen. However, based on his estimate, he had about 30 minutes until the small shifts in the black pillar left a slight opening of the crimson light domain, connecting the two realms. Half an hour. What can I do to increase our chances of survival and victory? Vaan mused. Although Hecate had warned him not to face Abaddon, he had no choice but to do so. There wasn't a single person on their side who could stand up to Abaddon's power. He was aware that abandoning the imperial capital and waiting for Hecate's arrival was the most logical choice for survival. However, he also found it unacceptable. He had already become everyone's pillar of support. He couldn't disappoint them or abandon them. Thinking back on it, his old self would be quite surprised by his choice. He was living for things other than himself. Nevertheless, the best future couldn't always be obtained through safe measures, and the best growth could only be found through trials and tribulations. After a moment, Vaan decided his course of action. Thank you for your assistance, Lady Ophelia. However, you should leave this area now. Great Devil Abaddon will most likely descend in another half an hour, Vaan informed. What will you do? Ophelia asked with surprise, vaguely sensing something. Whatever I can to buy time until Lady Hecate arrives, Vaan said before turning to Narvim. I'll be counting on you to keep Lady Ophelia safe, Lord Narvim. She is crucial for keeping in contact with Lady Hecate. Understood, Supreme Leader. You can leave that to it, Narvim acknowledged. Shortly after, Vaan relayed the news of Abaddon's inevitable descent to Emperor Vaan, Henrietta, Astoria, and Dragon Lord Astaroth and had them withdraw their forces to a safe distance away from the Black Pillar. No one knew how the following battle would turn out, but its magnitude would be much greater once Abaddon descended. Vaan, if there's no other way, I will borrow my master's power to deal with Abaddon once and for all, Henrietta promised. Vaan paused before glancing at her with a frown, asking, and what kind of price do you have to pay for that? Henrietta remained silent, unable to answer. Don't worry. That time won't come, Vaan calmly smiled and patted Henrietta's shoulders, reassuring her, I will make sure of it. On the side, Astoria couldn't help but clench her fist, feeling powerless. She lacked both trump cards and power to help Vaan carry his burdens. She was too weak. I need more power. Astoria cried in her heart. Rumble. The world suddenly shook. However, it was hard to determine whether it came from the other side of the Black Pillar or the world itself. After giving the United Forces some instructions, Vaan used his remaining time to pay a secret visit to the treasuries of the top families in the imperial capital. Stop. You can't be here. This is the private property of the Goldleaf family. Ah, you can't do that. That belongs to the Goldleaf family. Stop, please. The family head will kill me, a Goldleaf guard protested, knowing he wasn't Vaan's match. He could only helplessly watch Vaan break into the Goldleaf family's treasury and loot everything seemingly of value. Who cares about a treasury when Great Devil Abaddon is about to descend? There won't be anything to protect if we lose this war. Just blame everything on the vampires, Vaan casually stated. Shortly after he finished looting, he immediately left for the next family treasury that secretly hoarded deep-sea silver. In a short 10 minutes, the treasury of 17 top families was quickly plundered, regardless of objections and protests. Coincidentally, these 17 families belonged to Duke Zohar and Duke Gamliel's factions. Secretly possessing deep-sea steel was a capital offense. Thus, once it was exposed, the protest against Vaan quickly turned into a pleading to keep the secret from the emperor. I'm plundering your treasury. You're not going to stop me anymore. Haha, what plundering? You speak too seriously, Lord Pendragon. We are willing to gift everything to you. Please, by all means, take whatever you want. Haha. Then, why are you crying? Crying? No, no, no. These aren't tears of sadness, these are tears of joy. I'm just happy someone is so kind to take such dangerous goods off my hands, haha. A family head said despite looking extremely reluctant to part with everything. Nevertheless, Vaan accumulated over 10 tons of deep-sea steel, including many more rare minerals, magical plants, and sea monster materials. Materials. Don't worry. If we win this war against Abaddon, your contributions will be remembered, and you will all be hailed as heroes in the future, Vaan casually stated. That's great and all, but... Never mind. The family head sighed. Time ticked, and eventually, what was bound to come, came. Boom. Under another powerful impact, the black pillar tilted again, causing a triangular beam of crimson light from the dimensional crack to emerge on its side. The path between the two realms had been opened once again, albeit a small one. Moments later, a dark figure emerged from the opening on the side of the black pillar, blocking some of the crimson light shining through from the other side. Given the figure's casual movement under the black pillar's suppressive power, Vaan didn't need to guess who it was. Great Devil Abaddon has descended. Abaddon swept his studying gaze across the foreign land before him. Due to his high vantage point, he could see much of the imperial capital's southern half. The mountains of vampire corpses near the foot of the black pillar immediately made him frown. However, he didn't find it surprising, considering the first and second vampire armies had their path of retreat sealed off. Swish. Vaan boldly appeared within Abaddon's line of sight but kept a safe distance between them. You're the Soul Master? Abaddon's frown deepened. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Report chapter comments. Abaddon heard that the human Soul Master was a peak demigod. Thus, when he saw Vaan, he was already 90% certain he was the human Soul Master mentioned to him. The 10% doubt was due to Vaan's celestial dragon wolf form. Nevertheless, before Vaan was given a chance to respond, he was immediately bombarded with blood and dark spears, each targeting every inch of his body. In a mere instant, Vaan's body was skewered into a porcupine-like state by hundreds of blood and dark spears. However, Abaddon didn't feel the slightest relief from killing Vaan as he sensed his attacks meeting little resistance. It didn't feel right, given Vaan's fleshly defense must be far tougher than ordinary human flesh. In fact, it felt like stabbing the surface of a water body. It didn't take long before he got his answer. The porcupine-like Vaan deformed, losing resemblance to a living being as it turned into a large puddle of clear water on the ground. The skewered body had not been Vaan's true self but merely his projection on a body of water. However, the level of attention to detail made his water projection look no different from being his true self. After all, the water projection wasn't just shown from one side but from all sides and angles, and it had fluid movements matching his own. It could have been considered a water clone if not for its lack of combat power. As such, it was only a water mimic at best. Nevertheless, it was still good enough to trick Abaddon. Even Abaddon did not feel good about attacking a fake body. It immediately reminded him of his frustrating battle with Hecate. Another trickster, huh? Abaddon uttered gloomily. However, just as he said that, multiple spatial rifts opened before more bodies of Vaan stepped out. Moreover, they all gave him smug, contemptuous looks like they were looking at a fool. A large vein immediately protruded on the corner of Abaddon's face. Even though Abaddon knew they were most likely all fake, he could not stand such blatant disrespect and insolence in front of him. How dare they look down on him? Pip, pip, pip. Abaddon casually struck down every copy with a blood spear through each head. However, the blood spear only briefly deformed the body of water before it reformed Vaan's image. At the same time, the blood spears disappeared into the space rift behind them. For their destinations. Poochie. Arg. Abaddon suddenly yelped in pain, finding several dozen blood spears impaled in his back. His blood immediately boiled with anger, knowing he had struck himself. You cunning little rat. I'll kill you. Show yourself. Abaddon roared furiously. Another 36 copies of Vaan emerged from newly formed space rifts before they lunged at Abaddon, surprising him. He didn't expect them to move on the offense. They weren't the same copies as the ones made from Hecate's illusory power. Upon further study, they didn't seem as real and lacked attacking power. Since they lack attack power, moving on the offense was pointless, unless the real one was hidden among them. Abaddon immediately narrowed his eyes and singled out a copy that seemed different. He swiftly grabbed it single-mindedly as it came at him, ignoring the rest. At the same time, Vaan seemed to have sensed the danger as he halted his advancement to retreat. However, he reacted too slowly and fell into Abaddon's grasp. Although Abaddon felt his hand passing through a thin layer of water, he also came in contact with solid clothes right after. I got you now, you little bastard. Abaddon roared heartily, giving a hard pull. However, in that exact instant, he also felt an equal tugging force on his back, pulling him away. Abaddon's eyes instantly widened in surprise. He realized his hand had passed through an inconspicuous pocket-sized spatial portal and grabbed himself. At the same time, Vaan gave him a disdainful look before deforming into a puddle of water. Abaddon thought he had caught Vaan's true body, but it was just another watered copy that looked a little more real than the rest. He was fooled again. Nevertheless, Abaddon didn't have time to be angry. He felt some slight threat coming from the rest of the 36 copies as they lunged at him with different attacks, some manipulated fireballs, some controlled wind blades, and some fired water bullets. The copies might be fake, but the power of laws was very real. Unfortunately, such a pitiful amount of law power was far from enough for Abaddon to take seriously, at least, that was what he wanted to believe. However, the slight sense of threat he felt couldn't be wrong. As such, Abaddon immediately covered himself in a blood field, protecting his body from all angles. Rumble. Several dozen attacks quickly bombarded the blood field. Whether they were fireballs, wind blades, or water bullets, they all dissipated after striking the blood field. Such was a natural result, according to Abaddon's expectation. However, his eyes once again widened in surprise, discovering dozens of tiny holes in his blood field. Some unknown power was actually corroding his blood field. It took Abaddon a moment before associating it with the death law. Only the death law could be so silent and subtle yet deadly effective against his blood law. After Abaddon reinforced his blood field, the growing holes became negligible. They couldn't reach him. Ultimately, there was too big of a difference in the power level between Abaddon and Vaan. Even so, if Abaddon had been a little more careless and underestimating of Vaan, he might have been slightly harmed. If that happened, it would have been a colossal joke, a stain Abaddon could never wipe clean. How could a peak demigod hurt a peak rank 6 divine being? Nevertheless, Abaddon had to admit Vaan was extremely talented. He was so young yet already so skillful with so many laws, just what to expect of a soul master. Truly a person too dangerous to be left alive. Enough! Abaddon roared, eyes glimmering with intense crimson light. Azura domain. The surrounding space suddenly turned dark, crimson, and heavy with killing intent and bloodlust. The atmosphere felt so suffocating that even the other laws were suppressed. As such, Vaan failed to maintain his power of laws within the affected area, and all his copies shattered at once. So this is the Azura law. Truly overbearing, Vaan smacked his lips. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Report chapter. Azura law. The publicly undisputed ultimate fighting law in Chaos, not only could it enhance the user's combat prowess, but it also suppressed all other laws. Nevertheless, this origin law was also like a double-edged sword. When Abaddon summoned the Azura domain, Vaan immediately felt his accumulated malice and sins. It was like countless billions of tormented souls had been shackled to it, screaming for freedom and release. However, Abaddon would never grant them such wishes. The more he killed, the stronger he grew. A normal person would have succumbed to their guilt and sins, but not Abaddon. Come out, Soul Master. If you don't come out, I will start killing everyone dear to you. I will wipe out entire countries and slaughter every last human if that is what it takes to find you. Abaddon threatened. Crackle. Moments later, a space rift split open in the air before Vaan emerged. His appearance was immediately met with another one of Abaddon's fatal blood spears. However, Vaan's body also burst into another puddle of water. Given Abaddon's blatant malice and killing intent directed at him, Vaan knew there weren't any chances of talking or reasoning. The other party would kill as soon as they were given the opportunity. As such, he also wouldn't foolishly hand himself out on a silver platter. Nevertheless, Abaddon's gloominess intensified. Having fallen for Vaan's tricks multiple times, Abaddon already knew Vaan wasn't easy to catch despite possessing the overwhelming power to destroy him. Abaddon would only be chasing shadows unless Vaan decided to fight him head-on. Of course, a little rat like you wouldn't dare to come out and face me. However, you have also exposed your weakness, Abaddon coldly stated with disdain. You are buying time to protect these humans. Perhaps some of them are even important to you. I wonder if you will continue to hide away when I am killing every last one of them. Abaddon was about to depart for the densest group of humans when a large spatial portal opened, followed by Vaan's cold laughter on the other side. Ha ha ha. I expect no less from a devil. Even with absolute strength, you resort to underhanded means to force out a mere demigod. I wonder if you feel proud of yourself? The other great devils must be looking down on you, ha ha ha. Since you are so pathetic, I will give you a chance to find me. I am on the other side of this portal. If you enter, you will likely find me. But then again, you are too much of a disappointment for a great devil. I doubt you dare. Abaddon's fury and gloominess continued to intensify even further. However, he took a moment to study the large spatial portal in the sky. A boundless sea of stars and a lone white moon could be seen on the other side. Evidently, it had to be somewhere in outer space. After knowing that, Abaddon concluded it was a trap. Although the cruel environment of the void wouldn't be able to harm him, it would still be a great inconvenience if he was sent far away and allowed the humans to buy more time. Kakik, do you think I am a fool? You are just trying to trick me and buy more time. If so, why would I fall for it? I prefer to kill humans to force you out, Abaddon chuckled sinisterly. He, if only doing so would actually force me out, Vaan calmly replied from the other side of the portal. Abaddon, you say you are not a fool, but you have already fallen for multiple of my tricks. Between us, you are definitely the fool, not me. And since I am not a fool, what makes you confident that I would come out to stop you from killing other humans? It is true that they are my weaknesses, but what good will it do for me to come out? I don't have the power to stop you. Since I am powerless to change that, why would I risk my life doing something pointless? Do you think someone intelligent and vengeful like me will do that? I'll tell you what, I can't protect them now, but I can definitely kill you in the future, Abaddon. I have already given you a chance. It's up to you whether to take it. Vaan coldly stated. Abaddon coldly snorted, unable to retort. Shortly after, Abaddon stubbornly dashed toward the dense human group in the distance. But at the same time, Vaan's large portal started shrinking. In that short instant, Abaddon's expression changed. He immediately changed his mind and turned around, diving straight through the closing portal with impeccable timing. The portal disappeared along with all traces of Abaddon and Vaan. Abaddon found himself floating in the void with a beautiful white moon ahead. However, he didn't have the heart to enjoy its pretty sight as gloom shrouded his heart. Killing humans was something he could do anytime. On the other hand, if he let the Soul Master escape, his days would be numbered. Furthermore, he wouldn't be able to sleep peacefully during those days. As such, he had no choice but to chase the demigod human, knowing he was walking into a trap. "Little rat, where are you hiding? You better not have tricked me again," Abaddon bellowed. Despite the vacuum of space having nothing to carry sound, Abaddon's empowered voice still traveled far and wide through the void. It was seemingly backed by the power of law. Nevertheless, Abaddon's calling was quickly greeted with a flame arrow zooming in from several tens of thousand meters away. Although the flame arrow carried the destructive force to annihilate any peak demigod, such pitiful power was nothing in front of Abaddon. Pish! With a cold snort, Abaddon casually slapped the flame arrow away like he was shooing away flies. Afterward, he immediately flew toward the starting point of the flame arrow's appearance, which came from around the moon. "Is this where you want to play? You are more foolish than I thought. True, this place is the domain of space. However, it is also the domain of darkness." Abaddon quickly shot around the moon to see where Vaan was hiding. However, what awaited him was an enormous dark hole on the surface of the moon. As for Vaan, he was nowhere to be seen. Rumble. Something is coming. Abaddon's gaze immediately turned serious, sensing something emerging from the moon's abyss. Abaddon scrutinized the abyss on the surface of the moon but failed to see through its veil of infinite darkness. Even though he had perfect night vision, he still couldn't see the bottom of the hole. Just as he moved closer to check, he finally saw what was emerging from the moon's abyss. It was an enormous moving body of earth. Roar. The pure earth elemental worm roared, causing the surrounding space to tremble like frail glass on the verge of shattering. What the? Abaddon immediately retreated several thousand meters back, eyes widened in shock at the thing before him. "What kind of earth elemental is this?" Abaddon exclaimed. He was instantly taken aback by the powerful spacequake the pure earth elemental worm generated. However, he soon realized it was only an early rank 6 divine being. The spacequake made the pure earth elemental worm appear more powerful than it seemed. But since it was only an earth rank 6 divine being, he had nothing to fear. "Is this your trump card, human?" Abaddon uttered with contempt. After the pure earth elemental worm locked onto Abaddon's figure, it instantly pursued him in a frenzied state, greatly attracted by his powerful blood energy. Abaddon immediately narrowed his eyes. "You dare challenge me? Know your place, worm." Darkness swiftly surged into the area, weaving around the pure earth elemental worm's colossal body like a web cocoon. "Die!" Abaddon clenched his fist. The dark cocoon immediately shrunk in that instant. Bits of grounded rocks and soil oozed out of the tiny gaps while the rest of its earthen body was either diced up by the constriction or compressed to the limits. Although it still seemed whole, it had already been diced into thousands of pieces. After the darkness dissipated, the pure earth elemental worm slowly floated apart. However, the pure earth elemental worm quickly reformed its broken body moments later. All its missing parts were returned to their original place and state within seconds and didn't seem to have been damaged in the first place. Shortly after, the pure earth elemental worm resumed its pursuit of Abaddon. "What?" Abaddon's eyes widened in surprise, not expecting the pure earth elemental worm to survive such an attack. Divine rank elemental spirits were immune to physical attacks but not magic, let alone the power of law, which, in a sense, was a stronger form of magic. As such, the divine rank earth spirit should have been destroyed by the darkness law. However, the reality was quite different from his expectations. A variant species? Abaddon suspected. Nevertheless, variant or not, the earthworm was just a little more tenacious than normal divine rank elemental spirits. It would still die once its energy was exhausted. Abaddon quickly followed up with another darkness attack, an enormous spear of darkness. It was immediately hurled at the earthworm's mouth shortly after forming. Since the last attack failed to destroy the earthworm from the outside, Abaddon intended to destroy it from the inside next. However, a large spatial portal suddenly appeared between the two. It immediately swallowed the spear of darkness before disappearing. The moment it did, Abaddon felt a sense of danger from behind. "This trick again?" Abaddon uttered gloomily. Abaddon blew away the spear of darkness with an equal opposing power of darkness he had gathered in an instant. However, in the next instant, his figure soon disappeared into the gaping maw of the colossal pure earth elemental worm. He was quickly greeted with thousands of razor-sharp teeth threatening to tear his body apart. However, under the protection of the darkness law, the pure earth elemental worm failed to break Abaddon's defense. From the outside, Vaan silently observed the situation from an obscured location among the floating space debris. After watching the earthworm swallow Abaddon, his expression remained unchanged. He knew the pure earth elemental worm was not enough to deal with Abaddon. Just as Vaan expected, the pure earth elemental worm's colossal body soon exploded from the inside out, sending its huge masses of earthly debris shooting into the depths of the dark void. At the same time, Abaddon emerged from within, eyes sharply scanning the dark surroundings in search of Vaan. "Come out. I know you are hiding around here," Abaddon barked. Nevertheless, he didn't have time to continue searching for Vaan as he noticed the pure earth elemental worm reforming itself, albeit at a slower pace. The speed of its reform did not change, but it took longer due to its body parts being further away. However, parts of the moon were quickly absorbed to make up for the missing parts. Still not dead? Truly tenacious. Following Abaddon's displeased look, the pure earth elemental worm was destroyed another 6 times through different means of attack. Each time it reformed, Abaddon became more and more surprised. Even after he used the Azura law, Abaddon still failed to slay the pure earth elemental worm. What the hell is this thing? Why won't you die? What the fuck do you want from me? You're just a damn worm. Abaddon cursed with dismay. The pure earth elemental worm was like a piece of shit he couldn't get rid of once he stepped on it. Piss off. Abaddon roared, increasingly furious and annoyed. Abaddon became so preoccupied with the pure earth elemental worm that he seemingly forgotten about Vaan. Meanwhile, Vaan continued to lurk nearby, observing in silence. Abaddon's cultivation was dropped to the 9th stage of the divine blood realm after he descended into Pangaea. But after following him to the Sea of Stars, it rose back up to the 10th stage of the divine blood realm. The worldly suppression was only limited to the Pangaea planet and didn't extend outside of it. Although Vaan was aware he had to face Abaddon at his full strength in the Sea of Stars, it was necessary if he wanted to make use of the pure earth elemental worm to delay him. And by the looks of it, his plan was quite effective. Abaddon felt like his authority was being challenged by the pure earth elemental worm's relentless pursuit and refusal to die. It had been some time since Vaan last visited the moon. Last time, he could only reach it after 3 hours of travel. But now that his spatial law had advanced by leaps and bounds since that time, it only took him an instant to reach it. Originally, it would have taken him 4 months of space travel to reach the asteroid field region and 8 months for a round trip. However, that time estimation had also been reduced to roughly 18 minutes one way and 36 minutes for a round trip. What seemed unreachable once was now within his sights. It was incredible that advancing his spatial law by 12-fold would result in a nearly 11,000-fold increase in distance coverage. Nevertheless, being able to do this much should be expected of him, considering his comprehension of the spatial law was on par with second-stage rank 6 divine beings. Stellar travel was expected of rank 6 divine beings, and those specialized in the spatial law should be the best at it. If there was a chance, Vaan definitely wanted to visit the asteroid field region to look for opportunities and treasures. But before that, he had to deal with Abaddon and the Evernight territory. Targets information. Name, not applicable. Race, Earth Spirit Worm, quasi-fourth-dimensional being. Age, over 1 million Pangaean years. Existence level, first stage rank 6 divine being. Abilities, magnetic field generation, earth manipulation, gravity control, eternal spirit, organic devourer. After obtaining the fourth-dimensional sense, Vaan was able to learn more about the pure earth elemental worm. Not only that, he could also see its true form. All this while, Abaddon had only been destroying the earth spirit worm's third-dimensional form. Unless the core of the earth spirit worm's fourth-dimensional aspect was destroyed, it wouldn't be killed no matter how many times its third-dimensional form was shattered into oblivion. However, Abaddon could not perceive the fourth dimension, let alone interact with it. Thus, he was fated to never be able to kill the earth spirit worm. That said, it was still interesting to watch Abaddon making the attempts. Each time Vaan saw the earth spirit worm blown apart, the shattering of its earthen parts was like that of breaking an outer shell, the inner main body remained unaffected. Furthermore, this inner main body was like the invisible outer beings he had seen in his past life memories. It could hardly be seen and even harder to interact with. However, Vaan didn't find this strange. It was like trying to fit a whole apple into a single point on a straight line that had just been drawn on paper. Furthermore, that single point on the straight line hosted an entire universe of its own. Physically, the apple couldn't be there, and yet it was. As a quasi-fourth-dimensional being, the earth spirit worm was like that apple. Its main body existed in a different dimension parallel to the third physical dimension, except a small part was more connected to the third-dimensional world than normal fourth-dimensional beings. What Vaan didn't understand was how the quasi-fourth-dimensional being came to be. Considering his chaos verse didn't have chaos's protection as it still existed outside of it, it was no surprise that outer beings could invade it. However, how was the quasi-fourth-dimensional being created? Was it the offspring of those outer beings? Why wasn't it a complete fourth-dimensional being if that was the case? Of course, Vaan never considered the possibility of a fourth-dimensional being with a third-dimensional being copulating to create it. The sheer thought of it was borderline ridiculous. Vaan thought of several other plausible explanations for the earth spirit worm's existence, but he could only look into it another time. If there was an opportunity to kill Abaddon, then there was no need to wait until Hecate arrived. Abaddon destroyed the earth spirit worm's physical form over 50 times before realizing it was pointless to continue since he understood it couldn't be killed. But at the same time, if he didn't do so, it would continue to harass him. During this time, Vaan also sneak-attacked Abaddon several times without exposing himself. The cumulative frustration eventually made Abaddon erupt in anger. Human. Do you know nothing better than these cheap tricks? Where is your honor? Come out and face me openly. Abaddon barked. And where is the honor in a peak rank 6 divine being picking on a peak demigod? You are truly shameless. Vaan's voice oscillated from several locations created with pocket portals, obscuring the source. Abaddon didn't feel ashamed, but his face did grow colder. Humph. Do you think I can't find you if you keep hiding? Shortly after sealing the earth spirit worm with darkness, Abaddon quickly sent pulses of darkness surging outwards to scan his surroundings. After a moment, he immediately manipulated his power of darkness to hurl the earth spirit worm in the direction of an inconspicuous-looking space debris. Boom! Space debris shattered into smaller fragments upon impact with the earth spirit worm's colossal body. However, Vaan had already escaped with spatial shift. Even so, he left some traces of his movements, causing Abaddon to lock onto his spatial coordinates. He immediately shot a beam of darkness in that direction, eyes gleaming with killing intent. Poochie. I found you, Arg. Abaddon suddenly cried in pain. Although he had launched a fatal strike at Vaan, it was immediately redirected with a portal and struck him in the back. How many times have you fallen for that same trick? Haven't you learned by now? Following Vaan's ridicule, the Earth Spirit Worm launched itself back at Abaddon, which further pissed him off. As for Vaan's insulting remark, he had no comment. Only he knew how impeccably timed and precise the redirected attacks were. It took far more than skills and couldn't be replicated by just any spatial user. Sure, they could also open portals to redirect his attacks. However, it wouldn't be so impossibly difficult to dodge like this. The person also had foresight and swift reflexes. Abaddon wouldn't give Vaan the benefit of being triggered by his provocations. The only way to deal with Vaan's spatial tricks was to render them ineffective. Abaddon felt his pride hurt that he had to expend so much effort to deal with such a weak soul master. Your playtime ends here, human, Abaddon coldly declared. Azura Domain. Previous chapter. Shortly after Abaddon's Azura Domain spread out and covered a large region of space around himself, it became impossible for Vaan to repeat the same trick on him. He wouldn't be able to create space portals within the Crimson Domain. More importantly, if he found himself caught in it, it would also be difficult for him to escape with his life. Entering Abaddon's Azura Domain was akin to a prey getting stuck in spiderwebs. Fortunately, Vaan had the Earth Spirit Worm to distract Abaddon. Between them, Abaddon was definitely the more appetizing target due to the powerful blood energy contained within his body. Boom! The Earth Spirit Worm tried to swallow Abaddon in one bite, but the latter shifted to its side and shattered its entire head with a single smack. Glaring red, seemingly diabolical runes coursed around Abaddon's body like an energy circuit, granting him unparalleled physical might, among other yet-to-be-discovered benefits. These red runes were formed from the Azura Law. I am done with you. Don't get in my way. Abaddon snorted at the disintegrated Earth Spirit Worm before sweeping the surroundings for Vaan. After detecting his location, Abaddon immediately shot at him at an incredible speed. Red runes formed at the soles of his feet as he stepped on them and thrust himself forward. Abaddon crossed several thousand meters of empty space like he was sprinting on solid ground. At the same time, the Azura Domain followed him, suppressing other laws in the area. Vaan narrowed his eyes, sensing the imminent danger. The Azura Domain had been cast out like a big spiderweb, locking down the space. Going around it was possible, but going through it was suicide. The spatial shift would be cancelled midway when it intersected with the Azura Domain. Nevertheless, Vaan's spatial law had huge distance coverage. With a single jump, he appeared 300 kilometers to the left. With another leap, he passed Abaddon and made it behind the reforming Earth Spirit Worm. However, Abaddon followed him in hot pursuit. I've locked onto you now. You can run, but you can't hide. Abaddon boasted as he charged at Vaan, not putting the Earth Spirit Worm in his eyes. However, if Vaan truly wanted to lose him, Abaddon would never be able to catch up to him, not unless he was also proficient in the law of space. Out of my way. Abaddon barked. The Earth Spirit Worm had only just finished reforming when it was smacked into pieces again. Meanwhile, Abaddon's vicious smile grew increasingly confident as he closed in on Vaan despite knowing he would escape with another spatial shift. Abaddon knew Vaan was buying time, but it was also more advantageous for him the longer the battle dragged out due to the vast difference in their cultivation. Run. Keeping running. I want to see how long you can keep running. You don't attack but only run to conserve your soul force. However, after running for so long, I wonder how much soul force you have left. Abaddon howled. Nevertheless, Vaan remained calm despite the overwhelming odds against him. He continued to flee from Abaddon while the Earth Spirit Worm lagged behind. Suddenly, Vaan took out a piece of space debris from his heaven-swallowing space and hurled it at Abaddon. Its speed was incredibly swift. Coupled with Abaddon charging straight at it, the potential impact force of their collision instantly reached a terrifying level. Unfortunately, the space debris was not sturdy enough to threaten Abaddon's life, let alone harm him in any way. It was immediately weakened under the Azura Domain's effects and smashed into powder with a single slap. Nevertheless, some debris powder still got into Abaddon's eyes and irritated him. Is that the best you got? Abaddon thundered. In response, Vaan hurled several dozen more space debris at Abaddon, each perfectly calculated to collide with him. At the same time, he studied how the Azura Domain affected the space debris. After collecting sufficient data, Vaan willed, "Time to work, Tia." Q. Topaz answered excitedly. After a long period of idleness, it was finally time for her to shine. She immediately supplied Vaan with mana, allowing him to use her exclusive abilities through their spirit contract. Earth manipulation. Earth transmutation. When Vaan absorbed Varana's memories and acquired peak demigod-level comprehension of the wind law and water law, he also gained everything he needed to craft weapons of mass destruction by himself. With the power of space, fire, earth, wind, water, and raw materials readily found in his heaven-swallowing space, if he still couldn't create a hydrogen bomb, then he was truly incompetent. Each part of the two-stage thermonuclear warhead was created simultaneously under Vaan's powerful multitasking mind. Tamper formed. Boosting formed. Hollow core formed. Fusion fuel formed. Sparkplug formed. Reflective casting formed. After every component was created, they were fitted like pieces of a puzzle coming together to form a complete picture. Within minutes, the second-generation nuclear warhead was created. If not for the time limit of Earth transmutation, Vaan would have stocked up on hydrogen bombs beforehand instead of creating them amid battle. After all, they would become useless when the transmuted earthly materials returned to their original states. There was even a risk of it exploding, ruining everything within his heaven-swallowing space. Although Abaddon witnessed Vaan creating the hydrogen bomb, he had no idea what it was or what he intended to do with it. More importantly, Abaddon did not sense a hint of threat from it since no active reaction was currently happening inside it. However, it didn't take long before he found out as Vaan sent the 50-kilogram hydrogen bomb his way. Kinetic energy manipulation. Wind authority. Water authority. Earth manipulation. Vaan used his abilities and power of law to detonate his boom baby remotely, just as it was about to contact the Azura domain. Haha, what the hell is this? Do you think this block of metal will do any better? Abaddon's smug look abruptly froze. In that instant, he suddenly sensed terrifying amounts of energy being generated within the block of metal he had just viewed with contempt and finally felt the danger it posed. However, it happened so quickly that it left him little time to react. Kaboom! The hydrogen bomb was a second-generation nuclear weapon that comprised 2 stages, using fission power to trigger nuclear fusion. As such, its explosive power was hundreds to thousands of times stronger than an atomic bomb, which solely used nuclear fission power. At its core, its peak energy output would reach 100 million degrees Celsius, 4 to 5 times hotter than the sun. Even the power of rank 7 divine beings would be inferior to such explosive power. But despite such great explosive power, the nuclear weapons weren't practical in killing rank 6 divine beings, let alone ones that were rank 7. Its destructive power was too widespread and instantaneous. Nevertheless, it was still more than enough to give Abaddon the scare of his life. When Vaan's hydrogen bomb detonated right before the Azura domain, it lit up like a newborn star, radiating blindingly throughout the space region. At the same time, the Azura domain instantly shattered, and the colossal surge of energy blew Abaddon far away, into the gaping maw of the Earth Spirit Worm behind him. Moments later, Abaddon shattered the Earth Spirit Worm and broke free once more. However, lingering shock and fright colored his face. Despite being thousands of meters away from the epicenter of the explosion, Abaddon still suffered scorching burns all over his body. His graceful appearance was changed to that of a tormented soul from purgatory. He looked like a rock golem with lava veins. The power of the hydrogen bomb was simply too frightening. Fortunately, its power wasn't focused. Otherwise, if such explosive power had erupted from within Abaddon's body instead, he would have undoubtedly died even if he had 9 lives to spare. Abaddon couldn't help but re-evaluate Vaan. His mastery of several laws wasn't his greatest strength, but his alchemy knowledge. Why you know high alchemy? Abaddon uttered with solemnness and shock. The recovery of his left arm was already slow due to Hecate's lingering fusion law power. With the addition of nuclear burns, his recovery became even slower. High alchemy? Is that what you call it? Vaan paused, turning around with a smile. He glanced at Abaddon, who hesitated to pursue him further. Evidently, after eating one of his boom babies, Abaddon had become apprehensive, not that he found it surprising. The hydrogen bomb was as powerful as he had imagined. Nevertheless, in a world of magic, he still considered it to be crudely made. If he could combine science and magic, he would be able to develop a true divine killing weapon of mass destruction. Just as Abaddon recovered the courage to hunt, Vaan took out another piece of deep-sea steel. Abaddon immediately paused his advance with a wary look. He also summoned a new Azura domain to protect himself. The last explosion had struck him from thousands of meters away, and that was enough to inflict lingering surface injuries on him. Wouldn't he be severely injured or even killed if the next explosion occurred right next to him? What's wrong, Abaddon? You look a little pale, Vaan ridiculed with some amusement. Abaddon gloomily stared at the chunk of radioactive metal and sensed its extraordinariness potential. No doubt, it was the main material for creating that big explosion. However, extraordinary materials like that had to be quite rare and precious. I admit that I have underestimated you and eaten quite the loss, Abaddon acknowledged. However, how many more times do you think you can recreate such a powerful explosion? I reckon that piece of metal you have there is quite precious, and there shouldn't be much of it left. Before Abaddon finished speaking, he saw Vaan briefly pull out 10 tons of deep-sea steel and stow them back inside his heaven-swallowing space. That last explosion only consumed 50 kilograms of deep-sea steel. I still have over 10 tons. Why don't you tell me how many times I can recreate it? Vaan mentioned slyly. In truth, even if he had enough deep-sea steel for 200 of the same hydrogen bomb, he couldn't create so many at once. Topaz's mana capacity wasn't high enough to keep up with all of the earth transmutation and earth manipulation. Almost half of it was already consumed in that last hydrogen bomb. Thus, he could only create one more until Topaz recovered her mana. Nevertheless, showing off his collection of deep-sea steel was more than enough to bluff Abaddon. Just as Vaan expected, Abaddon was struck speechless by his display of wealth. However, Abaddon wasn't stupid either. He knew Vaan couldn't recreate the hydrogen bomb 200 more times even if he had the resources. That said, even if Vaan could recreate it several more times, that would still be enough to deter him. After all, the explosion had stripped away his Azura domain, which wasn't easy to maintain, to begin with. Its destruction also consumed a lot of soul force. If the Azura domain was destroyed several more times, he might even run out of soul force first. Suddenly, Abaddon found himself at an impasse. Since he had offended the Soul Master, he had no choice but to kill before he could grow strong enough to threaten him. However, the problem was that the Soul Master knew high alchemy and could already threaten. Once his soul force was exhausted, he wouldn't be able to use the power of law to protect himself. The next explosion after that would kill him. It took a moment before Abaddon realized Vaan's earth manipulation and earth transmutation didn't seem to make use of the earth law. But at the same time, it couldn't have been his own magic either. After all, men couldn't use magic unless they made a certain sacrifice. Even if they did, their cultivation shouldn't be that high. Just when Vaan thought he had bought himself a substantial amount of time, Abaddon's killing intent suddenly surged. Once Vaan saw that look, he immediately knew Abaddon had become desperate and more dangerous. It should have already been 30 minutes. So, Hecate should have arrived by now, right? Vaan wondered. Unfortunately, it was too far away to check on the imperial capital and get an update on the overall situation. Back in the imperial capital, the 5th progenitor and 8th progenitor watched the dimensional opening after Vaan drew Abaddon away. They were tasked with keeping the rest of the vampires from invading. Naturally, since there were only 2 of them, stopping more than 2 other vampire lords was impossible for them, let alone 7. As such, they had to rely on soft tactics to buy time. Several minutes passed without a single vampire sighted from the opening atop the slanted black pillar. The 5th progenitor and 8th progenitor started feeling relieved. They didn't need to confront the other vampire lords and could take it easy. However, they rejoiced a tad too early. At that moment, the shadow of a vampire lord finally emerged from the opening, followed by several more a few breaths later. Like Abaddon, they took a moment to observe the foreign world from their high vantage point despite their struggles to resist the gravitational pressure. However, struggling under the pressure for a bit longer was better than recklessly charging into unknown danger. Nevertheless, they were immediately surprised by the absence of battle. Even Abaddon's presence could not be found in the area. Where is the Blood Ancestor? Didn't he enter before us? The Blood Ancestor undoubtedly entered before us. But as for his location, I do not know. The 1st and 2nd vampire armies have been wiped out, and the Blood Ancestor is missing. Meanwhile, the 5th progenitor and 8th progenitor recognized that the 2nd progenitor was leading the group. I see the rest of you have decided to descend on this world. Old 5th, I see you are doing fine. What happened here? Where is the Blood Ancestor? I do not see him anywhere. The Blood Ancestor, the 5th progenitor smiled before saying, probably still on a wild goose chase with the Soul Master. Did you just say? Soul Master? Donovan Cromwell the 4th frowned, feeling startled along with the other vampire lords, except for one. Oh. You didn't know? It looks like Klaus Albatross didn't tell you why he woke you up either. He withheld important information from us in hopes of using us to deal with the Soul Master. I don't think I need to remind you just what kind of existence a Soul Master is that true, old 2nd? 2nd? Rosalie Orpheus the 9th sought confirmation from the 2nd progenitor. However, the 2nd progenitor remained silent on the matter. Even so, under the increasing pressure of his peers' gazes, he eventually admitted, that's right. But, so what? Did you die? No? I didn't think so. You have not faced the Soul Master, and the Blood Ancestor even acted first, saving you that trouble. Instead of judging me, you should be thanking me. If I didn't wake you all up, do you all think you would have the chance to walk under the sun again? Don't forget that we are not that close. We wouldn't be working together if we didn't have a common enemy, the 2nd progenitor criticized, seemingly assuming a righteous stance. However, his words only received the vampire lord's scoffs of contempt. Say whatever you want, Klaus Albatross, but I will remember your unkind intentions. The 5th progenitor laughed coldly, adding, even though I don't agree with most of the things you said, you did get one thing right, I should thank you. Although you almost screwed me over, you did give me the opportunity to join the Soul Master's side. Shortly after the 5th progenitor said that, the vampire lord's minds blanked momentarily. What did you just say, old 5th? You joined the Soul Master's side. Alistair Sanguine the 10th repeated doubtfully. You heard me, the 5th progenitor acknowledged and said, I have joined the Soul Master's side, and now I am here to give you the same opportunity. The Blood Ancestor initiated this war, it has nothing to do with you, at least not yet. You have not participated and killed anyone yet. As such, the Soul Master is not your enemy yet. However, he will be if you continue to serve the Blood Ancestor. Do you understand? The Blood Ancestor will undoubtedly die, but you don't have to go down with him. You can join the Soul Master's side like me and old 8th, the 5th progenitor persuaded. Don't be fooled by his honeyed words of deception, the 2nd progenitor laughed coldly before saying, the Soul Master is only a peak demigod. No matter how much of a heaven-defying existence he is, he can't defeat the Blood Ancestor. Furthermore, you have all absorbed the Blood Ancestor's divine blood. It's impossible to defy the Blood Ancestor, the 2nd progenitor solemnly reminded. That's right, the 9th progenitor widened her eyes before raising her doubts, old 5th, you were among the first to clean up your family. In that case, you should have also absorbed the Blood Ancestor's divine blood. What kind of spell did the Soul Master cast on you to speak up for him? Joining the Soul Master's side is meaningless if we can't defy the Blood Ancestor. Instead, we will only earn his wrath. Also, a peak demigod level Soul Master? Really? I can't believe you are putting so much faith in such a weak Soul Master, the 9th progenitor frowned. Ha ha ha, your doubts are reasonable, the 5th progenitor lightly laughed before shaking his head, however, I am under no spell. Old 8th and I have been liberated from the Blood Ancestor's control thanks to the Soul Master. Not only that, but we have also refined the Blood Ancestor's divine blood, completely making it our own. The Blood Ancestor's divine blood contains the secrets of his cultivation. You could say that right now, old 8th and I don't have any bottlenecks in our blood cultivation until the 10th stage of the divine blood realm, the 5th progenitor grinned. What? Everyone's eyes widened at the shocking claim. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Report chapter. Most of the vampire lords were immediately tempted by the 5th progenitor's claim. After all, they were 700,000 years behind in their cultivation. If they could also completely refine the blood ancestors' divine blood in their bodies, their path to the 10th stage of the divine blood realm would become smooth and clear. Who wouldn't want that? Nevertheless, the blood ancestors' power and authority were too great, easily deterring the vampire lords from rebelling. Even if the Soul Master could liberate them and remove their bottlenecks to the 10th stage of the divine blood realm, it was pointless if they couldn't defeat the blood ancestor. Furthermore, if the blood ancestor died, they would still enjoy the same benefits. Thus, there was no need to risk earning the blood ancestor's wrath should the Soul Master's side fail. Nevertheless, the 9th progenitor couldn't help but feel curious about the 5th progenitor's source of confidence. How can you be so sure the Soul Master will prevail over the blood ancestor? No matter how you look at it, the Soul Master has no chance of defeating him, the 9th progenitor mentioned. By himself? Naturally, it wouldn't be possible. But if he had the help of Great Devil Hecate, who the blood ancestor has pissed off recently? Definitely possible, the 5th progenitor smiled confidently. The Soul Master only needs to buy time until Great Devil Hecate arrives, and he is more than capable of this. The Soul Master has comprehended the spatial law to a high level, evading the blood ancestor until then wouldn't be difficult. If you doubt my words, we can just wait and see, the 5th progenitor suggested, adding, after all, the blood ancestor isn't here, so none of you are currently under his influence. The 9th progenitor found this agreeable, followed by the 7th progenitor and 10th progenitor after they thought about it. Meanwhile, the 4th progenitor turned to the 8th progenitor, who had not spoken a word. Old 8th, do you also think like old 5th, the 4th progenitor inquired with a sharp look. Completely, and more. I am different from old 5th, I have sworn my loyalty to the Soul Master, the 8th progenitor finally spoke. However, the moment he did, he shocked everyone with his words. They couldn't believe that the 8th progenitor would willingly serve someone with a weaker cultivation than him. Furthermore, they couldn't find any hint of regret from his choice. In fact, it seemed like the 8th progenitor felt honored to be serving the Soul Master. This was something they did not understand. If it was an experienced and powerful Soul Master they were talking about, then it would be completely understandable. However, it wasn't, it was an inexperienced and weak Soul Master. Furthermore, this Soul Master was a human, according to the 2nd progenitor's understanding. It was surprising for the 2nd progenitor to see the 5th progenitor and 8th progenitor act this way, especially the 5th progenitor. After all, the 5th progenitor had been the most eager to feast in the human world. However, his attitude has completely changed since then. It seemed the both of them had been humbled after meeting the Soul Master. But for the 8th progenitor to take one step further and serve the Soul Master. It seemed he knew something they didn't. Why did you swear your loyalty to the Soul Master, who is only a peak demigod? What did you see in him, old 8th, the 4th progenitor inquired further. Of course, the 8th progenitor didn't want to share the matter of his damaged divine soul with the vampire lords. Why would he share his weakness with others? You really want to know? The 8th progenitor asked seriously, instantly grabbing the others' attention, let alone the 4th progenitor's. Of course I do. Then, I will tell you, it's for my survival and future. The 8th progenitor's vague answer immediately made the 4th progenitor and the others frown. This wasn't the answer they were hoping for. Nevertheless, the 8th progenitor wasn't finished after seeing their unsatisfactory looks. Serving the blood ancestor is something I despise but would still do in order to survive. However, I naturally wouldn't serve the blood ancestor if there's a better choice. And the Soul Master is the better choice, the 4th progenitor asked. Far more than that, he is the future, the 8th progenitor replied, continuing, on the other hand, there is no future with the blood ancestor. He has lived for almost 800,000 years but is only a peak rank 6 divine being. This kind of talent can be considered absolute trash in chaos. He isn't strong because he is talented, he is only strong because he is old. We will be forever suppressed and unable to advance if we serve under him. On the other hand, the Soul Master may be young, but his potential is limitless. He will surpass the blood ancestor and reach a height we can only look up to. Furthermore, it will be done in a far shorter time. If I take the initiative to serve the Soul Master while he is weak, I'll be more valued at his peak. Perhaps my own achievements will quickly surpass the blood ancestor too, the 8th progenitor stated. This seems to explain more about the future aspect but not much about the survival aspect of your choice. The 4th progenitor doubted. When do you think the last realm war was, old 4th, the 8th progenitor calmly asked. Without waiting for a reply, he continued, we have been in forced sleep for 700,000 years. How much time do you think we still have until the next summoning? In that last realm war, all our divine beings either died or went missing. This instantly turned Gehenna into one of the weakest vassal realms under the Skymagia Star Kingdom. Without the 7 sins of the past to lead us, what do you think will be our outcome if we are suddenly thrown into the realm war now? The 8th progenitor asked. The 4th progenitor and the others couldn't help but shiver at the thought. Death would be the only outcome. Previous chapter. Next chapter. While the vampire lords had their discussion near the Black Pillar, the dragon, knight, witch, and warrior forces observed the situation from 10 kilometers away. Although they had retreated 10 kilometers from the Crimson Light domain, they still felt unsafe, especially for Emperor Vaan, Henrietta, and the other transcendent-level seniors. They could all sense the unfathomable, divine aura emanating from the group of vampire lords, and the discovery made their scalps go numb. It was beyond their imagination that the vampire race had so many rank 6 divine beings. They quickly realized they had only seen the surface of Gehenna. There was still a lot they did not know. For example, Gehenna's true count of divine beings was something they did not know. If a single Evernight territory already had so many rank 6 divine beings, then what about the rest of the Great Devil's territories? Nevertheless, even though the discovery was shocking, it didn't shake their resolve to resist. They already knew defending their independence and freedom from Gehenna wouldn't be easy. The power of the 7 Great Devils alone made people despair. Although Emperor Vaan didn't know how Vaan won over 2 of the vampire lords, he could only hope they would stop the other vampire lords from ravaging the land and people. Don't worry, Emperor Vaan. If they fail, I will stop them, Henrietta reassured him, knowing what he was concerned about. However, her words didn't make him feel any better, only more doubtful. Can you? Emperor Vaan doubted. I can, for a certain price, Henrietta asserted before softly sighing. However, let us hope it doesn't have to reach that point. Right. Emperor Vaan nodded, thinking silently. If Henrietta had any method of slaying rank 6 divine beings with only transcendent-level cultivation, the so-called price would be quite steep. Perhaps her life would be the price to pay. Please excuse me now. I shall return to my people. All right. Shortly after Henrietta returned to the temporary camp designated to the Black Rose Army, Victoria eagerly welcomed her back. In fact, she was so eager that it made Henrietta feel suspicious and alarmed. Henny, you are back, Victoria beamed with a wide grin. I'm back, Henrietta nodded for a moment before taking a step back in surprise. Why are you looking at me like that? Stop it. You're creeping me out. Kukuku, why can't I look at you like this? What's so creepy about this? Why don't I find anything wrong with it? Victoria retorted playfully, intimately rubbing herself against Henrietta as she doted on her granddaughter-in-law. However, her intimate actions gave Henrietta the wrong idea. She thought there was something wrong with Victoria's sexual orientation. Why don't you take a good look in the mirror and find out then? Henrietta shrugged, wanting to free herself from Victoria's grasp. Meanwhile, Astoria walked over from her camp. But after she saw the exchange between Henrietta and Victoria, she immediately paused her step. It took her a moment to realize something before she turned around and returned to her camp in a hurry, hoping not to get involved. Nevertheless, Victoria's questionable antics successfully distracted them from worrying about Vaan. Gehenna. Somewhere between the Evernight territory and the Dream Dust territory, Hecate rushed back to Vladigold City at her quickest speed, taking multiple transference arrays along the way. However, she did not return alone. For this trip, she had brought along the 3 vampirist lords and 9 dreamcatchers, whom she had never taken out of her territory. The 9 dreamcatchers were all divine rank dark fairies. Furthermore, they were all in the 7th stage of the divine dream realm, making them late-stage rank 6 divine beings. Due to the secrecy of the Dream Dust territory, their existence had never been known to the outside world. But Hecate willingly brought them out on this expedition to Vladigold City. Evidently, she placed greater importance on Vaan and her deal with him. Nevertheless, once the world learned of her dreamcatchers, everyone would undoubtedly be shocked by their existence. More shockingly, they were all under 10,000 years old, with the youngest among them being just over 5,000 years of age. It was as if the Dream Dust territory was screaming with talent. Its background couldn't be underestimated. Of course, Hecate herself was one of the youngest and latest close beings to assume the title of Great Devil in Gehenna. She was only over 20,000 years old, just second to Balmodin the Undying, who assumed the position after replacing the evil wolf. Of course, Hecate herself was one of the youngest and latest beings to assume the title of Great Devil in Gehenna. She was God Kezan. Before Hecate's ascension to Great Devil, someone else from the Dream Dust territory had held on to the title. Although that person neared 1 million years of age and had mediocre talent, it was undeniable that the Dream Dust territory had a superior heritage compared to most territories in Gehenna. At least, that seemed to be the case after Hecate managed the Dream Dust territory. Sigh. Hestia Teeps the 11th softly sighed as she followed the Dreamcatcher's lead since Hecate rushed ahead and left them far behind. She didn't expect to be returning to the Evernight territory so soon after leaving it recently with the 6th progenitor and 13th progenitor. The changes in the Evernight territory were happening too quickly. Do you have any idea what could tempt the mistress to return to the Evernight territory? Lady Hestia, one of the Dreamcatchers called 7th Dream suddenly inquired after slowing down to match her pace. I'm afraid not, your ladyship, Hestia shook her head before saying, I only know that the Blood Ancestor had initiated a war on one of the big countries of Pangaea. It probably has something to do with that. They were all gathered and left on such short notice that no one really knew why they were rushing to the Evernight territory. They were only told to prepare for a big battle. I see. Thank you anyway, Lady Hestia, 7th Dream gratefully expressed with a sweet and lovely voice despite not getting the desired answer. Hestia was surprised by 7th Dream's conduct. Despite possessing a superior cultivation base, 7th Dream wasn't haughty in front of her. She was respectful, elegant, and graceful, like the rest of her beautiful peers. Each of the 9 Dreamcatchers had a beauty that didn't seem inferior to the 7 comedy witches of the Nightmare Realm. The Dark Fairy tribe was unexpectedly such a pretty race. As Hecate rushed to Evernight Territory's Vladigold city, she couldn't help but imagine the worst outcome for Vaan and Pangaea. After all, a lot could happen in half an hour. Given the strength of Abaddon and his remaining vampire lords, it would only take an instant to reduce entire human cities to rubble. There was too big a difference between the two sides. As such, she didn't see how Vaan's side could resist Abaddon's invasion unless she arrived in time. However, she was also aware that she would undoubtedly arrive late, given the enormous distance she had to travel to reach her destination and the short notice she received. Gehenna was considered a single realm, but it comprised 7 habitable planets and 2 dead planets, all interconnected by countless transference arrays such that even the weakest of existences could freely travel between them. Otherwise, crossing several 100 million kilometers wouldn't take a mere half an hour, especially for those who have not stepped into the divine and comprehended the law of. Nevertheless, when Hecate arrived at the Evernight Territory's Vladigold city, she found the situation and scene quite different from her imagination. She didn't expect several 10 million vampires were still camping around the city. However, Hecate soon noticed the enormous black pillar sealing Pangaea's entrance. Her eyes widened with surprise at its sheer size. She knew it wasn't there the last time she visited the place. Furthermore, not just anyone could have moved such a massive object there, not even her, who was at the 10th stage of the divine dream realm and comprehended 7 different laws. Only someone who has comprehended the earth law or space law to a high level could have done so. Moreover, their control over them had to be exceptional. This should be Sir Vaan's doing, Hecate quickly concluded. Given its powerful gravitational field, she had to admit it was a very effective move in halting the vampire race's advance. Unfortunately, it could only delay Abaddon and the vampire lords, not stop them. Seeing a slight opening atop the slanted side of the black pillar, Hecate quickly realized they had already entered Pangaea. As such, she also increased her pace. Hecate wrapped herself in multiple protective layers of law to negate the black pillar's pressure, then darted straight through the opening. On the other side, the 5th progenitor, the 8th progenitor, and the rest of the vampire lords immediately sensed Hecate's divine might descending on the world. Their bodies subconsciously felt weak, especially after Hecate directed her sharp gaze at them. Although Hecate found it strange that the vampire lords were idly camping near the black pillar instead of creating atrocities in the human city, she didn't lower her guard. As such, the vampire lords almost pissed themselves out of fear after they bore the brunt of her divine pressure. Even the 5th progenitor and the 8th progenitor were not spared from her oppressive aura. In particular, the 8th progenitor suffered the most due to his damaged divine soul. Hecate's pressure instantly shaved off several years of his dwindling lifespan. "Your ladyship, have mercy. I am on Lord Vaan's side," the 8th progenitor squealed tragically. Being on the same side didn't spare him from a close experience with the butcher's knife. Hecate didn't withdraw her oppressive aura immediately after hearing the 8th progenitor's plea. On the contrary, she focused her oppressive aura on him, intensifying the pressure as she scrutinized him. This caused the 8th progenitor to almost cough up blood in anger on the spot. That was another several years of his lifespan gone. His damaged divine soul simply couldn't bear the pressure. Pressure. What did I do? What did I do? Why are you singling me out like this? The 8th progenitor screamed in his mind. He didn't dare to curse Hecate directly. His mind quickly churned before he added, "I have sworn my loyalty and service to Lord Vaan, your ladyship. Please believe me on this. You only need to look at the situation here to confirm this. None of the vampire lords are attacking humans because of my persuasion, under Lord Vaan's instruction," the 8th progenitor desperately and shamelessly claimed. The 5th progenitor looked at him speechlessly. Although it was true that the vampire lords ultimately chose not to attack because of the 8th progenitor, he was the one who did most of the persuading. Nevertheless, he chose not to refute the 8th progenitor's words out of consideration for his plight. Meanwhile, Hecate finally withdrew her oppressive aura after confirming the situation. At the same time, she was greatly surprised by Vaan's ability to earn the allegiance of a vampire lord with a higher cultivation than him. Just how did he do this? After learning more about Vaan's feats, Hecate's interest in him only grew. He was the biggest abnormality she had ever encountered. This soul-replenishing essence will help you recoup your loss. Hecate casually withdrew a vial of glowing gray liquid from her interspatial ring and tossed it to the 8th progenitor, treating it like something trivial. However, everyone was immediately shocked by her words. After all, anything that could improve or recover the soul was undoubtedly precious and priceless. However, Hecate couldn't care less about what they thought. "Where is Abaddon and Sir Vaan?" Hecate immediately demanded with a strict tone. "The Blood Ancestor and Lord Vaan are in the dark void beyond the sky, your ladyship. According to what I saw, it should be somewhere close to this world's moon," the 8th progenitor answered nervously with a mixture of joy and fear as he held onto the vial of soul-replenishing essence. He had just gone through hell and back, yet he felt happy overall. Did he enjoy the abuse? "Near the moon, huh?" Hecate softly repeated before nodding with approval. Vaan's choice was certainly well thought and not randomly picked. In such a location, she could draw out the best of her moon power, increasing their odds of defeating Abaddon. She only hoped she wasn't too late. "You lot best behave while I'm gone." Hecate left the vampire lords with a warning before she immediately soared into the heavens. After Hecate disappeared from sight, the vampire lords finally sighed with relief. The oppressive pressure from a great devil was truly frightening. On this point, the 8th progenitor couldn't agree more. They had never met great devil Hecate, but such astonishing pressure could only belong to her. "Fuck me dead. That was so scary," the 8th progenitor cussed. In the Sea of Stars, Vaan fled further and further away from planet Pangea, and the moon as Abaddon pursued him. Surprisingly, Vaan wasn't given a chance to turn around, not with Abaddon hot on his tail. Abaddon had given up on his other laws and completely focused on using the Azura law, knowing it was the most effective to deal with Vaan. With each Azura-powered attack wildly launched at him, the space destabilized. Space itself seemingly wanted to fracture like cracked glass, causing passage through it to become more difficult. However, they were in the Sea of Stars, which appeared split by the long, space was already unstable in this dark region of the void. As such, it was more easily affected by the power of origin laws, especially since the ancient wars of the distant past had already ruined it countless times. It didn't take long before Vaan was chased to a small region of space debris he had once visited and fought his battle with the Earth Spirit Worm. Unfortunately, this region of space debris wasn't particularly useful against Abaddon besides hindering his sight periodically. Even so, that was enough for Vaan to sneakily construct another hydrogen bomb and catch him off guard. Abaddon figured he didn't need the Azura domain's protection as long he pressured Vaan with his close pursuit and prevented him from freely constructing the hydrogen bomb. However, that would be his undoing. Vaan quickly weaved through the space debris, periodically disappearing out of Abaddon's sight before he further leaped through space, making it even more difficult for the latter to keep track of him. In those instances, he constructed parts of his hydrogen bomb and hid them inside his heaven-swallowing space. He repeated the same steps until he gathered everything besides his hydrogen isotopes of deuterium and tritium, his fusion fuel, leaving them for last. Meanwhile, Abaddon continued to chase him madly, smashing through every piece of space debris in his way. After Vaan sneakily completed his hydrogen bomb, which had the power of 1 megaton of TNT, he hid it behind another space debris and disappeared through space. Just as Abaddon smashed through it, Vaan gave him the surprise he deserved, detonating the hydrogen bomb lying in wait. Kaboom! The entire region of space debris quickly lit up like a white sun, with specks of blue, green, and purple here and there as the intense heat from the explosion burned up the scarce air in the area. At the same time, the space debris in the region shattered into bits, scattering off into the far reaches of the dark void by the powerful explosion. Like before, Abaddon sensed the imminent danger from the hydrogen bomb's internal reactions. However, he had little to prepare for such a close-contact explosion. Although Abaddon covered himself in the power of the Azura law to the best of his ability in such a short time, the hydrogen bomb still stripped away most of his defense and scorched him with the fiery might of the sun. Even a highly condensed Azura domain would not fully protect him. At the same time, the Earth Spirit Worm that faithfully tailed behind him also dived headfirst into the radiant region of scorching air, obliterating into earth and dust. Vaan watched the bright spectacle from over 200 kilometers away but still felt the effects of the hydrogen bomb explosion as debris fragments flew past him with incredible speed. He wouldn't survive a hydrogen bomb explosion in such close proximity, would he? Vaan wondered. Not even 3 minutes into the big blast, a second round of explosion suddenly erupted, blowing away everything from the affected region. Vaan's gaze quickly sharpened. After noticing a large mass of muscles and crystallized blood emerge from the explosion, his gaze became more serious. Surprisingly, Abaddon had survived the explosion. However, he no longer shared any resemblance to his former appearance. In fact, his appearance had undergone a complete metamorphosis during the explosion. His body mass had increased over 30 times, and he had grown several more limbs and heads. At the same time, he didn't have a single layer of skin. Furthermore, Azura runes were seemingly fused into his ghastly body. Did the nuclear fusion power force the Azura law to assimilate into his body and undergo a rapid mutation in his divine blood? Abaddon had turned into an ugly, disgusting, bloody abomination of a being. However, it was also this unsightly form that made him look like a real devil. Despite being so far away, the Blood Devil Abaddon still managed to lock onto Vaan's location. As the Earth Spirit Worm reformed nearby, Blood Devil Abaddon immediately grabbed it. Tendrils of dark blood quickly wrapped around the humongous Earth Spirit Worm and constricted, siphoning away its strength. The Earth Spirit Worm issued a never-before-seen painful roar, creating various spacequakes in the region. For the first time, the Earth Spirit Worm finally showed fear. It managed to break free from Blood Devil Abaddon's bloody tendrils by sacrificing a part of its true form. Afterward, it fled the region, no longer daring to pursue him. At the same time, Blood Devil Abaddon didn't pursue it. His gaze was still locked in Vaan's direction. His scalps immediately tingled. He burned Abaddon with the power of the sun, but instead of killing him, he created a more fearsome opponent. Although there no longer seemed to be a shred of intelligence in the Blood Devil Abaddon's eyes, his power had undoubtedly increased, especially after assimilating a part of the Earth Spirit Worm's fourth-dimensional body. Blood Devil Abaddon's mind seemed terribly twisted to the point that only malice and wrath remained. This was a result outside of Vaan's calculations. Several variables had coincided to produce such an unprecedented and unimaginable result. Vaan knew his tribulation would come with surprises. But this? This was something else. What was the main trigger? Ding! You have detected a scarce amount of fourth-dimensional energy in the area. Your proficiency in perceiving the hidden information from the void has slightly increased. The discovery of fourth-dimensional energy immediately startled Vaan. Such energy should only be found in the fourth-dimensional world. Of course, fourth-dimensional beings could have also left it behind, which seemed more likely to be the case. In that case, it further proved that fourth-dimensional beings had visited this space region before. The Earth Spirit Worm alone was already sufficient proof. Nevertheless, Vaan couldn't help but recall Varana's memories. He remembered that the outer beings were constantly drawn to chaos despite the vast sea of nothingness between them. Furthermore, they couldn't break the barrier protecting chaos from it. If the Lord of Chaos hadn't wiped out the subsequent waves of outer beings, they would have likely found their way to the vulnerable, youngest Chaos Versa Euro, his universe. However, according to Vanitas' memories, they quickly encountered the outer beings after entering the divine realm's divine abyss of absolute beginning. How could there have been outer beings in the depths of the supermassive black hole known as the divine abyss of absolute beginning? Nevertheless, the divine abyss of absolute beginning quickly got Vaan thinking. What if the divine abyss of absolute beginning was, in truth, a special gateway leading not only outside the Chaos-verse but to the fabled fourth-dimensional world? Perhaps it was hinting that the absolute beginning of the Chaos-verse could be sourced back to the fourth-dimensional world. In other words, the fourth-dimensional world was responsible for the birth of the Chaos-verse. Just like how a two-dimensional shape drawn on paper wouldn't exist if the pen hadn't entered human hands first, the birth of Chaos verses could be the result of some random act in the fourth-dimensional world. If that were the truth, it would be quite terrifying. After all, the birth of the Chaos verse was considered a miracle. However, after it was observed to be recurring over a long period, it became accepted as normal as the world's natural laws. If people found out this miraculous event was no more than a casual dump from a fourth-dimensional being, they wouldn't know what to think or believe. Of course, the actual truth of the matter probably wouldn't be something that vulgar. However, it was more likely to be something similar to a bodily function instead of an action dictated by choice. After all, a farmer feeding their chickens every morning would also be considered an absolute law to the observing chickens at least, until the farmer led them to the slaughterhouse. In that sense, Vaan was more inclined to believe the Chaos verse was something similar to a drop of blood born from the bone marrow of a much larger fourth-dimensional being. Its entire cycle and purpose was to supply oxygen and energy to this complex fourth-dimensional body. This thought was born from understanding the black hole's endless appetite for starlight. The stars produced a seemingly limitless amount of energy, but everything eventually ended in the depths of black holes. What would it be used for if all this energy flowed back to the fourth-dimensional world? If Vaan had to venture a guess, it was the sustenance supporting the unimaginably big fourth-dimensional being. But in that case, how would the said fourth-dimensional being view the growing chaos in its body? Chaos's existence itself defied the world's natural order. It took in every doomed chaos verses, originally bound to disappear at the end of their cycles. On that point, chaos would be no different from growing cancer in the eyes of that fourth-dimensional being. And like all cancer, it had to be removed or destroyed. Vaan wasn't sure how much time chaos had before such a time came. However, he could only hope he was wrong about his whole speculation. Nevertheless, although it seemed like Vaan had spent a lot of time dwelling on the matter, only a short instant had passed in reality after he discovered the presence of fourth-dimensional energy. Roar. The blood devil Abaddon howled, generating spacequakes throughout the surrounding space region and making it unstable. He seemed to have gained one of the Earth Spirit Worm's abilities. Moreover, it was one that worked to Vaan's disadvantage. Vaan couldn't help but wonder if his fourth-dimensional talent had caused the difficulty tribulation to upgrade in the fourth-dimensional aspect to match him. If that was the case, the heavens should go and screw itself. Damn thing isn't making it easy for me. Vaan narrowed his eyes, locking gaze with Blood Devil Abaddon. Neither side seemed to move for a moment. But the moment Blood Devil Abaddon did, space itself seemed to have shattered behind him, creating dimensional cracks and rifts. While some led to a part of chaos, others also connected with the endless sea of nothingness. The two were just like two sides of the same coin. However, the two were also at odds, like water and fire, and the current chaos verse was the innocent passerby caught in the middle of their conflict. Nevertheless, Vaan couldn't believe how fragile the universe was, seeing how easily the dimensional fractures formed in Blood Devil Abaddon's trail. The poor universe had certainly been beaten black and blue by the outer beings. Calling it a complete mess was probably an understatement. It was most likely on its last legs. The substantial damage to the chaos verse had greatly hastened its destruction. Nevertheless, Vaan instantly reacted with his swiftest retreat, expecting a much tougher chase than before. However, it appeared he had overthought the matter. Blood Devil Abaddon had indeed grown stronger after his ghastly transformation. However, his increased size and strength also came at the cost of speed. Including the crumbling space around him, Blood Devil Abaddon's speed was practically crippled compared to before. Even without relying on the spatial law, Vaan had no difficulty evading the present Blood Devil Abaddon. What seemed like a worse situation at a glance, in fact, turned out to be a blessing. A smile suddenly crept on Vaan's face as he utilized the power of fire and wind to evade Blood Devil Abaddon's mindless pursuit for some time. His backer had finally arrived. In the far distance of dark space, Hecate swiftly shuttled over after following the traces of battle they left behind. When Hecate came within sight, she locked her gaze with Vaan and nodded. However, Blood Devil Abaddon's ghastly form quickly captured her attention the next instant. What the hell is that? Hecate uttered with great surprise. Previous chapter. Abaddon. That's Abaddon. Vaan's casual answer quickly shocked Hecate, causing her to study the monstrous abomination again. It didn't have a single part that resembled Abaddon. How in the world did you reduce him to such a state? Hecate uttered but quickly shook her head the next moment. Never mind. You can explain it to me later. Let us deal with this thing first, Sir Vaan. Although Hecate wasn't too sure what Vaan did to Abaddon, she figured it might have something to do with the big explosion she felt while she was on her way over. Nevertheless, she couldn't imagine how Vaan could create such a powerful explosion of energy with his given cultivation. As such, she also figured that if she learned the truth of the matter right away, she would not be able to focus on the battle due to her sheer shock and astonishment. Be careful, Lady Hecate. This space region is very fragile. You wouldn't want to fall into the dimensional cracks. It's fine if it leads to chaos. But if it doesn't, there's no saving you. Vaan gave Hecate a warning amid Blood Devil Abaddon's pursuit. At the same time, Hecate quickly discovered that the present state of Abaddon posed no threat to Vaan despite his increased power. Thus, she wasn't too concerned with his safety. I am aware of that, Sir Vaan. However, I appreciate the concern, Hecate replied. Afterward, she quickly took a moment to study the fragile space region in greater detail. Vaan also didn't say much after this. Given Hecate's age, power, and wealth of knowledge, it was natural for her to know more things than him. Perhaps she had also discovered some things about the space region that he had not. Hecate noticed that Blood Devil Abaddon's body had merged with Azura runes and was constantly emitting the power of the Azura law. As such, each of his movements also carried its power. The fragile space region couldn't withstand the origin law's overbearing power, which led to its fragmentation. However, she quickly realized it wasn't the power of the Azura law alone, but any power above a certain threshold could cause the spatial fracture. The space region was simply too unstable and fragile due to a past ancient war of great magnitude. This was also the conclusion Vaan arrived at, but with greater detail due to his familiarity with the fourth dimension and his universe. However, for Hecate to grasp this much instantly was still impressive. Hecate quickly understood that she had to consider how much power she should use before using it, lest she fell into a dimensional crack of her own making. After she finished grasping the situation, she was ready for battle. Sir Vaan, you did well surviving against Abaddon for so long. Now, leave the rest to me, Hecate stated. Shortly after, Hecate concentrated a large amount of moon power on the tip of her finger before firing a powerful moon beam straight through one of Blood Devil Abaddon's ugly heads. Vaan was a little speechless, thinking Hecate would rein in her power a little, given the delicate environment. However, holding back didn't seem to exist in her dictionary, at least, not in that move. Nevertheless, Hecate's moon power was strong but also gentle. As such, it didn't fracture the space. Seeing the lack of effect moon power had on the space region, Hecate immediately followed up with several more shots, targeting every part of Blood Devil Abaddon's vitals. The past Abaddon wouldn't have dared to face Hecate's power with his bare body, but the Blood Devil Abaddon did. It didn't bother putting up any defense with its power of law. As such, its heart and all of its heads were pierced with moonbeams, and even Abaddon's divine soul was shattered. Hecate deemed dealing such blows was sufficiently fatal. However, she greatly underestimated Blood Devil Abaddon's present abominable form. His life force was far more tenacious than she could ever imagine. In the blink of an eye, Blood Devil Abaddon fully recovered from all of his seemingly fatal wounds. Even his shattered divine soul was reformed. That was the greatest shock of all. Hecate immediately frowned. Not only did she fail to kill Abaddon, but she also attracted his malice. However, that wasn't important. What was important was the recovery of his shattered divine soul. That wasn't something a rank 7 divine being was capable of, let alone a peak rank 6 divine being. Transcendent divine power, White Nova. Hecate suddenly obliterated Blood Devil Abaddon with one of her strongest moves at the expense of shattering the surrounding space. Most of Blood Devil Abaddon's body and divine soul melted away instantly. However, he recovered everything moments later. His godly regeneration reminded Vaan of the Earth Spirit Worm. Impossible. Hecate was in complete disbelief after what she saw. She couldn't believe that Abaddon could still recover after getting 90% of his body and soul wiped out. This kind of regenerative ability had transcended her understanding. After all, not even rank 10 divine beings would have such a heaven-defying ability. In fact, even the so-called gods couldn't have recovered soul destruction so casually. This was something beyond that. In Hecate's mind, Blood Devil Abaddon's current existence was similar to that of an eternal being. Abaddon has fused with Azura runes and fourth-dimensional energy and assimilated parts of a quasi-fourth-dimensional being. He has evolved beyond a normal third-dimensional being. Normal attacks won't work on him, Vaan stated with a sharp look. Fourth-dimensional energy. Hecate gasped in surprise. Nevertheless, she understood what to do. After luring Blood Devil Abaddon to a dimensional crack leading to the endless sea of nothingness, she immediately blew him through it with a powerful blast of moon power. Begone, fiend! Hecate hollered. Wait! Vaan suddenly cried after sensing her intention, but it was too late. After Blood Devil Abaddon was banished into the endless sea of nothingness, the absolute power of nihility eroded his undying body and soul. What's wrong, Sir Vaan? Hecate asked with surprise. Vaan sighed with regret. Given Blood Devil Abaddon's state, he would have surely died if they worked together. As such, there was no need to kill him so thoroughly, like banishing him into the sea of nothingness. After all, his body was full of priceless treasures. Hecate took a moment before she understood the reason for Vaan's feeling of regret and loss. She couldn't help but feel amused by it. She didn't expect Vaan to care about treasures when his life was on the line. Would this suffice? It has 10,000 drops of Abaddon's divine blood. Hecate retrieved Abaddon's left arm from her interspatial ring and offered it to Vaan. Vaan was immediately surprised by the generous offer. You're willing to gift this to me? Vaan asked. If you honor your end of the deal, this thing will be of little value compared to what I will gain in the future, Hecate calmly stated. Thank you, Lady Hecate. Vaan accepted the gift, seeing no reason to reject it. After giving after Abaddon's left arm, Hecate nodded before glancing around at the ruined space region with steadily growing dimensional cracks. We should leave this space region, Sir Vaan. With this many fractures and cracks, it will become unpredictable and dangerous if we linger. Please wait, Lady Hecate. Hecate's suggestion to leave was quickly met with objection. Within moments, her gaze promptly turned sharp and serious when she followed Vaan's line of sight. Inside the dimensional crack of endless nothingness, the banished blood devil Abaddon had been eroded down to a tenth of his divine soul. All of his flesh, blood, bones, and most of his soul have been washed away by the power of nihility. However, this last fragment of his divine soul stubbornly persisted, refusing to disappear with the rest. Not only did the nihilistic power of nothingness fail to erase it from existence, but it even seemed to be tempering Abaddon's divine soul fragment. Seconds quickly passed, and Abaddon's divine soul fragment seemed to have grown a bit, or rather, it recovered a bit of divine soul. You're kidding me. This thing can even survive and thrive inside the endless sea of nothingness? It is truly tenacious, Hecate uttered with a solemn frown. It has already become a partial fourth-dimensional existence, and the nihilistic power in the endless sea of nothingness is too docile to harm it, Vaan mentioned. The power of nihility was equally destructive in its nature to erase everyone and everything from existence. Absolutely no one would ever think the endless sea of nothingness could be docile. Only people like Vaan could think that way. You seem to know quite a bit about fourth-dimensional beings and nihility. I believe an exchange of knowledge with you will be quite a pleasant experience, Sir Vaan, Hecate smiled. I think so too, Lady Hecate, Vaan calmly smiled back. Suddenly, Hecate chuckled self-deprecatingly, shaking her head. I came expecting to fight a tough, dangerous battle with Abaddon. But unexpectedly, you have already resolved the biggest problem. Even without me, you would have eventually dealt with Abaddon, though I do not know how you pushed him to such a state. I seem to have gotten quite the big end of the stick. You wouldn't renege on our deal because of this, would you? Hecate asked. Of course not, Lady Hecate, Vaan calmly smiled. In truth, after everything he had done until now, he only had about a tenth of his soul force left. Moving Black Mountain to block the Crimson Light domain alone consumed 30% of his soul force. It was actually such a gargantuan task to move an object of that size. As such, even if he knew banishing Abaddon into the endless sea of nothingness could reduce him to a killable level, he wouldn't have enough soul force for the push. Even if he actually succeeded, he still wouldn't have enough soul force to deliver the final killing blow. As such, Hecate's assistance was timely and definitely most welcomed in preserving his life. Otherwise, he would have fallen a tad short of surviving in the end. Nevertheless, there was no need to mention any of this to Hecate and sell himself short. Since you mentioned docile nihilistic power, I suppose only violent power of nihility will destroy Abaddon once and for all. I trust one can leave that to you, Sir Vaan. Hecate expected. Vaan nodded. Although he would like Abaddon to recover his third-dimensional body before killing him, there had been too many surprises up until this point. Ultimately, it was better to end Abaddon before the situation worsened in another unexpected way. As Blood Devil Abaddon's divine soul fragment tried to return to their dimension for a full recovery, Vaan conjured divinity-burning gray flames, a fusion of the fire law and nihility law. After condensing the gray flaming spear, he immediately hurled it at Blood Devil Abaddon's remaining divine soul. Naturally, Blood Devil Abaddon did not stand a chance in such a weakened state. The divinity-burning gray flames slowly obliterated him, erasing his remaining divine soul from existence. Blood Devil Abaddon's remnant divine soul writhed in pain as it desperately clung to life. However, it couldn't stop itself from gradually disintegrating into nothingness. Even so, it was tenacious until the end actually came. Only after all traces of Abaddon's existence completely disappeared did Vaan finally confirm his death. It's finally over, Vaan softly uttered with 5% soul force remaining. With this much soul force left, he could only maintain his basic life support in the cruel environment of the boundless void. Although he seemed perfectly fine on the surface, he was undoubtedly in his weakest state yet. Under this circumstance, if Hecate suddenly decided to stab him in the back, there was nothing Vaan could do to fight back. He could only helplessly accept the outcome. Hecate glanced at Vaan's defenseless back and noticed its subtle feebleness. Kukuku, you must have exhausted everything to survive until now and deliver that final blow, Hecate suddenly chuckled and asked casually, aren't you afraid I would backstab you now, Sir Vaan? Can you really trust me, a great devil? Vaan slowly turned about with a calm smile and said, if I couldn't trust you, I wouldn't have made a deal with you. And since I decided to trust you, I will trust you fully, Lady Hecate. My, you certainly have a way with words, Sir Vaan. You almost charmed me, Hecate said jokingly with a light giggle before suggesting, shall we head back now? Vaan glanced in the direction of the asteroid field region for a moment. Since he was already here, he might as well explore it after recovering some soul force. Can I trouble you to return and stabilize the situation back there first, Lady Hecate? Vaan requested. That's fine with me, Hecate calmly nodded before glancing at him curiously. But what will you do, Sir Vaan? Previous chapter. I wish to do some exploring after I recover some soul force, Lady Hecate. It's not often that I come out here, Vaan explained, seeing no reason to hide it. Oh. How about I accompany you, Sir Vaan? You wouldn't reject the company of a strong, beautiful dark fairy woman like me, would you? Hecate suggested, adding, as for the situation you are worried about, there is no need for any concern. Lady Ophelia and my 9 dreamcatchers are keeping me updated on the situation. Those vampire lords are as timid as meek kittens, Hecate stated. 9 dreamcatchers? Vaan uttered with doubt. Dreamcatcher is the title given to my divine guards. They represent the strongest powers under me and serve as the supporting pillars of my territory, Hecate patiently explained. I don't think I've ever heard of them before, Vaan expressed his astonishment. Although he had already vaguely suspected the other great devils to have hidden groups of divine beings, he was still surprised to hear about the dreamcatchers from Hecate. And that shouldn't be strange, Sir Vaan. Divine beings represent the pinnacle of power in the Gehenna Realm. Every great devil would want to hide their military force as a form of deterrence to guard their territories, Hecate casually explained. After all, if a war broke out between territories, the great devils would be locked in a stalemate. As such, it's usually the strength of their divine guards that would determine victory in such territorial wars. However, there is an even more important reason for hiding the divine guards, to avoid catching the attention of the Skymagia Star Kingdom. Given Gehenna's past disastrous losses, we do not wish to be forcefully dragged into its realm wars and repeat history, Hecate stated. Vaan furrowed his brows before asking, then, aren't you taking quite a big risk by exposing the dreamcatchers now, Lady Hecate? When Hecate heard Vaan's question, she immediately chuckled lightly, replying, what I just said is how the other great devils think, excluding Balmodin. That manwolf has no divine guards to hide, even if he wishes to. As for me, I have only hidden the dreamcatchers to give the other great devils peace of mind. I don't particularly concern myself with what the Skymagia Star Kingdom might do, Hecate added. And why is that so, if I may ask? Vaan politely inquired with interest. Hecate smiled slyly and said, if you visit my territory later, I'll think about answering that question then, Sir Vaan. Fair enough, Vaan calmly acknowledged, unsurprised by her response. He figured Hecate's lack of concern most likely had something to do with her background. Perhaps she had some connection with the Skymagia Star Kingdom, or maybe even more than that. Going back to your earlier question, I naturally wouldn't refuse your company, Lady Hecate, Vaan calmly answered before adding, however, I still hope you could at least help me check on the Earth Spirit Worm. It will be disastrous if that thing descends on. Vaan slowly stopped speaking as Hecate pulled out a tiny Earth Spirit Worm and showed it on her palm. You mean this thing? Hecate sought his confirmation. Vaan stared at the tiny Earth Spirit Worm dumbfoundedly. Compared to the Earth Spirit Worm's previous colossal figure, which could stretch for many kilometers, the tiny Earth Spirit Worm on Hecate's palm was far too small. He would have thought it was a different Earth Spirit Worm if he had not confirmed its information with his fourth-dimensional sense. I found this thing while I was on my way here. It looked like an interesting existence worthy of study, so I picked it up, Hecate casually explained. Vaan's lips twitched. To think that such a menacingly large creature had been reduced to such a pitifully small state. After its fourth-dimensional body was harmed, the tiny Earth Spirit Worm was like a deflated balloon, it hurled up like an injured animal and entered deep slumber on Hecate's palm. Under this state, it didn't seem like it could harm anyone. Although Vaan was also interested in studying it, he couldn't be greedy since it had fallen into Hecate's hands. After all, she had already generously gifted him Abaddon's left arm. Furthermore, the lake worth of divine rank stalactite milk he obtained from the Earth Spirit Worm exceeded its value. Since you have secured it, I have nothing to worry about then, Vaan said with a relaxed look. You don't want it? Hecate asked curiously. I do, but I can do without it. It's not something I need, just something of interest to study like you. Since it fell into your hands, that is your fortune, Lady Hecate, Vaan smiled. I see. Then, I will keep it for studying, Hecate smiled before putting away the tiny Earth Spirit Worm. Shortly after, Vaan focused on tranquil meditation to conserve his energy and recover his soul force. However, not even 2 breaths into his meditation, he was interrupted by Hecate's sudden gift. Take this vial of soul rejuvenating water. It will speed up the recovery of your soul force, Hecate offered a finger-size vial of gray, glowing liquid. This shouldn't be cheap, right? You're just going to gift it to me like that? Vaan didn't accept immediately, asking with doubt. It is precious to others, but not me, I have plenty of this stuff. So, you can take it with peace of mind, Sir Vaan. I won't ask for anything in return, Hecate generously said, adding, just think of it as part of my investment. Investment in what? A future husband? Vaan silently thought, but he accepted Hecate's kind intention nonetheless. You were thinking of something inappropriate just now, weren't you? Hecate queried with a sharpened look, hiding her coy mischief. It must be your imagination, Lady Hecate. My mind is as pure as clear water, Vaan calmly smiled. Hecate returned his smile without pressing the matter. She found it quite enjoyable to engage in such foolish banter. However, she wouldn't normally feel the same had another human been in Vaan's place with such profane thoughts. There was just something different about him that attracted her interest and curiosity. What could it be? After Vaan consumed the soul rejuvenating water, he immediately felt its potent power coursing into his mind and soothing its exhausted state. Within several breaths, he recovered 20% of his soul force, which he originally called mental energy. Nevertheless, after recovering 20% of his soul force, the potency of the soul rejuvenating water greatly reduced but did not cease, his soul force continued to recover at a 50% increase of his normal rate. Although it didn't seem like much, a near-instant 20% soul force recovery was definitely a lifesaver. Vaan suspected the soul rejuvenating water would be valuable, but the effects were more miraculous than he anticipated, greatly increasing its value. To think that Hecate still had many more of it. Vaan couldn't help but feel even more curious about her background. If she wasn't some powerful potioneer, her background must be truly impressive. Did you make this soul rejuvenating water yourself, Lady Hecate? Vaan inquired. You'll find out if you visit my territory, Sir Vaan, Hecate vaguely replied, reminding him to visit her dream dust territory again. Vaan could see that Hecate really wanted him to visit her territory. He helplessly shook his head, knowing he would only get all his answers once he went there. Where did you want to explore? That asteroid field? Hecate guessed after a brief look around for points of interest. Nevertheless, rather than calling the asteroid field a point of interest, it was the only point of interest. Given their present location, there was nothing else out in the star system to explore besides that. That's right, Vaan nodded. That asteroid field looks quite far, Hecate knitted her brows, saying, although my stellar traveling ability is quite fast, it should be inferior to your spatial displacing ability in terms of distance covered over time. I'll have to trouble you to take me along with your spatial displacing ability, Sir Vaan. In return, I'll protect you should we face any danger in that asteroid field, Hecate suggested. Vaan found her suggestion very agreeable since her powerful strength was the reason he accepted her company in the first place. That's fine with me, Vaan nodded and said, well then, please excuse my discourtesy. Shortly after, Vaan held Hecate's slim waist and shifted them through space together, covering a couple 100,000 kilometers in an instant. This is. Hecate was immediately astounded by the rapid change in space as they covered huge distances. She had already anticipated that Vaan would be proficient in the spatial law, but she still underestimated him. It's not that she underestimated his comprehension, but she greatly underestimated his control. Although she had not comprehended the spatial law to an acceptable level, she still knew much about it. As such, she quickly found out that the distance they covered in an instant had far exceeded the limit of second-stage divine rank spatial law. In fact, this kind of huge leap was most likely on par with the spatial ability of a rank 7 divine being. After all, a spatial user couldn't leap into a space they couldn't have sensed beforehand. It had to be within the range of their spatial sense, something that grew along with their increase in comprehension of the spatial law. Hecate couldn't understand how there could be such a huge disparity in distance covered. Since she didn't understand it, she had to figure it out. After Vaan shuttled them through space the same way another 100 times, Hecate finally understood what was going on with his absurd distance coverage. Spatial user spatial senses were normally like a spherical domain with themselves at its center. It was also inside this spherical domain that they could manipulate space according to their will. However, Vaan could alter his spherical shape sense into a more linear form, maximizing his distance coverage in a singular direction. Although Hecate grasped the concept, she still found it unbelievable. After all, the demand for control was so high that she didn't think it was possible, at least, that would have been the case had she not witnessed Vaan repeatedly pulling it off. Even soul masters wouldn't necessarily have this kind of heaven-defying control ability. After all, increasing the distance coverage by a couple of folds would have already been very impressive. However, Vaan was leaping at 10-fold to 20-fold the normal distance for the spatial users of his comprehension level. His level of control was simply in a realm of its own, it was unparalleled in the world. Back in the great Rathalos Empire's imperial capital, the vampire lords were having second thoughts over time as they waited. Although they had been greatly intimidated by Hecate's divine aura previously, most of them had never heard or seen her before. When they learned that she had only assumed the position of Great Devil around 10,000 years ago and was only 20,000 odd years old, their faith in her quickly dropped. They didn't believe she was as experienced as their blood ancestor and wouldn't be his match. This thought was further strengthened and they found out she specialized in illusions. Nevertheless, their growing flame of rebellion was quickly and thoroughly extinguished and the 3 vampirist lords and 9 dreamcatchers arrived 20 minutes after Hecate's departure. They were all shocked by the high cultivation of the 9 dreamcatchers and found it hard to keep up with the present times. The dark fairy race wasn't so powerful 700,000 years ago. In the Red Dragon clan's temporary camp, Ophelia suddenly stood with a smile and announced, everyone, Lady Hecate has successfully met up with Sir Vaan and slain the villainous Abaddon together. The sinister Great Devil is no more. Truly? That's great. Great. Henrietta quickly rejoiced along with everyone else presently gathered. However, Victoria didn't miss the chance to tease her despite everyone else displaying similar joy. Henny, do you know you look like an ecstatic wife after learning her dear husband will be returning home victoriously and safely? What kind of nonsense are you spewing, Victoria? Henrietta shrieked like a cat that had gotten her tail stepped on before furiously responding with a flushed face, I'm just overjoyed that we have won against a great devil. This is a joyous occasion. Sheesh, if you know I'm spewing nonsense, then treat it as such. There's no need to overreact like that, right? Kakik, Victoria chuckled and smiled like a sly fox. Henrietta immediately felt like a fish bone got stuck in her throat, she was unable to retort. At the same time, everyone gave weird looks, making her wish to disappear on the spot. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Over at Emperor Varen's camp, prolonged confusion hung on the faces of every commander and captain present in the abandoned building where their meeting was held. The arrival of Hecate and her dreamcatchers brought joy to the human side, this much was true. However, it also brought greater confusion to Emperor Varen's side. No one understood why Hecate was able to arrive with her reinforcement. After all, they had yet to locate Hecate's devil's contractor. Thus, communication and striking a deal with the great devil shouldn't have been possible. In that case, why did Hecate and her dreamcatchers appear? For personal reasons? Emperor Varen was under the impression that Hecate had come to settle her feud with Abaddon for the death of her followers. As such, he was concerned that they would still have to face a great devil no matter who came out on top. When Emperor Vaan sought out Kavat for answers, he was only given one answer: wait for the Supreme Leader to return, only he has the answer. As such, he had no choice but to wait with uncertainty. Suddenly, a raucous laughter resounded through a large part of the imperial capital, surprising everyone. Its source seemed to have come from the eastern sea. Ha ha ha. Where is my emperor nephew? Your uncle has come to aid you. Where is the battle? Point me in that direction, the sea emperor's wild voice sounded, shocking many people. Dragon Palace was quite far offshore from the imperial capital. As such, no one expected any reinforcement from there, at least not within the next day or two. It was quite surprising that the sea emperor arrived so fast. However, Emperor Vaan couldn't help but give a helpless and bitter smile after hearing his uncle's voice. After all, the sea emperor wasn't around with his people when the battle was at its peak intensity. But now that they had arrived, the war was practically over. Even if it weren't, they wouldn't be able to do much in the face of the rank 6 divine beings. Nevertheless, Emperor Vaan still had to receive his uncle regardless. Uncle, how did you arrive so fast? No, how did you even receive word of the situation here so quickly? Emperor Vaan inquired with surprise after meeting up with the sea emperor, who came with a force of 10,000 men. However, these men were all battle-hardened warriors with only a step away from transcendence. On the other hand, the sea emperor was more impressive. Despite looking quite primitive in his crude sea armor, his aura has surpassed the transcendent rank. The Dragon Serpent King notified me when the crimson light appeared. After that, the Sea Serpent clan assisted us in reaching the mainland quickly, the Sea Emperor explained while wildly searching the area. So, where's the battle? The battle has ended, for the time being, uncle. You came sooner than expected but still late, nonetheless, Emperor Vaan smiled wryly. Ended? How is that possible? The Sea Emperor was dumbfounded. Huh. Emperor Vaan forced a laugh and said, I'll explain to you on the way. Let me take you to introduce some people to you, uncle. This. Alright, the Sea Emperor blankly agreed, still finding difficulty accepting the situation. Pangea Star System, Asteroid Field. After warping through space for roughly 20 minutes straight, Vaan and Hecate arrived at the outer rim of the asteroid field region. What happened here? Hecate was astounded after she had a closer look at the place. Originally, she thought the asteroid field was just a huge space region full of asteroids. However, it was actually the remnants of planetary structures and a lost civilization. It was unknown how many planets had been destroyed to form the asteroid field, but it was a truly vast region of space debris, stretching over 200 million kilometers in width and orbiting the sun. An ancient great battle between clashing civilizations, or perhaps a massacre caused by outer beings, Vaan casually replied while surveying the region for points of interest. Not much is known about Pangea's history, and what I have learned about it can't be trusted from the root sources. Perhaps the actual truth about the past can only be found here. Then, let us find it together. I am also curious about Pangea's history, Hecate expressed interest. Vaan nodded. According to what he knew, Golden Dragon Pangea was imprisoned on the toxic water planet by an unknown advanced civilization, and a clash between it and her dragon civilization resulted in the star system's present state. However, the blessed Golden Dragon tribe believed that Golden Dragon Pangea willingly imprisoned herself on the planet to give the unknown advanced civilization a chance to deter her dragon civilization from acting against it. Although Vaan didn't know how much of the reason behind it was true, he also believed Golden Dragon Pangea willingly stayed on the planet. After all, having seen the Pangea planet from outer space, he had not discovered anything that could have been used to keep Golden Dragon Pangea imprisoned on it. From this, he could derive that Golden Dragon Pangea had a good relationship with the unknown advanced civilization or, at the very least, shared their sentiments. Although it should have been obvious what the unknown advanced civilization was, Vaan wanted to avoid jumping to conclusions before obtaining more concrete evidence. However, now that he had found some clues in the asteroid field, he could no longer deny it. The unknown advanced civilization indeed belonged to humans. The truth became quite clear, from the ruined megastructures inside the moon's core to the fragments of spaceships and cold corpses floating throughout the asteroid field. Golden Dragon Pangea wanted to protect the human civilization from her dragon civilization. Alas, she probably didn't expect that her action would be fruitless in stopping the clash between the two civilizations. More importantly, no one also knew that outer beings would arrive and ruin them all. As Vaan explored the asteroid field, he found remnants of both the dragon and human civilizations. There wasn't a single shred of life in the vast asteroid field region, it was a wasteland of the dead, one big graveyard. Unfortunately, any remnant technology and artifacts had been ruined beyond usability. Nevertheless, the one other thing Vaan came for was found in abundance: divine energy crystals. Any large piece of space debris would have at least a chunk of it, if not more. Since the treasure was in front of him, Vaan didn't intend to leave it behind. He quickly pocketed every piece of space debris containing divine energy crystals he could find. Within a few minutes, he had already hit multiple jackpots, collecting large divine energy crystal deposits. Just a single divine energy crystal deposit was enough to make his past gains seem pitiful. There was no room for comparison, it was like comparing a beggar's wealth to a tycoon's. Nevertheless, Hecate wandered over curiously after noticing Vaan's repetitious action. What do you plan to do with all of this, Sir Vaan? Hecate casually picked up a chunk of divine energy crystal and studied it without any particular interest in the object. Energy cultivation, of course, Vaan honestly admitted before raising an eyebrow, asking, "You're not interested in this stuff, Lady Hecate?" He might have been a little greedy for them if there weren't many divine energy crystals. However, there were so many divine energy crystals lying around that he didn't mind splitting the gains with her. Nevertheless, Hecate's following reply still surprised him. "Not really, no," Hecate casually shook her head and said, "I do not practice energy cultivation, so I do not need this type of energy. Even if I did, I still wouldn't need to fight you over it, Sir Vaan." Hecate chuckled and continued, "You should know that mana is the manifestation of existential power, it is the basis of everything in existence, and that includes this type of energy. As such, I only need to convert mana into divine energy if I happen to need it, and mana is something you can find everywhere in chaos," Hecate calmly smiled. After listening to Hecate's explanation, Vaan felt a little embarrassed. He felt like a poor beggar standing in front of a filthy rich madam, wary that she might compete with him over dropped coins on the ground. However, why would she be interested in some dropped coins on the ground when she could create them herself? If everything can be created from mana and mana can be found everywhere in chaos, why do people still fight over resources? Vaan casually asked. Chaos provides everything a person needs to become great, but not everyone is born equal, Sir Vaan, Hecate answered. Talent is a frightening thing. With it, anyone could rise smoothly without any bottlenecks or setbacks, shooting to the peak of life in a short time. But without it, they will be damned to a life full of struggles and difficulties, taking many times longer to achieve the same feat as a talented person. The mana is there for all, but not everyone can refine it quickly. Even if they can, they don't necessarily know how to use it effectively. That's why untalented people will always seek other means to hasten their cultivation. It just so happens that anyone can gain insight into the Azura law through conflict and bloodshed. Thus, you shouldn't try to reason with anyone trying to start a realm war, Sir Vaan. If they can start one, they will. More often than not, a reason is not. That is how chaos operates, Hecate stated. Vaan calmly acknowledged her statement. He was beginning to have a good grasp of life in chaos, it was one grand race. Most, if not all, would try to climb to the peak of life and become an unparalleled existence that could look down on all like the Lord of Chaos. And should they fail, they simply restart a new life. After all, in chaos, death was not the end. Suddenly, Vaan found something strange. Varuna, the Lord of the boundless sea and sky, was in existence on the same level as the Lord of Chaos. Although the Lord of Chaos was arguably stronger because he was the first to refine chaos and make it part of his power, he was an outerverse originator like Varuna. Vaan had not seen much of chaos, but he had already heard the Lord of Chaos mentioned multiple times. On the other hand, he had not heard of anyone mentioning the Lord of the boundless seas and skies. Have you heard anything about the Lord of the boundless seas and skies, Lady Hecate? The moment Vaan raised this question, Hecate's body shook to a standstill, seemingly frightened and shocked at the same time. I don't know where you have learned that name, but you better not speak of it carelessly in chaos, Sir Vaan. That name is a great taboo, just randomly speaking ill of it could bring damnation to one's entire realm, Hecate warned with a severe look. Why? Vaan uttered with surprise. Hecate looked at Vaan's genuinely curious look before she softly sighed. She figured it was better to explain everything to him herself, lest he inadvertently bring disaster to himself and everyone surrounding him trying to find out by himself. The Lord of the boundless seas and skies is the Lord of Chaos's most respected elder brother. He was in existence who could stand shoulder to shoulder with the Lord of Chaos. However, for reasons unknown to me, the Lord of the boundless seas and skies left Chaos in search of opportunities outside and passed away 3 chaos cycles. Since then, the Lord of Chaos has been searching for his elder brother's soul, which went missing in the bitter cycle of reincarnation. For reasons unknown to me, the Lord of Chaos is unable to track his elder brother's soul directly. He can only track his feeble aura. But each time he finds the source, he is always a step too late. The Lord of the boundless seas and skies' name is taboo because his every reincarnation and death would spread his unique aura to other lifeforms. When the denizens of chaos found out the Lord of Chaos was searching for his elder brother, I heard countless fools lined up claiming to be the Lord of the boundless seas and skies' reincarnation. This undoubtedly incited the Lord of Chaos's fury, and nothing good ever comes out of enraging the Lord of Chaos. Naturally, the Lord of Chaos wiped out each and every one of their lineage and realm. It happened so many times that the deaths and destroyed realms have reached a frightening number. Since then, no one has dared claim to be the reincarnation of the Lord of the boundless seas and skies again. Even if more fools appeared, others would always act first, snuffing out the rumors before they reached the ears of the Lord of Chaos. No one wishes to anger the Butcher of Chaos, and this is why the Lord of the boundless seas and skies' name has become taboo, Hecate solemnly explained. After listening to Hecate's brief explanation, Vaan found several questionable points that did not make sense to him. I wonder if Lady Hecate doesn't mind enlightening me on a few points I find trouble understanding. What don't you understand, Sir Vaan? If people only fear impersonators of the Lord of the boundless seas and skies angering the Lord of Chaos, they should only hunt such impersonators. I fail to see how that makes even the mention of the Lord of the boundless seas and skies a taboo, Vaan stated. That's because you don't understand just how many enemies the Lord of the boundless seas and skies and the Lord of Chaos have, Sir Vaan, Hecate replied with a helpless look. Because the Lord of Chaos is the strongest, no one dares to challenge his authority. However, that doesn't change the fact he is a cruel butcher who wouldn't bat an eye after wiping out entire realms full of life over the slightest offense. To someone at his level, creating new realms in life would be just as easy as turning over his hand. Even the lives and realms he destroyed could be undone should he will it so. He does not view life the same way as everyone else. While many beings fear him, there is also no lack of petty beings who wouldn't mind killing even the real reincarnation of the Lord of the boundless seas and skies to trouble the Lord of Chaos. Nevertheless, the enemies of the Lord of Chaos are of lesser concern. It's the enemies of the Lord of the boundless seas and skies that make his name taboo, Hecate stated. Enemies of the Lord of the boundless seas and skies? Vaan repeated with surprise. I understand your surprise. Anyone with the least knowledge of the Lord of the boundless seas and skies would know he was one of the most benevolent beings in chaos, beloved by all, Hecate mentioned. He has created the most habitable realms and enlightened countless beings on the path of cultivation. Many peak existences respect him as their great teacher, and many more lifeforms adore him as the father of life. He is the complete opposite of the Lord of Chaos. As such, it must be a wonder how such a respected being in chaos could have any enemies at all, right? However, the truth isn't hard to understand, Hecate said. Having heard that much, Vaan could venture a guess. However, it was better to listen to the answer from Hecate herself. Every time the reincarnation of the Lord of the boundless seas and skies died, the world of sentient beings he was born to would also be destroyed along with him by rampant beast tides, Hecate calmly stated. As such, whenever such a calamity strikes the sentient worlds, humans and all other sentient races would be forced to flee their realms, lest they get swept in the furious tempest of beast tides. Without sentient races thereafter, those abandoned realms became the holy land for savage beasts. A wild realm is what we call such realms without sentient civilizations. When these wild realms are numerous on the scale of an entire chaos verse, it becomes a wild chaos verse. Supposedly, there were only around 40 wild chaos verses in the past. However, since the Lord of the boundless seas and skies' vicious cycle of reincarnation started, that number has nearly doubled to 76 wild chaos verses. Collectively, this group of wild chaos verses is called the Great Wilderness. Can you understand how many beings from these 36 chaos verses have lost their homes and loved ones to the rampant beast tides in the past 2 chaos cycles, Sir Vaan? Now, do you understand why the name is taboo? Hecate asked. As Vaan thought, it was indeed because of the countless deaths of his reincarnations. At the same time, he finally understood why the name was taboo. There were simply far too many sentient beings who had lost their homes and loved ones to the beast tides caused by the death of his reincarnations. Their hatred towards him would be understandable. Furthermore, this undesired hatred towards him was most likely exacerbated further by their sufferings and unfair treatment after they migrated to other chaos verses. After all, they wouldn't be treated equally if the natives regarded them as outsiders. Although the Lord of the boundless seas and skies was at fault for the destruction of their homes and the death of their loved ones, it was always easier to pin the blame on a single being than countless difficult-to-track, unknown culprits. Nevertheless, Vaan quickly understood that it was unwise to expose his identity. There were far too many victims of the rampant beast tides. Anyone he encountered in chaos could be his potential enemy due to this hatred. Furthermore, their strength wouldn't be weak if they were part of the earliest groups of victims and lived to the present day. There was also the possibility that this hatred was passed on to subsequent generations of their descendants. On another note, Vaan was greatly astonished to learn the Great Wilderness possessed 76 wild chaos verses. After all, there should only be 127 chaos verses in chaos, 128 if the present universe was added. In other words, there were more wild chaos verses than sentient inhabited chaos verses. Has the peak existences of chaos never attempted any reclamation expeditions on these wild chaos verses, Lady Hecate? Vaan casually inquired with some suspicions. And why would they do that? Hecate lightly snickered at the idea, shaking her head and saying, to the peak existences of chaos have been under the tutelage of the Lord of the boundless seas and skies. The vagabonds from the wild chaos verses are all sinners who have killed their respected teacher and delayed his return. They have absolutely had no reason to help them reclaim their lost chaos verses, let alone the Lord of Chaos himself. It's already their greatest mercy to let these vagabonds live and atone for their sins. Furthermore, the rampant beast tides are mostly caused by the sky and sea beasts, the beloved creatures of the Lord of the boundless seas and skies. Anyone with respect for him wouldn't willfully slaughter his creations for the sinner's sake, Hecate stated. Vaan furrowed his brows. Previous chapter. Next. According to Hecate, the peak beings of chaos wouldn't help the vagabonds reclaim their wild chaos verses because of their respect for the Lord of the boundless seas and skies. However, given how many had become wild chaos verses, there should have been countless peak beings within these fallen chaos verses. Did they not possess the power to reclaim their chaos verses? Or did they choose not to out of guilt? Maybe they were also stopped by other peak beings. Or were the power of the beasts from the wild chaos verses simply stronger? Lady Hecate, do you know how powerful the beasts in the Great Wilderness are? Vaan inquired. It seems you have noticed the problem. Your mind is indeed sharp, Hecate acknowledged with a smile before saying, you've guessed it, Sir Vaan. Another reason the Great Wilderness remains unreclaimed is indeed because of the strength of the beasts inhabiting it. Supposedly, the Great Wilderness used to be a great place for tempering and finding opportunities in the past. However, it also had a degree of danger to the strength of the beasts. After all, some of the strongest beasts in the Great Wilderness are not inferior to cultivators in any way. In some aspects, they even exceed them. Many people guess that beasts in the Great Wilderness were able to grow so powerful because they gave up spiritual evolution for more instinctual evolution to survive in their cruel environment. However, everything changed with the repeated deaths of the Lord of the Boundless Seas and Skies' reincarnation. The growth of the beasts went out of control, especially the sea and sky life forms. There were rumors that some of the strongest beasts in the great wilderness have even surpassed Empyrean gods, glimpsing into the secret of the origin realm, Hecate mentioned. Thank you, Lady Hecate. I have learned a lot from you. However, I believe it's about time we return, Vaan suddenly suggested after expressing his gratitude. Oh? Hecate uttered with surprise before asking, you don't want to collect any more divine energy crystals, Sir Vaan? I've collected more than enough, Lady Hecate. Should I find myself short, I can always seek your help in producing some for my use since I'll be visiting your territory sooner or later, Vaan casually replied. Hecate suddenly smiled wryly before honestly admitting with a bashful look, indeed, divine energy isn't worth much to me, but I may have downplayed the difficulty of converting mana into it a bit. You see, divine energy is the higher form of power from refining spirit energy. In a sense, it would also be on a higher level than mana if we were to compare them as is. If it's only converting mana into spirit energy, I won't have an issue generating an abundance of spirit energy. But for divine energy, I'm afraid it will consume a lot more time and effort to create some. So, it's still better for you to collect the divine energy crystals here, Hecate smiled awkwardly. Vaan quickly understood her meaning. Although she could indeed convert mana into divine energy, the amount wouldn't be worth her time and effort. To compare divine energy and mana was like comparing a full box with an empty one. Divine energy contained the concentrated, refined essence of spirit energy. In contrast, the mana ever present in chaos was heavily diluted of its existential power. If one wanted to compare the difference between divine energy and mana, one would have to refine mana to the same level of concentration as divine energy first. Only then would the mana be superior to divine energy. Otherwise, divine energy was indeed stronger than basic mana. Nevertheless, my opinion remains unchanged. I have collected enough divine energy crystals for now, Lady Hecate, Vaan replied before mentioning, it's unwise to wander around this region too much, lest we stir up a hornet's nest. After all, the beings that have destroyed this place could still be around. We definitely won't be able to handle them if they are at the level of planet destroyers, Vaan added. You have a point, Sir Vaan. Then, let us leave, Hecate agreed before mentioning, nevertheless, I believe I have shown you enough goodwill. I expect you to return the favor on our way back. Naturally, Vaan understood what Hecate wanted. Since she had already shared her knowledge, it was his turn to share his. Furthermore, there was only one thing she wanted to learn about more than anything else, the outer beings. Alright, Vaan nodded. Shortly after they departed the outer rims of the asteroid field region, Vaan explained the outer beings' existence to Hecate and mentioned what he knew about fourth dimensional beings and the fourth dimension. Finally, he shared his unbelievable theory on the relationship of their world with the fourth dimensional world. By the time they returned to the moon region, Hecate had absorbed all the information Vaan shared. A blank look of awe and wonder hung on her face after she tried to visualize his theory instead of denying its possibility. As an ardent pursuer of knowledge, Hecate naturally had to keep an open mind to all possibilities. Confirming a new theory's feasibility instead of discrediting it was the proper way of conduct, no matter how outrageous it seemed. Hecate had to admit Vaan's theory was indeed outrageous, but it was solid and reasonable. She couldn't find any flaw in it, only questionable doubts. If chaos, as a whole, is only considered at the level of blood cells in the fourth-dimensional world, then what do you think is the true nature of the endless sea of nothingness, of nihility, Sir Vaan? Hecate asked, further adding, unlike the void of space within chaos, this boundless nothingness is highly destructive and absolute. It can't just be some empty space in this fourth-dimensional world, right? Hecate added. Since you yourself have mentioned chaos being on the level of blood cells, then you should also understand what blood cells do in the human body, Lady Hecate. Vaan smiled before continuing, they aren't stationary and are constantly moving, as part of a great blood flow. I believe this endless sea of nothingness could actually be pure energy that may have been extracted from chaos and countless other possible chaos verses within this great flow. However, without the protective membrane of the chaos verses and chaos, all this pure energy is flowing at fourth-dimensional speed, too fast for us to perceive, Vaan said. Hecate had not thought of it that way. But when she did, she quickly showed her astonishment. An object would become a blur when it moved fast, a faint shadow when it moved faster, and practically invisible when it moved fastest. But no matter how fast the object moved, traces of its existence would still be sensed. This is due to its interaction with other matter during its movement. However, Hecate realized that was only true up until a certain speed. The limitations of the third dimension had restricted her thinking. In the fourth dimension, everything would be far more complex. Anything and everything would contain so much more information, and the fourth-dimensional beings had to absorb this information instantly to function normally. After all, when third-dimensional beings see their third-dimensional world, they immediately recognize the sun and moon, heaven and earth, and mountains and rivers. They don't just freeze to process what they are, they see what they see and know what they know. In that case, the concepts of speed, space, and time had to be quite different to accommodate the complexity of the fourth dimension. Furthermore, the fourth-dimensional beings would have the perceptive abilities to view that complexity as something simple. Once Hecate understood that, she didn't try to limit her imagination by the what is, but tried to understand the what if to get an idea of the concept of fourth-dimensional speed. Nothing could move faster than the speed of light in the third dimension, but moving faster than the speed of light was most likely normal in the fourth dimension. What kind of effect would fourth-dimensional speed have? Furthermore, how could something be proven to exist if it moved too fast to be seen or even felt? And if it had always been the case since the beginning of time, how could it ever be known or thought of? That was the domain of nihility. If people never knew it existed, then it was the same as never existing. Because third-dimensional beings were simply incapable of perceiving things beyond their dimension, they could never understand anything outside of chaos, in the endless sea of nothingness. Having given a different perception of the endless sea of nothingness, Hecate realized it couldn't be true nothingness. Why would true nothingness have any effect on that which exists? How could the state of nothing do anything? It was just nothing. As such, the nihilistic power of the endless sea of nothingness actually came from the seemingly absolute speed of the fourth dimension. The speed was so fast that it would literally shred anything in contact with it from existence. Furthermore, it couldn't be sensed because its energy particles were much smaller than standard. That was also why slowly coming into contact with nihilistic power would have the effect of erosion instead of instant disappearance. The quantum particles of it were actually eating away at the matter. This was also how controlled levels of nihilistic power could break down matter into pure energy instead of smashing everything into non-existence. Suddenly, the laws around Hecate stirred, prompting Vaan to pause their travel and glance at her with great surprise. This was because among the laws stirred was also the nihility law. I seem to have comprehended the nihility law. I guess that makes us partners in crime, Hecate chuckled pleasantly, sincerely adding, you have my thanks, Sir Vaan. Not only did she comprehend the nihility law, but she also had a major breakthrough in her understanding of all other laws. Her ascension to rank 7 divine being was only a matter of time now. Vaan shook his head and said, I've only shared my experience and insight, Lady Hecate. Ultimately, it was your ability that allowed you to comprehend nihility. Nevertheless, congratulations are in order. How do you feel after rewriting your destiny? Vanna asked shortly after. I feel great. Hecate replied with an honest grin before suddenly adding, although the nihility law will undoubtedly bring untold dangers to my life, how many beings would even get this chance to pursue the absolute peak? Meeting you has certainly been my greatest blessing and the chance I have been waiting for. For that, I am grateful. As a reminder, please visit my territory as soon as you've settled all your matters, if you want to raise your strength quickly, that is. Also, don't be in a hurry to use Abaddon's left arm until then, Sir Vaan, Hecate added. I will keep that in mind, Lady Hecate, Vaan nodded. Now that they were both users of the nihility law, Vaan had another layer of assurance on top of the boundless sea and sky aura's influence to trust Hecate. After all, their interests aligned, and they would want each other to be as strong as possible to overcome any disaster thrown at them due to their destinies as bearers of nihility. As such, Vaan was quite curious how Hecate intended to help him raise his strength once he reached her territory. Nevertheless, that was something he could only find out later. More importantly, he needed to settle the Great Rathalos Empire and deal with the Vampire Lords and the Evernight territory. A strange scene unfolded before them when Vaan and Hecate returned to the Great Rathalos Empire's imperial capital. What are you doing? Hecate frowned. Her 9 trusted dreamcatchers were competing with each other, seeing who could last the longest under the gravitational pressure of the Black Pillar. Evidently, it was their game to kill time and cure their boredom as they waited. Mistress. You're back. Fourth Dream exclaimed with surprise and joy despite being informed of Hecate's imminent return. We are competing. I can see that. Hecate's frown deepened. Her dreamcatchers were all beautiful fairies, trained to be elegant and gentle but also dignified in the eyes of others as they represented her. However, at that moment, the 9 dreamcatchers were all soaking in sweat, huffing and puffing like animals in heat. Their ethereal image was completely shattered, making her feel embarrassed. Who came up with this idea? Hecate coldly asked. The 9 dreamcatchers immediately glanced at the 8th progenitor subconsciously, causing the latter to feel weak in the knees, especially after her cool gaze shifted to him. Please have mercy, great devil Hecate. I didn't suggest anything. I'm innocent. I merely made an irresponsible remark, the 8th progenitor quickly cried, fearing Hecate's divine pressure would weigh down on him again. Oh. Oh. What kind of irresponsible remark? Let's hear it, Hecate demanded. The 8th progenitor heavily gulped down his saliva before replying, I just asked why the 9 dreamcatchers were struggling so much under the gravitational pressure despite possessing superior cultivation to us, vampire lords, great devil Hecate. I didn't mean anything malicious by it. It was just a genuine curiosity. Please believe me, the 8th progenitor pleaded. Although he received compensation last time after bearing Hecate's divine pressure, he might not be so lucky this time. After all, Hecate couldn't have too many vials of soul-replenishing essence. As such, he was truly afraid of losing more lifespan. My deepest apologies, mistress. I was the one who led everyone to compete under the gravitational pressure. First Dream admitted to her mistake before explaining, I felt that it was a rare chance to strengthen our divine bodies as we waited for your return. Hecate was speechless. The vampire lords practiced blood cultivation, which was a mix of energy and body cultivation. On the other hand, what the dreamcatchers practiced was soul cultivation exclusively. As such, it was natural for the vampire lords to be superior to them in bearing the gravitational pressure due to their advantage in the body aspect. Furthermore, the dreamcatchers weren't even using the full might of their soul power to resist the gravitational pressure. Otherwise, how could they lose to the vampire lords when they have higher cultivation? That's enough. I won't single any of you out. All of you will reflect on your mistake in the Blizzard Hell prison for 3 months when we return, Hecate coolly stated. Yes, mistress, the 9 dream catchers answered simultaneously without a hint of complaint. In fact, they even wanted to smile with glee. After all, 3 months in the Blizzard Hell prison couldn't be considered a punishment to them. Although the Blizzard Hell prison was a special cold place for holding criminals and making them suffer from freezing temperatures, it was also a great place to temper the divine soul. In other words, Hecate was simply sending them to cultivate. Nevertheless, after Hecate's issue with her dream catchers was settled, she shifted her attention to the vampire lords. Although Vaan had a plan for the vampire lords and the Evernight territory, it seemed Hecate also had her own ideas on the matter. As such, he might as well leave it to her to handle. After all, with only his power and sway of words, he could settle for a peace treaty between the Great Rathalos Empire and the Evernight territory at best. He wouldn't be able to assume control of the Evernight territory. The vampire lords would definitely not agree with it, and he lacked the ability to make them in his present state. However, it was a different story with Hecate around. You wouldn't mind me deciding how to settle the problem between the Great Rathalos Empire and the Evernight territory, would you, Sir Vaan? Hecate asked out of courtesy. Not at all, Lady Hecate. This is your right as one with power, Vaan calmly replied. It was natural for the strongest to have the biggest say. That's great, Hecate nodded with relief. For a moment, she was concerned that Vaan would argue with her over it. After all, no matter how talented Vaan was, he was still far too young. It wouldn't be strange for anyone under such circumstances to develop an inflated ego and become drunk on borrowed power over such a victory. Fortunately, she did not misjudge him. Nevertheless, Hecate did not have a single interest in the resources of the Evernight territory. However, it was also true that Vaan currently lacked the qualifications to possess it. Even if she agreed to it, the other great devils wouldn't. In fact, they were a bigger problem than the vampire lords. Since Abaddon is dead, the Evernight territory is left without a great devil to manage, Hecate mentioned. Furthermore, there isn't a single vampire lord qualified to assume the position of great devil and rule the Evernight territory. As such, I will be assuming the position of Evernight territory's temporary ruler. Anyone have a problem with that? Hecate asked, sweeping her stern gaze across all 12 vampire lords present with an intimidating pressure. In fact, there were only 8 vampire lords who required her attention. After all, the 6th progenitor, 11th progenitor, and 13th progenitor had sworn their loyalty to her. That naturally disqualified them since they would be returning to her territory. On the other hand, Vaan had the 8th progenitor's allegiance, as far as she was aware. As such, only the remaining 8 vampire lords could be a problem. Nevertheless, no one in their right mind would challenge the decision of a great devil. Even if the vampire lords were reluctant, they would still have to accede. No problem, the vampire lord simultaneously replied. Good. Hecate nodded before continuing, however, I am still the great devil of the Dream Dust territory. My time and energy are limited, I can't focus too much on the affairs of the Evernight territory. So, I will appoint a representative to manage it in my stead. Sir Vaan, do you have any candidates in mind? Hecate asked. Vaan nodded. Since Hecate let him make the choice, he naturally had to appoint his people to the position. The 8th progenitor will be diligent representative for you, Lady Hecate, Vaan mentioned. Very well, Hecate nodded and said, then you will be my representative, 8th progenitor. I am honored to receive this opportunity and trust. I will not disappoint you, great devil Hecate and my lord, the 8th progenitor immediately accepted with joy and excitement. You better pray you won't, Hecate calmly acknowledged before returning her attention to the rest of the vampire lords. The vampire lord suddenly felt nervous due to the tension in the brief silence. Now that my representative has been chosen, I will give you my first order as your unofficial ruler, you, and you. Fuck off. Fuck off. Fuck off. In fact, all of you scram back to Gehenna for me. Without further word from me, no one is permitted to cross the dimension and enter Pangea. The same is applied the other way around. If you understand, then quickly scram. Hecate thundered menacingly. Her sudden intimidation and oppression exploded so abruptly that it shocked everyone. The peaceful atmosphere was instantly drowned in the heavy stench of malice, death, and dread. It was as if an entirely different person had taken control of Hecate's body. The vampire lords instinctively scurried off in full compliance in that very instant, not daring to look back. Hecate's alter ego frightened the wits out of them. Even Vaan was dumbfounded with his eyes widened. It was said that Hecate had 3 faces, she was sometimes good, sometimes evil, and other times, she was neither. Although Vaan heard about this, it was still shocking to witness the switch. It truly was hard to call them the same person. The previous Hecate was like the personification of goodness, she was always covered in moonlight and holiness. On the other hand, the present one was cloaked in darkness and death. Vaan felt almost fortunate that he didn't have to deal with evil Hecate. Nevertheless, compared to good Hecate, evil Hecate seemed more fitting for a great devil. Even so, he had not seen her commit any evil. At most, she was only more violent, like Aliena. Aliena. Perhaps this was a property of darkness, it would amplify negative emotions. Lady Hecate. Vaan uttered. Hecate immediately directed her menacing glare at him. But in the next moment, her expression changed into a friendly smile. At the same time, her dark, evil aura vanished, replaced by a tranquil and gentle one. I'm sorry you had to see such an unsightly side of me, Sir Vaan. However, such a side is sometimes necessary to scare the people into absolute obedience, Hecate said with a wry smile. But shortly after, she quickly became solemn, mentioning, there are a few things I need to tell you and some things I have not told you, Sir Vaan. As a peak demigod, you managed to drive Abaddon to such a pitiful state and also dealt him the finishing blow. In addition to your heaven-defying talent, no one is more qualified than you to replace Abaddon and become the new ruler of the Evernight territory. In due time, you will undoubtedly catch up to his level and be worthy of the seat among the great devils. However, it is also true that you currently lack the cultivation and the legitimacy to rule the Evernight territory. That's why I will help you resolve these two issues once you reach my territory. NOV/LB/JNN. Unfortunately, it cannot be done immediately. That is why I am giving you time to settle all your matters in Pangaea before that time comes, Hecate solemnly stated. What are the matters you have not told me about, Lady Hecate? Vaan asked curiously, seeing how Hecate seemed quite serious. You see, no matter how much the great devils hate each other, we have a rule not to kill each other, Hecate confessed. Although you dealt the killing blow, I have undeniably played a part in his death. As such, I will most likely be sanctioned by the other great devils once they hear of it. I'll be condemned and questioned upon my return and unable to leave for a while. During this time, the great devils will likely convene a meeting to determine whether to join hands and eliminate you once and for all. However, I will also do my best to oppose this idea and promote you to becoming one of us. As such, ascending to the position of great devil and ruling the Evernight territory is a goal you must work towards and cannot reject for your survival, Hecate solemnly stated. Vaan was quickly startled by Hecate's information. Nevertheless, it was something he had already thought about, and as it turned out, he was right to be concerned about it. That said, he had a good feeling Hecate would be able to convince the great devils. Just by her extensive knowledge outside of Gehenna alone, he believed her background was quite grand and impressive. As such, the other great devils would most likely give her some face. On that note, reaching out to Hecate and making a deal with her was probably the best choice he had ever made. It gave him and Pangaea a clear future. Even so, Vaan couldn't help but suspect the hidden hands of fate had some play in guiding him to this situation. He couldn't imagine what would happen if Abaddon had not antagonized Hecate first. No, even before that, if the sacred Tirtha had belonged to another great devil other than Hecate, they would not have arrived at this best possible outcome. There were too many coincidental factors to attribute it all to luck. Fate itself seemed to have been manipulated. It wasn't the first time Vaan felt this way either. It seems this is the only way. Vaan acknowledged the situation he found himself in due to killing Abaddon. Unless Golden Dragon Pangaea was alive and intervened, Pangaea simply couldn't withstand the full might of Gehenna. Thus, how could he survive if it solely focused on him? Since Vaan couldn't beat all of the great devils with his current self, he could only join them. Such was the only way to survive. Well, more accurately, in this case, it was beating one of them and then joining them. Although the situation seemed quite serious, Vaan didn't feel the slightest burden. His only responsibility was to grow stronger. On the other hand, Hecate had most of the work fall on her. She had to convince the great devil that Vaan was not a threat to them and was a better asset to Gehenna than Abaddon ever was and will be. Vaan was strangely confident she would be able to do it. For your safety, I will leave behind 3 dream catchers to protect you. They will also act as your guide to the dream dust territory and mediums for communication between us, Sir Vaan, Hecate stated. So generous? Vaan smiled. Hecate gave him a side-eye glance and said, they may be much older than you, but in terms of experience and maturity, they are more likely to be inferior to you. Think of them as cultivation hermits who have yet to see much of the world, Sir Vaan. As such, 3 is the minimum number required for me to trust they will do their job well, Hecate stated before adding, also, try not to bully them too much. How could I have such courage, Lady Hecate? Vaan smiled sheepishly. Yet, you have the courage to challenge a great devil at the peak of rank 6 divine realm on your own? Do you even know how outrageous that is to others? Hecate replied lazily, not buying it. The circumstances were different. Vaan scratched his cheeks ruefully. Hecate rolled her eyes. Shortly after, Hecate shifted her attention to the dreamcatchers, asking, I need 3 of you to stay back and guard Sir Vaan's safety with your life. Any volunteers? Those who volunteer will be exempted from punishment when we return, Hecate stated. Surprisingly, none of the 9 dreamcatchers were really to volunteer. Mistress, I'd rather return to the territory and cultivate, accept my punishment, 4th dream voiced shyly. Same here, mistress. This place is not as good as home, 9th dream chimed as her gaze wandered around. Although much of the area had collapsed from battles, she could see that the buildings in the distance weren't as developed or visually appealing. The same would undoubtedly apply to other things. How could she enjoy staying in an underdeveloped world? I bet the food here wouldn't be great either, mistress. I prefer to go home, the gluttonous 7th dream added after careful consideration. Given the low levels of mana and backward development of magic, she concluded the great Rathalos Empire lacked the knowledge to produce high-quality ingredients and mouth-watering food. Staying in Pangaea would be a greater punishment than enduring the frigid cold of the blizzard hell prison. Clap, clap. N/O/vel/B//in. Hecate casually clapped, saying, Great, I'm glad to see 3 enthusiastic volunteers. 4th dream, 7th dream, and 9th dream, you 3 will stay back. The rest of you will follow me back. Mistress? You got something to add, 4th dream? And no. 4th dream's shoulders drooped in defeat, knowing she couldn't go against Hecate's decision. She could only blame herself for being too eager to voice an opinion. Seventh dream and ninth dream also felt shattered after understanding they had to stay back. Protect Sir Vaan well and serve him like how you would serve me. He is someone I treat with the highest regard. Who knows, you might find some fortuitous opportunities following Sir Vaan during this period. Hecate left some words of consolation for the three dreamcatchers. However, they didn't seem convinced. Shortly after, fourth dream, seventh dream, ninth dream watched Hecate and the other dreamcatchers leave with envious gazes. Nevertheless, after Hecate and the others left, the three dreamcatchers immediately fixed their attitude and turned to Vaan. Sir Vaan, please feel free to call out to us when you need us and be assured that no harm will befall you with us three around. We will protect you diligently in secret, fourth dream stated, adding, you can call me fourth dream. I am seventh dream, Sir Vaan. Please call me whenever you have good food to share, Ak. Seventh dream was suddenly whacked on the head by fourth dream. Quit messing around, fourth dream said sternly. Fine. Seventh dream replied sulkily. I'm called ninth dream, Sir Vaan. Ninth dream introduced herself before briefly pausing, gazing at the desolated area. I don't ask for much. I only hope you will treat us like civilized beings and provide us a place to stay, even if it is just a shed with hay to lay on. Also, I prefer to work from evening to morning hours. So, please try not to call for me during after morning to evening hours. Ninth dream requested, seemingly pitifully. I'll try to keep that in mind, Lady Ninth dream. Don't worry about sleeping in a shed with hay. We're not savages, Vaan assured with a smile, amused by the group of three. One was a glutton, and the other was a night owl. Only fourth dream seemed to be the sensible one among them. Time to work, fourth dream stated. Shortly after she grabbed seventh dream and ninth dream, they all disappeared from sight instantly. However, Vaan could still see them moving to a less conspicuous spot despite being invisible to everyone else. Nothing could be hidden from his fourth dimension sense. It seemed the three dream catchers intended to guard him from the dark and draw attention to themselves. No doubt, they had noticed they stood out a lot with their pairs of beautiful black wings, not to mention they themselves were pretty like fabled elves. Although they are reluctant, it seems they follow Hecate's orders quite faithfully. Just when Vaan felt some respect for the three dream catchers, he saw the most serious one, fourth dream, taking out a packet of playing cards and distributing the cards to the other two. It had not even been a few minutes since fourth dream told him they would protect him diligently in secret. He could certainly see how diligent they were. Nevertheless, Vaan did not expose them immediately. He was fascinated with observing their divine power. The effect of invisibility wasn't just limited to their bodies but also their area. It was an invisible barrier that also included sound insulation, preventing the noises within from escaping outside and exposing their hidden location. However, Vaan could hear them just fine. Fourth dream displayed quite a rowdy and energetic demeanor in her game of cards, which was not present when she was in front of him. Her solemn elegance was just an act of formality, while this side of her seemed to be her true self in normal times. Double 10. Nice. Double jack. Take that. Fourth dream slammed a pair of cards down and guffawed, mwahaha. I'm out of cards first. I don't have to take care of the first shift. Evidently, the trio was competing in cards to determine the order of their shift. Vaan smiled wryly. It wasn't an understatement when Hecate said their experience and maturity would be inferior to his. They seemed quite playful despite being exalted late-stage rank 6 divine beings. Hecate had certainly left quite the dynamic trio to him. Vaan wondered if the other dreamcatchers also had such peculiar personalities. I guess I'll tease them a bit now, Vaan thought with amusement. Lady Hecate left 3 powerful divine bodyguards to protect me, but they disappeared so quickly. Why do I feel like they ran off somewhere to play cards? Vaan seemingly mumbled to himself. However, the dynamic trio immediately froze in the middle of their heated card game. Shortly after, fourth dream emerged from her invisibility state and coughed awkwardly, ahem, that's a serious accusation you have there. Please don't question my professional ethics. Oh, Vaan uttered nonchalantly before saying, I'm just casually spewing nonsense, Lady Fourth Dream. No need to take it seriously. Fourth Dream didn't know whether to laugh or cry at his comment. Why was his casual nonsense so darn accurate? Previous chapter. While Vaan was interacting with Hecate, the leaders from the human, witch, dragon, and wyvern sides all maintained their distance. No matter what Vaan and Hecate were discussing, they didn't believe they were qualified to join in. Who would dare jump into a great devil's conversation before permission was granted? As such, Astoria and Henrietta's first thoughts were to seek information about the situation from Ophelia. However, the latter found it extremely inappropriate to interrupt Hecate for a sudden inquiry. In the end, everyone could only wait patiently until Hecate and Vaan finished their business. When everyone witnessed Hecate's sudden surge of evil aura, they all felt fortunate for deciding not to approach her and interrupt her business. As expected, a great devil was still a great devil. Because of Hecate's incredibly heavy evil aura, Emperor Vaan grew especially nervous regarding the future of his country. After all, they might have gotten rid of Abaddon, but now there was Hecate. Fighting fire with fire wouldn't necessarily stop them from getting burned. Fortunately, Emperor Varen's concerns were unfounded. He quickly felt relieved to see Hecate depart with most of her dreamcatchers. Even so, no one approached Vaan due to the remaining dreamcatchers. Only after fourth dream, seventh dream, and ninth dream disappeared for some time did they finally come forward. Lord Vaan, how is the situation? Emperor Vaan asked nervously. Vaan glanced at Emperor Vaan before casually replying, "The threat from Gehenna has been resolved. Hecate has taken charge of the Evernight territory and put up a ban on dimension crossing. Thus, you no longer need to worry about the vampire lords invading again, Emperor Vaan. With the Black Pillar in place, the weaker vampires won't be able to cross over either. Take this chance to rebuild your imperial capital, construct a defensive perimeter around the Black Pillar, relocate the affected citizens, and provide disaster relief. The Black Rose Kingdom, Holy Knight Empire, and Red Dragon Clan will aid your country's recovery. You can discuss the details with Henrietta, Astoria, and Lord Astaroth," Vaan stated. Emperor Vaan suddenly knelt down and said, "On behalf of the Great Rathalos Empire, I would like to thank you from the bottom of my heart, Lord Vaan. I am fully convinced the Great Rathalos Empire will not suffer under you. The Great Rathalos Empire hereby pledges its allegiance to you, Lord Vaan," Emperor Vaan said solemnly. Although Hecate ultimately came to help, Vaan had still engaged with Great Devil Abaddon for so long and survived unscathed despite their vast difference in power. That was an irrefutable fact. As such, there was not a single warrior from the Great Rathalos Empire's side who wouldn't acknowledge him. He fully deserved everyone's respect and reverence. Although Emperor Vaan still had no idea how Vaan contacted Hecate, it no longer mattered to him. What mattered was that the threat from Gehenna had been resolved, and they could move forward. Overlord Vaan. Overlord Vaan. Overlord Vaan. It was unknown who shouted it first, but many warriors quickly joined in once it was spoken, offering their respects and veneration to Vaan through their repeated chant. At the same time, Vaan could feel countless faith energy pouring into him. Although the amount of faith energy needed to forge the divine soul and officially step into the divine was enormous to the point that Vaan had no interest in becoming divine through this method, he still wouldn't refuse the tribute. After all, the power of faith could also affect his destiny and fate, increasing his chances of surviving tribulations and disasters. Don't mind the formalities. Do what you need to do, Emperor Vaan. Understood, Overlord Vaan. Shortly after Emperor Vaan excused himself, he dragged the Sea Emperor and Princess Dana away to discuss some things, lest they had differing opinions on the legacy of the Armstrong family falling under an outsider's control. Meanwhile, Vaan was quickly surrounded by his own people. He knew they had doubts and concerns, so he took his time explaining the situation to them. However, their concerns only increased after learning about the situation from him. They couldn't imagine how much pressure Vaan was enduring under his calmness. If it were them, they wouldn't remain so nonchalant, knowing they became potentially targeted by all the great devils. Moreover, Vaan had to raise his strength to the peak of rank 6 divine being and become one of the great devils to overcome this disaster. The concept of becoming divine was virtually foreign to them. Thus, how could it be easy? Victoria's face paled after learning everything. She couldn't even feel happy about everyone prematurely recognizing her grandson as the overlord of Pangea. Behind all the glory was sacrifice after sacrifice. Her grandson took in the bloodlines of a dragon and wolf to acquire the power to survive. Now, to ensure survival and secure a future for Pangea, he would have to take in the bloodline of the vampires. Her grandson was losing his humanity one step at a time. Victoria couldn't help but tear up at that thought. She couldn't give him a normal childhood, now, she couldn't spoil him either. Vaan had too much burden. Don't worry, grandmother. I don't find myself pitiful. On the contrary, I am quite fortunate, Vaan honestly admitted. If he was still living on Earth, he might have wanted to be spoiled and live a normal life. However, he was currently living in Pangea, where the future wasn't guaranteed. As such, he naturally preferred taking every opportunity to grow stronger, no matter what became of him. If Hecate truly had a method to incorporate Abaddon's bloodline into him without conflicting or weakening his existing bloodline, then it was his ideal choice. After all, he believed achieving the divine body first was more beneficial in the long run. A stronger vessel would accommodate stronger power. There should be some truth to this saying. There are a few things I want to settle before I head to Hecate's Dreamdust territory. So, I will be returning to Sun Peak City first, Vaan stated. Alright, Henrietta and Astoria nodded with understanding. Although they wanted to follow him, they knew they had to stay back for a bit longer to discuss disaster relief and support with Emperor Vaan. Nevertheless, even at that moment, Henrietta found it difficult to be normal around Vaan. She could feel her body heating up. However, she did her best to suppress her jittery emotions and maintain her composure. Victoria had already learned about their relationship with her grandson. Although she noticed they were trying to hide it from her, she couldn't find the mood to tease them. However, the same couldn't be said for Vaan, who was aware of the heavy atmosphere and wanted to lighten it. He also noticed his grandmother had some friendship with Henrietta and Astoria. As such, he was amused to discover they were trying to hide their relationship from his grandmother. After all, he had already spilled the beans to her. Ah, ignorance is bliss, Vaan thought. Suddenly, Vaan boldly pulled Henrietta and Astoria into his embrace and gave each of them a quick peck on the cheeks in front of his grandmother, taking them all by surprise. Victoria originally wanted to take her time teasing Henrietta and Astoria until they realized she knew of their relationship. However, Vaan's stunt brought everything to light, ending her little game. Nevertheless, Vaan's killer move soon followed. After giving Henrietta and Astoria smooches, he squeezed their round buttocks. Kaya. Two different reactions sounded. Astoria's face quickly reddened with embarrassment while Henrietta lost all strength and plopped on the ground after squealing. Her soul also seemed to have left her body at that moment. At the same time, they felt more conscious of Victoria's gaze, which seemed to burn into their backs. They didn't know how to face Victoria after being exposed like that. Alright, you ladies have fun. I'm off, Vaan chuckled and departed, washing his hands of the mess he had created. Aliana and Anaus also left with him, followed by Ophelia and Lord Narvim. Shortly after, Lord Astaroth led the dragons away to help the humans in the imperial capital, not wanting to stay after sensing the strange atmosphere. The supreme leader was the future overlord of Pangaea. If he wanted the world to burn, then everyone was screwed. Soon, it was just Astoria, Henrietta, and Victoria left. Blank looks hung on their faces, having yet to adapt to the present situation. An awkward silence filled the dry air. Victoria, it's not what you think. Henrietta recovered some of her wits and quickly made an excuse, looking frantic. Meanwhile, Victoria looked at Henrietta's expression and found it difficult to remain dispirited. PFTT. Victoria laughed and asked, even after reaching this point, you're still trying to hide your relationship from me, little Henny? Stop it. Don't talk like that, Henrietta blocked her ears in denial. I also wanted to keep feigning ignorance and play along with you longer, but... Sigh, that grandson of mine doesn't know how to let people have fun, does he? Victoria sighed with some regret. Why you, knew? Astoria uttered with surprise. Some time ago, yeah. Vaan told me himself, Victoria chuckled before urging, alright, let's hear it. Hear what? Astoria replied with momentary bafflement. Hear you two calling me grandmother, Victoria grinned with glee, adding, why? Do you need my help? Alright, let's practice. Repeat after me, grandmother. Your turn. Astoria and Henrietta shivered with hair-raising chills and goosebumps. Henrietta and Astoria couldn't change the fact that they had indeed hooked up with Victoria's grandson and already felt awkward and embarrassed about it. As such, it would have been fine if Victoria had just been considerate about their feelings. However, not only did Victoria not consider their feelings, she was even making fun of them for her own amusement, finding pleasure in their plight. How could their pride accept that? Victoria, we indeed have a relationship with Vaan, but that also doesn't change the fact that we are your peers. Stop trying to climb 2 generations over our heads, Astoria said in a displeased tone. Ha, what's wrong with that? I am indeed 2 generations ahead of you two, Victoria chuckled and said, I've already had children and grandchildren, while you two have none. My springtime is long gone, but yours have only just begun. You know, you two should be thanking me for having such an amazing grandson. Otherwise, who knows if you two will ever find a partner. Still, who would have thought you two would end up with my grandson, of all people? Victoria teased, poking at their weakness. Please give us some face, Victoria. You make it sound like such a bad thing, Henrietta retorted. It's not. Victoria's eyes widened. Henrietta immediately choked on her words, unable to reply. Astoria opened her mouth, but no words came out either. Don't get me wrong, I'm just asking, isn't it bad that you two have guarded humanity but haven't participated in the effort to increase its dwindling population, given the low fertility rate? Victoria explained before asking, what did you think I meant? Oh, I know. You thought I implied it was bad to go after your friend's grandson, right? Victoria chuckled slyly. Henrietta and Astoria glared at the gleeful Victoria, who was acting shamelessly. Suddenly, they found her smug face quite punchable. Astoria and Henrietta clenched their fists while trying to restrain the urge. The only way to deal with shameless people was to be more shameless than them or just ignore them. Humph. Henrietta and Astoria both snorted before getting away from Victoria. Haha, where are you two going? Let me come with you. I'm not done yet, Victoria laughed as she tagged along, not letting them get away. Let us talk more about my grandson. How was that but squeeze? Did you like it? Shameless. Henrietta and Astoria cussed with flushed faces, hastening their steps to escape. Baha. Victoria laughed harder. Black Rose Empire, St. Peak City. When Vaan returned with everyone else who followed him, Anaus shortly inquired, how much time do you have before you leave for Dream Dust territory, Vaan? Hecate didn't give me an exact time. So, I suppose it can be as long as it takes for me to settle everything in Pangaea. I won't leave before I unite the North and bring the age of magic to both men and women, Vaan stated. Does building that enormous magic tower play a part in that plan of yours, Sir Vaan? Ophelia asked curiously before commenting, it looks like you are trying to build a heavenly staircase. The 10,000-foot tower atop Red Goblin Mountain was the first thing she noticed upon stepping into St. Peak City. Given its enormity, it would be strange not to notice it. It was also her first time seeing such a ridiculously high magic tower. Nevertheless, Vaan saw no reason to hide the truth. The 10,000-foot magic tower was bound to one of Pangaea's historical wonders, and its fame would eventually spread to every inch of the continent and attract many magic engineering scholars from the Freedom Federation. You're right, but also wrong, Lady Ophelia. Not quite a heavenly staircase. Calling it a space launcher would be more accurate, Vaan replied. Originally, he did, in fact, want to build a space elevator. It was one of his minor desires to see it become a reality, and nothing would have been more satisfying than personally leading the project to fruition. However, it also realized it was impractical, not because the theory was flawed, but because it would be wasteful. After all, the sheer amount of resources required to construct the space elevator was astronomical. More importantly, it wouldn't last long. The geographic changes brought by Pangaea merging with Gehenna would, without doubt, compromise its structural integrity and stability. Once that happened, it was bound to fall apart and come crashing down on the growing city beneath it. The potential losses weren't worth the investment. As such, Vaan revised the project to a cost-effective space launcher that wouldn't be possible with just science. A space launcher? Ophelia raised her eyebrow before expressing her interest. I would like to hear more about it, Sir Vaan. Why don't I give you a tour of it while we're at it, Lady Ophelia? Vaan suggested. That would be great. All right. Shortly after, they relocated to the foot of the 10,000-foot magic tower, which was also a space launcher. Its center was hollow, like the tube of a big cannon, and a huge bullet-shaped containment was fitted inside. Although Vaan was surprised by the progress made in his absence, he explained, this is the hard shell that will carry people into the Sea of Stars. It's currently designed with 25 passenger seats and a maximum cargo weight of 50 tons. This space launcher utilizes strong kinetic power to thrust the metal shell straight into the Sea of Stars. However, it's also because we are using such a straightforward method of transport that not anyone can use it for the time being. Unless one is senior witch, or a grandmaster, or someone trained to withstand 10 g of force for 20 minutes, they will not be able to withstand the pressure of the launch, Vaan explained. Of course, they were still working on the carrier's pressure cancellation system to negate all feelings of travel for the comfort of the passengers and for transporting more fragile objects into space. But before that, there was also the black pillar, which would be great for training people to endure high pressure. Nevertheless, Ophelia couldn't help but frown after listening to Vaan's explanation. It didn't seem plausible to her. I'm sorry, Sir Vaan. I don't want to question your intelligence or discredit the efforts you put into this project, Ophelia said before expressing her honest opinion. However, it just doesn't seem plausible to me. I don't see how such a heavy object can be sent into the Sea of Stars if it only relies purely on the kinetic power inputted during launch. It will be unable to overcome its weight and will be brought down by Pangaea's gravity. Of course, if the kinetic power of the launch was so high that it could send the carrier into the Sea of Stars, I believe such launching power would be able to slay even divine beings. I doubt any passenger will be able to survive under such pressure. No, they'll probably die instantly upon launch if this space launcher had such kinetic power generation, Ophelia figured. It's just as you say, Lady Ophelia, Vaan calmly acknowledged her point before saying, if the space launcher is only relying on pure kinetic energy to send people into the Sea of Stars, that is. So, there's more to it then? Ophelia wondered thoughtfully. Vaan nodded and said, that space launcher alone will not be enough to send people into the Sea of Stars. That's why we are also working on creating a void tunnel system. A void tunnel system? Ophelia raised her eyebrow in interest. That's right, a void tunnel system that would generate a pillar of void space between the space launch and the Sea of Stars via magic. You should have already seen the floating black cubes above the magic tower, Lady Ophelia, Vaan mentioned. In total, there will be 60,000 of them aligned between the space launcher and the Sea of Stars when the void tunnel system is online. It will create a zero-gravity vacuum space for the carriers to pass through. Naturally, the carrier will not lose any travel speed getting launched through such an environment. It'll be like getting pushed through deep space, Vaan stated. Supreme Leader, I've recalled that the void tunnel system was completed recently. It just hasn't entered the testing phase since the communication and docking systems on the other end aren't ready yet, Lord Narvam informed. Of course, he didn't see a reason not to tag along with the tour, considering he had ample knowledge of the relevant projects. Furthermore, the magic tower's interior was so spacious that even dragons like him could enter without feeling cramped. After all, it was designed to accommodate the large size of red dragons. Oh? Vaan uttered with surprise. Given the various projects the Red Dragon clan was already working on, he didn't expect the void tunnel system to be completed so quickly. Lord Narvam seemed to have noticed Vaan's thoughts. As such, he explained, the void tunnel system is a smaller project compared to the space station project. Lord Astaroth figured the space station project's progress would speed up if we completed the void tunnel system project first, so we did. Now, we can send even more materials into space to speed up the work on the space station project, Lord Narvam stated. Using spatial storage artifacts wasn't good enough? Vaan asked. The spatial storage artifacts are only good enough to transport small to medium-sized materials. It won't be able to transport larger materials required for some key parts in the space station project, Supreme Leader, Lord Narvam answered. Vaan furrowed his brows before mentioning, but without the space station's docking system, there won't be much point in completing the void tunnel system early. Or are you saying you were all planning to play catch with 50-ton alloy shells hurling through vacuum space at speed and force comparable to demigods? Vaan asked. Lord Narvam opened his mouth and paused in silence before eventually nodding. That was indeed the plan, Supreme Leader. Lord Astaroth intended to receive the transported items himself. Just focus on the docking system first, Vaan ordered, feeling speechless. Although Lord Astaroth was already a demigod and could receive the carriers with his own power, it was still quite risky. Vaan wouldn't want to fuck around and find out moment to happen and delay the space station project further than the time saved through such a risky shortcut. Understood, Supreme Leader, Lord Narvam acknowledged. Meanwhile, Ophelia was quite startled. Given that Vaan's explanations were true, it was indeed possible to launch alloy carriers into the Sea of Stars with kinetic power. Furthermore, it required far less construction material than a heavenly staircase. However, the complexity of magic technology and engineering involved was also a lot higher than that of the heavenly staircase. Where did Vaan even find all the skilled magic artificers needed to pull it off? Did he mobilize the entire Red Dragon clan for that? The noble Red Dragons were indeed skilled and knowledgeable. However, given the time frame and progress involved, they must be working like slaves to achieve so much. Nevertheless, Ophelia also noticed another point. If the void tunnel system did work as intended, she couldn't imagine how much mana would be required to generate such a large zero-gravity vacuum space for even a few seconds. The mana consumption for maintaining the void tunnel system must be enormous, right? If this space launcher is intended to be used frequently, the mana consumption would be even greater. Wouldn't the Black Rose Kingdom run out of mana quickly? Ophelia inquired. Not at all, Lady Ophelia, Vaan shook his head and said, there's a near limitless amount of mana lying in the upper sky, untapped until now. However, it will be used to support everything in this country, ranging from the void tunnel system to the witch's daily needs. And how do you intend to harvest all that mana in such large quantity, Sir Vaan? Vaan's bold claim had attracted her strong curiosity. That's what the large magic tower is for, it's not just a space launcher. Actually, the void tunnel system is only one part of a dual system, Vaan casually explained. When the void tunnel system is offline, the mana gathering system will be activated to channel the abundant mana from the upper sky into the magic tower's core mana storage. During this process, the void tunnel system will be recharged to maintain its functions, Vaan stated. After Ophelia finally saw the full picture, she was greatly amazed. The entire project had been thoroughly planned, and there didn't seem to be a single flaw in it. She couldn't help but look forward to the day of its full completion. Does this future wonder have a name? Heaven Reacher.